Chapter 361, Duan Lingtian's Conditions. Lu Shizhe, who had coldly watched on for some time, spoke once again, as if he was matching what Fan Jian had said. Duan Lingtian, even if you don't ascend the life and death arena, even if I can't kill you, I, Lu Shizhe, will still not let you off. I'll slowly torture you, even to the extent. Although Lu Shizhe didn't finish speaking, the gloomy gaze he shot at Duan Lingtian's dantian undoubtedly told everyone what he wanted to say but didn't finish. He would cripple Duan Lingtian's dantian. For a moment, many inner court disciples shot gazes of pity at Duan Lingtian. Although the Seven-Star Sword sect prohibited the sect disciples from killing each other and even prohibited crippling each other's dantian, accidents couldn't be avoided when martial artists battled. Even if Lu Shizhe really did cripple Duan Lingtian's dantian, he could said that as was an accident. At that time, the Seven-Star Sword sect would only give Lu Shizhe some minor punishments. Whereas Duan Lingtian's life would have been destroyed. Right at this moment, a cold and grim voice suddenly sounded out. Lu Shizhe, if you dare target Duan Lingtian's dantian, then I'll surely cripple you. Along with the voice resounded out, the gazes of everyone, including Duan Lingtian, shot towards the source of the voice. A young man with a grim expression was walking slowly towards the peak of Dubi Peak, his frosty gaze staring fixedly at Lu Shizhe. It's senior brother Zheng Song. It was senior brother Zheng Fan who took the knocked-out Duan Lingtian away the last time. Looks like he's on good terms with Duan Lingtian. Nonsense. If he wasn't on good terms with Duan Lingtian, would senior brother Zheng Song stand out for Duan Lingtian? Supposedly, senior brother Zheng Song's cultivation has already broken through to the third level of the nascent soul stage last month, as expected of the son of the peak master of Mizar Peak. He's inherited the outstanding natural talent in the martial Tao of peak master Zheng Fan. All the Seven-Star Sword sect inner court disciples looked at Zheng Song with gazes filled with reverence. Reverence towards an expert. Duan Lingtian revealed a brilliant smile when he saw Zheng Song arrive, and he lightly smiled as he greeted. Senior brother Zheng Song. Junior brother Duan Lingtian. Zheng Song replied with a smile, without a trace of his frosty appearance from before. Zheng Song. Lu Shiji's expression was as unsightly could be when he saw Zheng Song. Zheng Song had interfered in his business repeatedly, and it had long since caused him to hate Zheng Song to the bone. Unfortunately, no matter if it was in background or strength, he was inferior to Zheng Song and could only bury this hatred deep within his heart. Junior brother Duan Lingtian, if this Lu Shizhe dares touch you in the future, you just have to tell me, and I'll make him pay for it. When Zheng Song looked at Duan Lingtian, he had a slightly smiling expression. When his gaze descended onto Lu Shizhe, it instead became incomparably frosty, as if he was a completely different person. His tone was filled with overbearingness. The surrounding crowd burst into an uproar. All the inner court disciples knew clearly that since senior brother Zheng Song had said this, it would also mean that within the inner court in the future, he would be Duan Lingtian's backer. For a moment, many inner court disciples looked at Duan Lingtian with gazes of envy. After all, within the Seven-Star Sword sect, there were only inner court disciples below the age of 30 that still remained within the sect. As for the inner court disciples that were above the age of 30, practically all of them had been sent to the various businesses of the Seven-Star Sword sect in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Presently, Zheng Song's cultivation had stepped into the third level of the nascent soul stage. In terms of strength, it was sufficient to be ranked in the top 5 of the group of inner court disciples that still stayed within the Seven-Star Sword sect. Most importantly, Zheng Song still had another respected identity. The son of the Mizar Peak's master. They could imagine that with Zheng Song's protection now, no inner court disciple would dare offend Duan Lingtian in the future. Zheng Song, this is a personal grudge between me and Duan Lingtian, I hope you don't interfere. Lu Shizhe took a deep breath. He wasn't willing to let Duan Lingtian off just like that. Lu Shizhe, did you not hear what I just said? Zheng Song's face sank, and his gaze that was like a sword flashed towards Lu Shizhe as he said in a low voice, if there's something wrong with your ears, I don't mind cutting it off and helping you inspect it properly. If it's fine, then you better shut your mouth. Zheng Song's threats caused Lu Shiji's face to flush red and his gaze was vicious, but he just didn't dare flare up and could only clench his fist with a trembling body to express the strong displeasure in his heart. In the end, Lu Shizhe looked at Duan Lingtian and said in a low voice. Duan Lingtian, if you're a man, then be upright and ascend the life and death arena to battle me until only one of us remains, otherwise, you're a Puhuayan trash. Duan Lingtian's expression remained unfazed when he heard Lu Shizhe, then said indifferently. Lu Shizhe, do you think that this little goading will work on me? Lu Shiji's face was unsightly when he noticed that his thoughts had been seen through, but he still didn't forget to ridicule Duan Lingtian. Puhuai, trash, didn't you say that you're unafraid of me? Now, you don't even have the courage to battle me on the life and death arena. You really want to battle me on the life and death arena? Duan Lingtian glanced deeply at Lu Shizhe, as if he wanted to confirm it a step further. Lu Shizhe revealed an expression of disdain and contempt as he sneered. Of course, it just depends on if you have the courage of not. I can agree to battle you on the life and death arena. Right when everyone thought that Duan Lingtian wouldn't agree, Duan Lingtian spoke, and his words exceeded the expectations of everyone. Junior brother Duan Lingtian. Zheng Song's face went grim. You don't have to pay any attention to Lu Shizhe. How old is he and how old are you? Even if you don't dare agree to his challenge now, it's nothing, and it isn't a loss of face. Zheng Song, what does Duan Lingtian agreeing to my challenge have to do with you? Lu Shizhe was slightly angry out of embarrassment when he saw Zheng Song interfering once again. What, you have an objection? Zheng Song glanced coldly at Lu Shizhe, and his tone was terrifyingly calm. If you have an objection, I'll give you a chance, we'll battle on the life and death arena. If I can't kill you in a single move, I'll draw my sword and kill myself. How about it? Zheng Song's words could be said to be domineering, causing the crowd of inner court disciples to feel their blood boil when they heard it. Lu Shiji's face sank. He was only at the first level of the nascent soul stage, whereas Zheng Song was at the third level of the nascent soul stage. In terms of strength, Zheng Song was 2 times as strong as him. It wasn't difficult for Zheng Song to kill him in a single move. It was naturally impossible for him to agree to Zheng Song's challenge. How could Zheng Song not know what Lu Shizhe was thinking when he saw Lu Shiji's face flush red but hesitate to reply, and he had an expression of disdain as he said, if you don't dare, then shut up. He once again looked at Duan Lingtian and lightly shook his head. As far as he was concerned, although Duan Lingtian's natural talent in the martial Dao was formidable and was something that even made him feel embarrassed for his inferiority, Duan Lingtian hadn't fully matured yet after all. It was highly unlikely that Duan Lingtian would be a match for Lu Shizhe. So he wanted to stop Duan Lingtian's rashness. Rashness was a demon, and at times, it would even bring harm to oneself. He wanted to make Duan Lingtian wake up from it. But in next to no time, he was stunned. Don't worry senior brother Zheng Song, I'm confident. Duan Lingtian sent a voice transmission into Zheng Song's ears. You've broken through to the nascent soul stage. Zheng Song replied via voice transmission, and his tone had slight astonishment mixed within. No, I'm at the 9th level of the origin core stage now. Duan Lingtian replied. Then before Zheng Song could even reply, he turned around to look at Lu Shizhe before saying indifferently, Lu Shizhe, I can agree to your challenge, but you must agree to a condition of mine. If you're willing to agree, then I'll ascend the life and death arena with you right now. If you're not willing, then take it as I've never agreed to your challenge. What condition? When he heard Duan Lingtian's words, Lu Shizhe, who originally thought he would have no chance to kill Duan Lingtian, seemed frenzied, his eyes lit up abruptly and he was incomparably excited. Now, the crowd of inner court disciples present, including Zheng Song and Fan Jian, had all shot their gazes at Duan Lingtian. They were all curious. What condition did Duan Lingtian want Lu Shizhe to agree to? Under the gazes of everyone present, Duan Lingtian's gaze descended onto Fan Jian. This caused Fan Jian's face to go pale as a bad omen arose in his heart. It isn't impossible if you want me to agree to your challenge, but you must make Fan Jian ascend the life and death arena with you. I will battle the both of you, together. Duan Lingtian finally spoke. His words caused the atmosphere in the scene to become slightly strange. Duan Lingtian asked Fan Jian to ascend the life and death arena as well. 1 vs 2, could it be that this Duan Lingtian has gone mad? Does he really think he can kill both Lu Shizhe and Fan Jian? Madman, madman, almost no inner court disciple looked favorably upon Duan Lingtian. Although Duan Lingtian had once created many miracles of defeating a stronger opponent with a weaker strength, what Duan Lingtian faced now was instead a first-level nascent soul stage inner court disciple. Even though the first level of the nascent soul stage and the 9th level of the origin core stage were only a single level away, they were 1,000 miles apart. There was almost a difference of double the strength of the two. Zheng Song was stunned. Lu Shizhe was stunned as well. Lu Shizhe secretly heaved a sigh of relief when he heard the condition Duan Lingtian put forward, and at practically the first possible moment, he'd guessed Duan Lingtian's plans. What Duan Lingtian planned was none other than to put up a desperate fight and kill Fan Jian under his nose. Perhaps, I can make Fan Jian become the bait and lure him up the life and death arena. At that time, with me there, it would be completely impossible for him to have a chance to touch Fan Jian. Lu Shizhe thought in his heart, and a perfect idea arose in his heart. He didn't think that Duan Lingtian had the strength to defeat him. Duan Lingtian was only a 9th level origin core stage martial artist. Earlier, the reason he'd sounded out Duan Lingtian was precisely because he wanted to see if Duan Lingtian had broken through to the nascent soul stage. Once Duan Lingtian had broken through to the nascent soul stage, even if he was any more unwilling, he could only disperse any thought of going against Duan Lingtian. To the extent that he would leave the 7-star sword sect to avoid Duan Lingtian's revenge. He could imagine that even if Duan Lingtian had only just broken through to the first level of the nascent soul stage, with his ability to defeat a stronger opponent with a weaker strength, Duan Lingtian would surely be able to easily kill him. After he confirmed that Duan Lingtian was a 9th level origin core stage martial artist, he knew that this was the chance for him to kill Duan Lingtian. It was also the final chance. So long as he could provoke Duan Lingtian to the point Duan Lingtian ascended the life and death arena, then he could kill Duan Lingtian and be rid of any future worries. Lu Shiji's gaze descended onto Fan Jian and it caused Fan Jian's face to go ghastly pale. 361 Chapter 362, Number 1 Under the Nascent Soul Stage. Big Brother Lu, don't listen to this Duan Lingtian, you. At the same time that Fan Jian's face went ghastly pale, he was slightly panicked. Because, Fan Jian noticed that Lu Shizhe seemed as if he'd resolved to make Fan Jian battle Duan Lingtian on the life and death arena with him. He knew his own limitations. He was far from being a match for Duan Lingtian. If Duan Lingtian wanted to kill him, a single sword strike would be enough. But Fan Jian hadn't even finished speaking when he was interrupted by Lu Shizhe. Fan Jian, don't worry. With me, Lu Shizhe, there, I guarantee that you won't lose a single hair. Lu Shiji's speech was filled with strong confidence, the confidence of a nascent soul stage martial artist. What, you don't trust me? When he saw Fan Jian's expression was still unsightly and Fan Jian hadn't answered him for a long time, Lu Shizhe was in a slightly embarrassing situation and his face couldn't help but sink. Big Brother Lu, Fan Jian had a bitter expression. He wanted to tell Lu Shizhe that since Duan Lingtian wanted him to ascend the life and death arena, Duan Lingtian would surely be confident. But in the end, he didn't continue to finish what he wanted to say, because he'd noticed the resoluteness in Lu Shiji's eyes. He's known Lu Shizhe since a long time ago, and knew of Lu Shiji's behavior. He knew clearly that no one was able to stop Lu Shizhe from doing something he had already resolved to do, and saying any more was of no use. Don't worry, I attacked Duan Lingtian earlier precisely for the sake of sounding out his strength, and to see the advancement of his cultivation during this year. Since he hasn't broken through to the nascent soul stage, I naturally am unafraid of him. Right at this moment, Lu Shiji's voice transmission entered into Fan Jian's ears, causing Fan Jian's heart to stabilize. So it turns out that Big Brother Lu attacked earlier for the sake of sounding out Duan Lingtian's strength. The worry in Fan Jian's heart decreased slightly when he saw that Lu Shizhe was so confident. Suddenly, Fan Jian looked at Duan Lingtian and said coldly, Duan Lingtian, I, Fan Jian, can agree to your conditions. I'll ascend the life and death arena with Big Brother Lu to battle you. Duan Lingtian's face froze briefly when he heard Fan Jian and a strange expression appeared on his face. As if it was difficult for him to believe that Fan Jian would agree to this condition. But when his expression entered into the eyes of Lu Shizhe and Fan Jian, they instead thought that Duan Lingtian was afraid, and this caused their confidence to rise greatly. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and said in a low voice, Fan Jian, you're cowardly like a mouse, but you actually dared agree to battle me on the life and death arena. Truly unexpected. I hope you are true to your word. Otherwise, you, Duan Lingtian, will become an untrustworthy person in the future, and it will be difficult for you to gain a foothold in the 7-star sword sect. Fan Jian sneered, and he had a complacent expression. When he saw Duan Lingtian like this, He naturally thought that Duan Lingtian had intentionally asked him to ascend the life and death arena as a condition, because Duan Lingtian wanted him to retreat in the face of difficulties. At that time, Duan Lingtian could openly refuse Lu Shiji's challenge. At this moment, Fan Jian felt that he was so intelligent. HMPH. Duan Lingtian coldly swept Fan Jian with his gaze, and his mouth lightly moved. Duan Lingtian's origin energy that was condensed into sound broke through Fan Jian's eardrums. Fan Jian, even if I'm not a match for Lu Shijie, I'll still kill you before he makes a move against me. After that, I'll jump down the life and death arena. At that time, with the protection of senior brother Zheng Song, Lu Shijie is bound to be unable to kill me. Fan Jian's face went slightly grim when he heard Duan Lingtian's voice transmission, but he didn't back down. Then we'll have to see if it's you who kill me first, or big brother Lu who kills you first. Subsequently, Fan Jian transmitted what Duan Lingtian had said to Lu Shijie, and it caused Lu Shijie to be unable to refrain from squinting. Fan Jian, you can be at ease. He can't kill you with me there. Lu Shijie replied to Fan Jian with a voice transmission, and his tone was filled with strong confidence. I believe big brother Lu. Fan Jian hurriedly replied. Presently, Lu Shijie and Fan Jian weren't suspicious of Duan Lingtian's actions this time of agreeing to the life and death arena battle any longer. Duan Lingtian wasn't really confident, but instead wanted to take advantage of the battle. Battling the two of them on the life and death arena was fake, and wanting to kill Fan Jian before fleeing was the truth. Junior brother Duan Lingtian, shouldn't you consider it again? Zheng Song frowned, and he wanted to try stop Duan Lingtian again. Zheng Song's actions caused Lu Shijie and Fan Jian's expression to become slightly unsightly. At this moment, they were really worried that this opportunity would be destroyed by Zheng Song. Senior brother Zheng Song, when a man lives in the world, there are things he must do, and things he mustn't. Today, since I, Duan Lingtian, have said it, then I naturally will be true to my words. Duan Lingtian shook his head and refused Zheng Song's good intentions. The surrounding crowd was in an uproar. This Duan Lingtian is really going to battle Lu Shijie and Fan Jian on the life and death arena. He's simply gone mad. 9th level of the Origin Core stage wants to battle a 1st level Nascent Soul stage. Wishful thinking. No one within the surrounding crowd of 7-star Sword Sect Inner Court disciples looked favorably on Duan Lingtian. Let's go to the life and death arena. Lu Shijie swept Duan Lingtian with his cold gaze, then called Fan Jian before walking to the other side of the peak. The life and death arena of the 7-star Sword Sect's Dubi Peak was at the peak of the mountain, and it was situated on the side of the precipice. It rose straight up from the ground and was covered with tiles that seemed as if they were completely tainted with blood. Whoosh, whoosh. When they arrived at the life and death arena, Lu Shijie and Fan Jian's figures flashed out to ascend the arena first. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian and Zheng Song walked shoulder to shoulder with the crowd of inner court disciples following behind them, and they slowly walked towards the life and death arena in a formidable array. Junior brother Duan Lingtian, are you really confident? Although Duan Lingtian's voice transmissions revealed strong confidence, Zheng Song still couldn't help himself from being slightly worried. He'd always been grateful to Duan Lingtian. It was Duan Lingtian who allowed his father to break through to the Void Initiation stage in one go. This was a favor that was as high as the heavens. It was difficult to return. Senior brother Zheng Song, it isn't the first time I've ascended the 7-star Sword Sect's life and death arena, but it has always been my opponents that have perished on the life and death arena. Don't worry, I'll be fine. Duan Lingtian had a carefree expression, as if he would remain unfazed even if Mount Tai collapsed before him. Zheng Song nodded and didn't say anything further. He chose to believe Duan Lingtian. Based on Duan Lingtian's past deeds, he wasn't a rash person. No one would look favorably upon him every time he ascended the life and death arena, but he would exceed everyone's expectations every time and kill all of his opponents. Duan Lingtian had created too many miracles. Unfortunately, he didn't have the chance to see any with his own 2 eyes. This time, it wasn't easy to get this opportunity. He anticipated it extremely. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian had arrived before the life and death arena, whereas the surroundings of the life and death arena were filled with people. So long as it was someone that was at the top of Dubi Peak, then no matter if it was an inner court disciple or inner court elder, they were all gathered here to watch the excitement now. What's going on? Some of the inner court disciples that had only just arrived couldn't refrain from asking curiously. Before long, they all came to understand what had happened after they heard the explanation of the other inner court disciples. So it turns out that Duan Lingtian is about to battle Lu Shizhe and Fan Jian on the life and death arena. Fighting two by himself, Duan Lingtian has broken through to the nascent soul stage. This was their first thought when they heard of this matter, and they couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. No, some of the inner court disciples who knew the facts shook their heads. Duan Lingtian hasn't broken through to the nascent soul stage yet and is only at the 9th level of the origin core stage. The reason he's willing to ascend the life and death arena is mostly because of Fan Jian. Exactly. At the bottom of it all, the conflict between him and senior brother Lu Shizhe was because of Fan Jian. Perhaps, he wants to use this opportunity to kill Fan Jian. Kill Fan Jian. He wants to kill Fan Jian while senior brother Lu Shizhe is present. It's extremely difficult. It's difficult indeed. Regardless of how the inner court disciples discussed it, the life and death arena challenge had already been confirmed and was difficult to change. On the life and death arena, Lu Shizhe stood there in the inner court disciple attire on his body fluttered with the wind, seeming to possess a graceful bearing. Whereas Fan Jian now stood behind Lu Shizhe, as if he would only feel safe when he was hiding behind Lu Shiji's back. Duan Lingtian. Lu Shiji's fierce gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian and was filled with ruthlessness and bloodthirst. Duan Lingtian nodded to Zheng Song, then his body flashed out, as if he transformed into a spirit serpent as he lightly descended onto the life and death arena to stand in confrontation with Lu Shizhe. Duan Lingtian didn't look at Lu Shizhe when he ascended the life and death arena, and instead he looked at Fan Jian who was behind Lu Shizhe as he asked indifferently. Fan Jian, you plan to hide behind Lu Shiji's back the whole time? Fan Jian's expression flickered between a livid and ashen expression when he heard Duan Lingtian. Haha, this Fan Jian is truly cowardly. It's not surprising. Although Fan Jian has broken through to the 9th level of the origin core stage lately, when he is faced with Duan Lingtian who possessed the strength to cripple an arm of the 9th level origin core stage Wu Yongqian 1 year ago, his strength is still not enough. Yeah, 1 year ago, Duan Lingtian was only at the 8th level of the origin core stage, and he was even able to cripple the arm of a 9th level origin core stage inner court disciple. Now, he's broken through to the 9th level of the origin core stage, sweeping through all the martial artists in the entire origin core stage would be nothing difficult, and he can even be called the number 1 under the nascent soul stage. At the same time that the crowd of inner court disciples that surrounded the life and death arena ridiculed Fan Jian, they weren't the slightest bit stingy with their praise to Duan Lingtian. Unfortunately, Duan Lingtian is still too rash. Yeah, if it was in another 2 years, he might be able to surpass senior brother Lu Shizhe. He was too impatient. Before long, some of the inner court disciples couldn't help but sigh, as they felt pity for Duan Lingtian. As far as they were concerned, even if Duan Lingtian was able to kill Fan Jian today, it would still be difficult for Duan Lingtian to survive. After all, besides Fan Jian, Duan Lingtian still had to face Lu Shizhe who was an inner court disciple at the nascent soul stage. The corners of Lu Shiji's mouth curled into a cold smile when he saw Duan Lingtian ascend the life and death arena. Duan Lingtian, you're really bold, actually daring to ascend the life and death arena. Today, I, Lu Shifei, will send you off. Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at Lu Shifei, then paid no attention to him and instead shot his gaze at Fan Jian who was behind Lu Shizhe. In the eyes of the spectators, Duan Lingtian's target wasn't Lu Shizhe but was Fan Jian instead. Fan Jian's face went pale when he noticed Duan Lingtian's burning gaze and his heart felt oppressed. Before Duan Lingtian who was similarly at the 9th level of the origin core stage, he felt that his entire cultivation at the 9th level of the origin core stage was a cultivation only in name. Fan Jian, that day, out of respect for Elder Lu Chu, I intended to forgive and forget the grudges between us. Unfortunately, you didn't cherish it properly. Today, I won't be merciful again. Coldness arose within Duan Lingtian's eyes and his speech contained bone-piercing icy coldness mixed within. 362 Chapter 363, Lu Shizhe, dead. Everyone present could deeply feel the rage within Duan Lingtian's words. Fan Jian's face went pale as he hurriedly hid behind Lu Shizhe, as he was extremely afraid that Duan Lingtian would suddenly launch a killing blow at him. HMPH. Duan Lingtian snorted coldly the instant move, his entire figure tearing through the air as he flashed out. Dust suffused the air in everywhere he passed. Spirit Serpent Movement Technique. Duan Lingtian seemed to have transformed into a spirit serpent as he directly flashed out to Fan Jian's location, and Lu Shizhe who stood before Fan Jian was completely disregarded by him. Whoosh! Suddenly, a narrow sword appeared out of thin air in Duan Lingtian's hand. At the instant this narrow sword appeared, the 120 ancient mammoth silhouettes above Duan Lingtian instantly increased by 45 ancient mammoth silhouettes. The strength of 165 ancient mammoths. Grade 6 Spirit Sword. Exclamations in surprise rose and fell all around the life and death arena, as they were all shocked by the narrow sword in Duan Lingtian's hand. The amplification of strength of this narrow sword is almost 40%. It was obviously a grade 6 spirit sword. Duan Lingtian has a grade 6 spirit sword. Where did junior brother Duan Lingtian get a grade 6 spirit sword? Zheng Song had an astonished expression. This grade 6 spirit sword was left behind by the withered old man that was killed by Zhang Shouyang at the ancient city of Everlast's Eternal Jade Restaurant. Zhang Shouyang had gifted this grade 6 spirit sword that was his spoils from the battle to Duan Lingtian, and it had become the strongest weapon in Duan Lingtian's possession. Big brother Lu, save me. Even though he'd hid behind Lu Shizhe, Fan Jian still didn't feel safe at all. Now, when he saw Duan Lingtian withdrawing a grade 6 spirit sword and exerting the strength of 165 ancient mammoths, he was completely terrified. His heart was utterly incapable of arising the thought of resistance. Sword drawing arts. Duan Lingtian's gaze was slightly cold and his body was like a spirit serpent as he circled past Lu Shizhe, and the sword in his hand flashed out like a bolt of lightning, flying straight towards Fan Jian's throat, desiring to kill Fan Jian with a single sword strike. You're courting death. At the beginning, Lu Shizhe was distracted by the grade 6 spirit sword in Duan Lingtian's hand. Now that he'd recovered from his shock, the grade 7 spirit sword in his hand transformed into a sword light as it directly flashed towards the narrow sword in Duan Lingtian's hand. He wanted to blast away the narrow sword in Duan Lingtian's hand and save Fan Jian. Cloud Peak Sword Technique. The sword light in Lu Shiji's hand was swift to the limit, and as it flashed out, it seemed to carry along the strength to split mountains. At the same time, above Lu Shizhe, over 250 lifelike ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form. The strength of this sword strike of Lu Shiji's was an entire 90+ ancient mammoths worth of strength, stronger than the strength on Duan Lingtian's sword. Whoosh! His sword flashed out like a towering mountain that pierced through the clouds, had smashed down with a bang, and this was precisely secret of the Cloud Peak Sword technique. When Duan Lingtian was chasing after Fan Jian, he seemed as if he'd disregarded Lu Shifei, but his heart was completely on Lu Shizhe. So, Duan Lingtian noticed Lu Shizhe striking out with his sword at the first possible moment. When Duan Lingtian noticed that the grade 7 spirit sword in Lu Shiji's hand was nearing towards his sword, the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a sneer, and mixed within his sneer was traces that implied his scheme was successful. Right when the gazes of everyone surrounding the life and death arena squinted and descended onto Duan Lingtian, wanting to see if Duan Lingtian was able to disperse that sword strike of Lu Shizhe. Bring it on! Duan Lingtian suddenly shouted out lightly. In the next moment, everyone noticed that Duan Lingtian's figure that was flashing towards Fan Jian had suddenly trembled, then like a nimble spirit serpent, he twisted in a curve to move to intercept Lu Shizhe who was attacking him. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a cold smile. Sword drawing arts. The grade 6 spirit sword abruptly changed course as it transformed into a swifter bolt of lightning, and Duan Lingtian seemed as if he was waiting for this moment for a long time. Not good. Lu Shizhe was originally filled with confidence, but when he saw Duan Lingtian suddenly changing direction and Duan Lingtian's sword flashing straight towards him, a bad omen arose within his heart. There was only two possibilities why Duan Lingtian dared do this. Number 1. Duan Lingtian was confident. Number 2. Duan Lingtian was courting death. Obviously, Duan Lingtian wasn't the type of person who would court death. But now that the situation was dangerous, even if Lu Shizhe was uneasy in his heart and had realized that something had changed, he could still only brace himself and charge forward. Cloud Peak Sword Technique. The sword strike that was heavy like a peak that pierced into the clouds moved to greet Duan Lingtian's sword strike that followed Lu Shizhe like a shadow. The strength of over 250 ancient mammoth silhouettes exploded out completely. Die! Lu Shiji's eyes revealed a vicious gaze as the sword in his hand fiercely descended. He didn't think that Duan Lingtian's ability of defeating a stronger opponent with a weaker cultivation would be able to surpass the gap of the strength of 90+ ancient mammoths. Duan Lingtian's expression was calm as he commanded inwardly. Quake energy. Instantly, the origin energy atop the grade 6 spirit sword in Duan Lingtian's hand raged as it started to vibrate with a frequency that grew higher and higher. And it greeted the sword strike of Lu Shijie that was heavy like a peak that pierced into the clouds. Clang! Instantly, the sword in Duan Lingtian's hand collided with the sword in Lu Shijie's hand. In this instant, time seemed as if it had completely frozen. Around the life and death arena, the crowd of inner court disciples and inner court elders opened their eyes wide and held their breaths as they stared at the scene before them. The strength of Duan Lingtian's sword strike was comparable to the strength of 165 ancient mammoths. The strength of Lu Shijie's sword strike was comparable to the strength of 250+ ancient mammoths. Such a difference in strength that was without suspense. If it was any ordinary time, they would all think that Lu Shijie's strength was sufficient to easily attain victory. But today, the person Lu Shijie had encountered was Duan Lingtian, the legendary disciple of the 7-star sword sect. The legendary disciple who had once used a strength weaker than his opponent to kill many existences that were much stronger than him. They were curious in their heart. Today, would it be Lu Shijie's formidable strength that crushed Duan Lingtian and even killed Duan Lingtian, or would it be Duan Lingtian who created a miracle once again, and used a weaker strength to overcome a stronger strength, turning defeat into victory and killing Lu Shijie? Everyone stared intently at this scene. They knew that the result was about to surface. Of course, more than 90% of the people amongst them didn't think that Duan Lingtian would be able to create another miracle. After all, the difference was too great. A difference of over 90 ancient mammoths, this was practically a gap that could not be passed. Clang! No matter what were the thoughts of the crowd of people surrounding the life and death arena, the grade 6 spirit sword in Duan Lingtian's hand had collided with the grade 7 spirit sword in Lu Shijie's hand after all. The two terrifying forces fiercely collided at almost the exact same moment. Origin energy shook the air and a formidable aura spread out to transform into a gust of wind that swept through the entire life and death arena, causing the dust on the life and death arena to rise and suffuse into the air. Om, 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 comma. The vibration of the origin energy atop the grade 6 spirit sword in Duan Lingtian's hand had surged to the limit. The quake energy had risen to the limit and twisted out. Ah! Suddenly, a miserable shrill cry tore through the sky, and accompanying it was the sound of an iron weapon dropping onto the ground. Right when the surrounding crowd of people hadn't had the time to react to this sudden development, everyone clearly saw Duan Lingtian's body trembled before instantly shooting towards Lu Shijie, who was blasted to retreat. Whoosh! The sword strike, which contained vibrating origin energy, entered into Lu Shifei's chest like it was piercing through dried leaves, going straight through Lu Shifei. Fresh blood shot out violently, as if it has condensed into numerous eye-piercing red roses. Duan Lingtian raised his hand to put away his sword, and Lu Shijie's body swayed a few times before falling to die on the ground with everlasting regret and a pair of eyes that were still wide open. Lu Shijie, dead. Duan Lingtian stood beside Lu Shijie's corpse, not moving like a mountain, as if he'd transformed into an invincible god of war. Whoosh! After the surroundings of the life and death arena was deathly silent for a while, it was completely seething with excitement. Senior brother Lu Shijie is dead. Oh my god! The strength of his sword strength was comparable to the strength of 250+ ancient mammoths, but it was actually smashed by Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian's sword strike seemed to only possess the strength of 165 ancient mammoths, right? He was actually still able to defeat an opponent with a stronger strength even when the difference was the strength of 90+ ancient mammoths. Abnormal. Too abnormal, comma. The crowd of inner court disciples were all shocked. Even those inner court elders now looked at Duan Lingtian with gazes that contained slight astonishment. Although they'd heard of Duan Lingtian's deeds in the past, seeing and hearing were two completely different things. A difference of 90+ ancient mammoths. When he heard the astonished discussion of the crowd of inner court disciples, the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a faint arc. Since he'd cultivated the third form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique, the worm python form, to perfection, his quake energy had increased to the limit. Its scope of effect was within the strength of 100 ancient mammoths. In other words, so long as the strength of Duan Lingtian's opponent hadn't surpassed him by the strength of over 100 ancient mammoths, then his quake energy would be effective. Lu Shijie's strength at full capacity was indeed strong, and was comparable to the strength of over 250 ancient mammoths. However, it still didn't drag open a difference of over 100 ancient mammoths in strength from Duan Lingtian. So, the moment Duan Lingtian's quake energy was utilized, he'd still died. Moreover, even when Duan Lingtian relied on the grade 6 spirit sword to exert a strength of 165 ancient mammoths, he was still holding back. After all, the base strength that Duan Lingtian was able to exert now wasn't the strength of 120 ancient mammoths that ordinary 9th level origin core stage martial artists possessed, and was instead the strength of 131 ancient mammoths. From the beginning until the end, he still held back the strength of 11 ancient mammoths when he made a move against Lu Shizhe. This strength of 11 ancient mammoths, if amplified via a grade 6 spirit sword, it would be the strength of 15 ancient mammoths. Duan Lingtian had held back the strength of an entire 15 ancient mammoths. Even then, Lu Shizhe was still killed by him. A straightforward sword strike that directly killed Lu Shizhe. The knot in Duan Lingtian's heart was completely opened after he killed Lu Shizhe. He's used his own strength to make Lu Shizhe pay for what he had done that day, pay a price of his life. Whoosh! Suddenly, Duan Lingtian heard a gust of wind sound out by his ears. When he glanced over, he noticed that Fan Jian, who was dumbstruck earlier, had recovered from his shock, and desired to flash down from the life and death arena to flee. Want to flee? The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a sneer, then his figure flashed out as if he'd transformed into wind. The origin energy beneath his feet vibrated slightly, with a frequency that grew higher by the moment. When Duan Lingtian's utilized the quake energy on his feet, his speed had become more than 50% swifter than usual, and in the blink of an eye, he'd chased up to Fan Jian to block Fan Jian's path. The instant Fan Jian stopped his movement when he saw Duan Lingtian appear before him, his face went ghastly pale. Duan Lingtian, let me off. I guarantee that I won't go against you in the future, I won't dare do it again. 363 Chapter 364, Zhao Lin's background. Duan Lingtian's gaze was incomparably calm when faced with Fan Jian begging for mercy. Fan Jian, I've said it before. I gave you a chance, it was you yourself who didn't cherish us properly, since it's like that, then go to hell with Lu Shizhe. No, when he realized Duan Lingtian wouldn't let him off, Fan Jian revealed a savage expression as he shouted out explosively, then the origin energy beneath his feet skyrocketed as he charged to the other side, desiring to flee. Idiot! Duan Lingtian's expression was calm as he once again stomped out with quake energy on his feet, and his speed was so fast that he was even swifter than an ordinary first-level nascent soul stage martial artist. In the blink of an eye, he'd caught up to Fan Jian. Duan Lingtian's gaze was slightly cold as the narrow sword he held in his hand lightly trembled. Sword drawing arts. The sword strike that was swift like lightning easily swept past Fan Jian's throat, and fresh blood shot out to cover the sky. Whoosh! Fan Jian's body that was charging forward stopped halfway, then it was carried out by momentum to fiercely plunge down, tumbling on the ground to drag out a long trail of blood. Dead. Silent. The scene was deadly silent. The gazes of everyone couldn't help but descend onto the young man that stood on the life and death arena. This young man had created a miracle once again. In a head-on confrontation, he'd used a cultivation at the 9th level of the Origin Core stage to kill a first-level nascent soul stage martial artist and a 9th level Origin Core stage martial artist. It was simply inconceivable. Duan Lingtian searched the corpses of Lu Shizhe and Fan Jian for a moment, taking their spatial rings and spirit weapons before walking down from the life and death arena with satisfaction to rejoin Zheng Song's side. Meanwhile, Zheng Song had recovered from his shock and he had a bitter smile on his face as he gazed at Duan Lingtian. Junior brother Duan Lingtian, you really amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Duan Lingtian smiled. Senior brother Zheng Song is the peak master at Mizar Hall. I just happened to want to ask him for a cup of tea. Let's go. Zheng Song nodded with a smile, then called Duan Lingtian before leaving the life and death arena. Everywhere they passed, the crowd of inner court disciples respectfully opened up a path. Only when Duan Lingtian's figure disappeared before their eyes did the deathly silent surroundings of the life and death arena recover its bustling state. The gazes of most people descended onto the two corpses atop the life and death arena. Lu Shizhe and Fan Jian are truly unfortunate. They actually offended that malefic existence. According to my knowledge, it seems that very few disciples who defended that malefic existence are able to live. I really never imagined that after Duan Lingtian broke through to the 9th level of the Origin Core stage, he was even able to kill a first-level nascent soul stage martial artist. Yeah, it's truly unbelievable. Even more shocking was that he actually possesses a grade 6 spirit sword. After all, Even in our 7-star sword sect, there aren't many grade 6 spirit weapons, moreover, they're all in the control of the various peak masters and guardian elders. In the past, Duan Lingtian was only a famous outer court disciple. After today, his name is bound to spread throughout the inner court. All the discussions of the inner court disciples were filled with shock towards Duan Lingtian's strength. On the way to Mizar Hall, Zheng Song asked Duan Lingtian, "Junior brother Duan Lingtian, when did you return?" Duan Lingtian smiled. "I just returned. Just returned." Zheng Song couldn't help but be startled when he heard this. "You just returned and you went to look for Lu Shizhe?" Duan Lingtian nodded. "Looks like you really weren't willing to wait for even a moment, but your improvement is too shocking. 1 year ago, you weren't even able to fight back against Lu Shizhe. 1 year later, you killed him on the life and death arena in only one move." As he finished speaking, slight fear couldn't help but arise within the eyes of Zheng Song, this third-level nascent soul stage martial artist. Duan Lingtian's ability was truly too strange. It was difficult to fathom. Duan Lingtian smiled. "It's not bad, I barely improved slightly." "Barely improved slightly." The corners of Zheng Song's mouth twitched when he heard this. This junior brother Duan Lingtian will really not stop until his words astonish someone. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian and Zheng Song had arrived at Mizar Hall. Atop the pavilion in Mizar Hall, Peak Master Duan Lingtian lightly smiled as he greeted the Peak Master of Mizar Peak, Zheng Fan. Amongst the higher-ups of the 7-star sword sect, only Zheng Fan was close to him. "When did you return, kid?" Zheng Fan laughed heartily. "I returned today, and I came to ask for a cup of tea from Peak Master." Duan Lingtian laughed slyly. Zheng Fan's brows knit. As he started to get busy preparing the tea set, he asked curiously, "Where did you go during this year?" Duan Lingtian didn't hold back and said straightforwardly, "The ancient city of Everlast." "The ancient city of Everlast?" Zheng Fan was surprised. "You actually went to such a faraway place? That place is extremely chaotic." "Kid, you're really too brave to even dare to go there." Zheng Feng didn't know that Duan Lingtian had the protection of a 7th-level void-prying stage martial artist when he went there, and when Duan Lingtian returned, he even had the protection of a void initiation stage expert. Otherwise he wouldn't be so alarmed about it. Zheng Fen poured a cup of tea for Duan Lingtian, then he glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian as he asked, "Your cultivation has increased again during this year, right?" Duan Lingtian hadn't even spoken. "Father, junior brother Duan Lingtian is already a 9th-level origin core stage martial artist. Not only that, he already ascended the life and death arena as soon as he returned today and killed Lu Shizhe there." Meanwhile, Zheng Song had walked into the pavilion as well and sat by Duan Lingtian's side as he said with a smile. Zheng Fan couldn't help but be stunned when he heard Zheng Song. Zheng Fan looked at Duan Lingtian with an astonished expression. "You're currently able to kill a 1st-level nascent soul stage martial artist with a cultivation at the 9th level of the origin core stage." Duan Lingtian laughed. "It's just that my luck was good." Luck. As the peak master of the 7-star sword sect's Mizar Peak, Zheng Fan naturally knew that it was impossible that this was luck. "Duan Lingtian, you're too modest. Although I know of your ability to defeat an opponent stronger than yourself, I never imagined that you're actually even able to kill a 1st-level nascent soul stage martial artist." 9th-level origin core stage martial artist killed a 1st-level nascent soul stage martial artist. If it was in the past, he would entirely not believe it. But now, he wasn't surprised in the slightest when all this happened to Duan Lingtian, as the mysteriousness of Duan Lingtian was something he'd experienced for a long time now. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled, then he picked up the teacup and savored the fragrant tea. After a short moment, Zheng Fan looked at Duan Lingtian and said slowly, "Duan Lingtian, what conflict do you have with Zhao Lin?" "Zan Lin." Duan Lingtian's brows knit as he asked in a low voice. "Peak Master, when I left 1 year ago, could it be that Zhao Lin really did chase after me?" Zheng Fan nodded. "Exactly, but at the critical moment, he was stopped by me. In the end, he could only obediently return to the 7-star sword sect. His appearance at that time seemed as if he wouldn't stop until he killed you." Duan Lingtian's eyes flickered with a cold light. "Zhao Lin. You really don't learn." Zheng Fan continued. "Duan Lingtian, if the matter between you and Zhao Lin is difficult to disclose, it's alright if you don't speak of it. But I still want to remind you, Zhao Lin is not to be trifled with." As he spoke up to this point, Zheng Fan's tone contained slight fear. Isn't he just an outer court disciple of Megre's Peak? Duan Lingtian frowned and was slightly puzzled. How could it be so simple? Zheng Fan shook his head. Do you think a mere Megre's Peak outer court elder is capable of making the outer court martial competition I presided over become a life and death battle? Duan Lingtian was stunned. The changing of the outer court martial competition to a life and death battle that time was related to Zhao Lin. Zheng Fan nodded. He has such great capability. Duan Lingtian frowned. When he recalled the outer court martial competition from that day, he remembered that Zhao Lin was indeed present at that time. Zhao Lin and Shi Hao had come together, and Zhao Lin only left after Shi Hao was killed by him. Looks like Zhao Lin ought to have colluded with Shi Hao that time and had achieved some sort of agreement against me. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian had guessed many things. Some of his past questions had been completely revealed. Zheng Fan shook his head. If Zhao Lin is only an outer court elder, he naturally doesn't have such capability, but the existence behind him isn't simple. Duan Lingtian was able to notice that when Zheng Fan spoke up to this point, his expression had become serious. Could it be that the sect leader is behind him? Duan Lingtian took a deep breath as he asked. In the 7-star sword sect, there wasn't many people that was able to make Zheng Fan feel afraid. It isn't the sect leader. Zheng Fan shook his head, and at the same time that Duan Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief, he continued. But, there isn't much difference between that existence and the sect leader. Duan Lingtian's mood that had just eased up was once again agitated and he said with a bitter smile, Peak Master, stop beating around the bush and speak frankly. I'm not beating around the bush, I just want you to understand the existence behind Zhao Lin. As he finished speaking, Zheng Fan glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian. I wonder if you have heard of the 2 guardian elders of our 7-star sword sect. Guardian elders. Instantly, Duan Lingtian's eyes squinted as his face sank. Peak Master, you wouldn't be wanting to tell me that Zhao Lin is related to the Guardian Elder, right? Duan Lingtian had heard Lu Chu mention the 2 Guardian Elders of the 7-star sword sect some time ago. Although he didn't know much about the Guardian Elders, he knew that the place the 2 Guardian Elders cultivated was respectively one of the 9 spirit points in the 7-star sword sect. Not only that, the status of the Guardian Elders was special within the 7-star sword sect, and to a certain extent they were equal to the sect leader. Moreover, because of their seniority, even the 7-star sword sect's leader had to respectfully address them as martial uncle when he met them. Exactly. Zheng Fan nodded. Zhao Lin is the grandson of one of the 2 guardian elders of our 7-star sword sect, Elder Ming. The son of Elder Ming died long ago, so he's especially doting on this only grandson of his. Just like the sudden change of rules of the outer court martial competition, it was precisely because Zhao Lin had gone to ask Elder Ming. Of course, he didn't tell Elder Ming that all this was directed at you, and he only said that he hoped that the outer court martial competition was able to stimulate the potential and survival instinct of the outer court disciples in this way. Stimulate the potential and survival instinct of the outer court disciples. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a sneer when he heard of Zhao Lin's excuse. The excuse of that Zhao Lin is indeed honorable. I never expected that Zhao Lin would have such a background, I still thought that he was only an ordinary outer court elder. Duan Lingtian's heart slightly sank. 364 Chapter 365, Windworm Form. After he bid farewell to Zheng Fan and Zheng Song, Duan Lingtian left Mizar Hall, yet his mood was slightly heavy. Zhao Lin's background caused him to feel fear. Before long, he seemed to have thought of something and he heaved a sigh of relief. What am I thinking so much for? It's fine if that Zhao Lin doesn't come provoke me, but if he does cause trouble, then I, Duan Lingtian, am not easily offended. A strand of cold light flashed within Duan Lingtian's eyes. Presently, his spiritual force had already advanced to the breakthrough point between the nascent soul stage and the void-prying stage, and he was only a step away from advancing his spiritual force to the void-prying stage. Once his spiritual force broke through to the void-prying stage, he would be able to inscribe even stronger inscriptions. Inscriptions that were sufficient to deal with void-prying stage martial artists. Since he straightened out his thinking, Duan Lingtian's mood became free from worry and he took large strides towards the Megre's Peak. Today, he killed Lu Shizhe and Fan Jian, and it could be considered as fulfilling a wish of his. Today, when Lu Shizhe launched a sneak attack against him, he'd guessed Lu Shiji's intentions and knew that Lu Shizhe was sounding him out. After Lu Shizhe sounded him out, he noticed the killing intent in Lu Shiji's eyes. He understood that Lu Shizhe wanted to kill him. In this way, Duan Lingtian made use of the opportunity, and not only did he cheat Lu Shizhe to ascend the life and death arena, but even the initiator of all this, Fan Jian, was cheated up the life and death arena by him as well. When Lu Shizhe and Fan Jian ascended the life and death arena, they were doomed to meet their end. Duan Lingtian naturally would show no mercy towards two people that wanted to kill him, so he completely cut off the weeds by the roots. Megres Peak, Duan Lingtian, am back. Duan Lingtian stepped onto the chain bridge that headed to Megres Peak, and his brows raised as he gazed at Megres Peak that shot into the sky and was concealed within the mist and clouds. After passing across the chain bridge, Duan Lingtian stepped foot on the platform of Megres Peak. Senior brother Duan Lingtian. Senior brother Duan Lingtian. Everywhere he passed, all the Megres Peak disciples respectfully bowed to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian replied to all of them with a smile, then walked into Megres Peak. The group of Megres Peak disciples couldn't help but sigh with emotion as they gazed at Duan Lingtian's disappearing figure. It's been 1 year since we saw senior brother Duan Lingtian, but it feels like his cultivation seemed to have advanced again. You're even able to perceive this? I guessed it. Actually, it isn't difficult to guess. With the senior brother Duan Lingtian's natural talent in the martial Tao, even if he hasn't broken through to the nascent soul stage, he has surely already broken through to the 9th level of the origin core stage after 1 year. You're right, right when the crowd of Megres Peak disciples were discussing animatedly. Breaking news. Breaking news. A sound that was like a thunderclap that contained origin energy spread through the entire surroundings of the Megres Peak Trade Hall. Instantly, everyone looked towards the source of the sound. A Megres Peak disciple had an excited expression as he left the chain bridge and stepped onto Megres Peak. Just a little bit ago today, senior brother Duan Lingtian used his cultivation at the 9th level of the origin core stage to kill the 9th level origin core stage inner court disciple, Fan Jian, and the 1st level nascent soul stage inner court disciple, Lu Shizhe, on the life and death arena. After the Megres Peak disciple successfully drew the gazes of everyone, he let out the hot gossip. Instantly, the surroundings of the trade hall were deathly silent. Duan Lingtian killing Fan Jian, who was at the 9th level of the origin core stage, was not surprising to them. But that Lu Shizhe. What? Senior brother Duan Lingtian killed Lu Shizhe? I heard that 1 year ago, Lu Shizhe launched 2 surprise attacks on senior brother Duan Lingtian, and even heavily injured senior brother Duan Lingtian and knocked him out. But I never expected that after 1 year, senior brother Duan Lingtian would take revenge domineeringly and directly kill him. Senior brother Duan Lingtian is too strong. Even if 1 year has passed, senior brother Duan Lingtian is 21 years old at most, right? When he's 21 years old, he killed a nascent soul stage martial artist, not to mention the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, even the entire Darkstone Empire. Such a monster has never appeared before, right? For a time, Duan Lingtian's reputation was like a sun that had shot into the sky. Now, amongst the Megres Peak disciples, perhaps there were some who didn't know the name of the Peak Master, Wu Dao. But Duan Lingtian's name was something everyone knew. Now that his spiritual force has broken through to the point that it was on the verge of breaking through to the void-prying stage, Duan Lingtian was already capable of easily detecting the aura of a void-prying stage martial artist. Even if a void-prying stage martial artist were to follow him, he would still be able to notice them. So when he returned to the stalactite cave on the peak of Megres Peak, he didn't have to be as cautious as before and circle around Megres Peak for a long time. After he stretched out his spiritual force and noticed no one was following him, Duan Lingtian returned to the stalactite cave. Within the stalactite cave, another 2 drops of 10,000-year stalactite milk were within the pool. 2 drops in a year, collecting another bottle is by no means easy. Duan Lingtian shook the pill bottle in his hand as he shook his head and laughed. Before long, Duan Lingtian sat on the stone platform and slowly closed his eyes. He didn't cultivate. Presently, the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique's 3rd form, the Worm Python form, had already been cultivated to perfection by him. If he wanted to continue cultivating, then he must familiarize himself with the records of the 4th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique that were contained within the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor. The 4th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique was the Windworm form. Now, Duan Lingtian was seriously comprehending the mental cultivation method of the Windworm form. The Windworm form contained a high-grade Earth rank martial skill attached to it. Whirlwind. When Duan Lingtian completely understood the Windworm form, he couldn't help but be stunned. According to the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, once he started cultivating the windworm form, he would be able to start cultivating the high-grade earth rank movement technique, whirlwind. It was to the extent that he could rely on whirlwind to comprehend force. Force, normally speaking, only void-prying stage martial artists that have overcame the 6-9 heavenly tribulation are able to come into initial contact with it. An earth rank martial skill can only reveal its might after one comprehends force and is able to control force like one's arm. Normally speaking, only void-prying stage martial artists are able to cultivate an earth rank martial skill. The memories of the rebirth martial emperor flashed within Duan Lingtian's mind. But, according to the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, if he were to cultivate according to the windworm form created by the rebirth martial emperor, he would be able to cultivate the earth rank movement technique, whirlwind, that was attached with it in advance, and rely on it to comprehend wind force. Wind force belonged to the force of nature, and it was similarly divided into elementary force, half-step advanced force, and advanced force. Once he comprehends advanced wind force, then a further step of improvement would be to comprehend wind concept. Wind concept was similar to the earth concept that Zhang Shouyang had comprehended. They were both concepts of nature. I truly never expected, Duan Lingtian was stunned for a short moment before revealing a smile. As expected of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique that the rebirth martial emperor experiences 2 lifetimes to create, the super cultivation method that transcends top cultivation methods. It's actually able to allow one to start comprehending force at the nascent soul stage. It's simply unbelievable. Duan Lingtian clearly knew what comprehending force at the nascent soul stage meant. For example, once he comprehended wind force when he was at the first level of the nascent soul stage, then once he utilized his elementary wind force, he would obtain a strength of an extra 200 ancient mammoths. Once he comprehended half-step wind force, his strength would obtain an addition of the strength of 500 ancient mammoths. Once he comprehended advanced wind force, his strength would obtain an addition of the strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths. The strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths. What sort of idea was that? After all, even a 9th-level nascent soul stage martial artist only had a strength comparable to 1,200 ancient mammoths before being amplified by a spirit weapon. If I'm able to comprehend advanced wind force when I'm at the first level of the nascent soul stage, then no one beneath the void-prying stage would be a match for me. Duan Lingtian's heart shook as he thought in his heart. Of course, he knew that all this was only his imagination. Comprehending force was an extremely long process. Besides requiring an extremely high comprehension ability, it still required extremely strong willpower and consistent hard work. The biggest feature of the first form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique, the Spirit Serpent form, was to temper my body's flexibility. The biggest feature of the second form, the Raging Python form, was to temper my body and allow my body to possess the strength of a raging python. The biggest feature of the third form, the Worm Python form, was to bestow me with quake energy that merged with my origin energy to allow me to defeat a stronger opponent when I'm weaker. Duan Lingtian recalled the cultivation he'd gone through up to this point and he slightly pondered. Now, the biggest feature of the fourth form, the Windworm form, is to allow me to cultivate whirlwind and comprehend wind force, to possess the speed of a wind WIRM. Duan Lingtian's mood surged and it couldn't calm down for a long time. The windworm form gave him too great of a shock. Nascent soul stage martial artist comprehending wind force, I truly can't wait. Duan Lingtian slowly calmed down his restless mood. After he calmed down, he started cultivating 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique, windworm form. When Duan Lingtian calmed down and started cultivating, he didn't know that the matter of him killing the first-level nascent soul stage inner court disciple, Lu Shizhe, had practically spread throughout the entire 7-star sword sect. Dubi Peak, Merrick Hall. Duan Lingtian's natural talent is not bad indeed. In only a year, he killed Lu Shizhe and took revenge for what happened a year ago. A blue-clothed middle-aged man looked at a white-clothed young man. Shui Feng, I know you don't get along with him, but don't go offend this Duan Lingtian anymore in the future. Master, you said he killed Lu Shizhe. Hu Shui Feng's face went pale and he had an expression of disbelief. He naturally knew who Lu Shizhe was. That was an inner court disciple who was quite famous in the 7-star sword sect, and his cultivation had stepped into the first level of the nascent soul stage. Lu Shizhe could be considered as one of the top disciples within the 7-star sword sect that were under 30. But now, Lu Shizhe was killed by the Duan Lingtian that he hated to the bones. He wasn't willing to believe it. Yes, the blue-clothed middle-aged man was the Peak Master of Merrick Peak, and he nodded lightly. Duan Lingtian has extraordinary natural talent, and I'm afraid it won't be long before the sect leader takes him as a personal disciple. Remember, don't go offend him anymore. Sect leader. Hu Shuifeng's face went grim, and his eyes were filled with unwillingness. But he knew that he had no choice. Duan Lingtian was someone that he was completely couldn't afford to offend. Perhaps, Duan Lingtian had no backer right now, but in the future, Duan Lingtian's backer might even be the sect leader of the 7-Star Sword sect. 365 Chapter 366, 100 million gold. Did you hear what I said? The Peak Master of Merrick Peak spoke in a slightly low and deep voice when he saw Hu Shuifeng not replying after a long time. Yes, Master. Although he was unwilling in his heart, he could only agree and silently say in his heart, Duan Lingtian, since my master doesn't allow me to touch you, then I'll spare your lowly life for now. Hu Shuifeng currently seemed to have completely forgotten, he was never a match for Duan Lingtian. Not in the past, and not now either. Alcade Hall. The cultivation location of the Alcade Peak's master. A dignified and graceful figure rose into the sky and descended into the pavilion, then looked at the young woman that leaned on the side of the pavilion as she longingly gazed at the sky. The figure lightly called out, Kair. The voice was filled with doting. The young woman returned to her senses, then looked at the beautiful woman that had suddenly appeared in the pavilion and respectfully bowed. Master. Kair, the Duan Lingtian that you think of constantly has returned. The beautiful woman lightly smiled. Master, you said young master has returned. When the young woman heard the beautiful woman, her delicate figure lightly trembled as her beautiful eyes lit up, and a wisp of a smile of extremely unexpected joy had appeared on her drop-dead gorgeous face. This young woman was precisely Kair. Since she'd returned 3 months ago and knew that Duan Lingtian had left the 7-Star Sword sect with Li Fei, she'd always been waiting for Duan Lingtian to return. It had been nearly 2 years since she'd seen that man that she dreamt of day and night, and she missed him extremely in her heart. As for the beautiful woman that stood beside Kair, her identity was obvious. The Peak Master of Alcade Peak. One of the vice sect leaders of the 7-Star Sword sect. That Duan Lingtian is extraordinary as well. He just returned today and he'd already ascended the life and death arena to kill a first-level nascent soul stage inner court disciple. The Peak Master of Alcade Peak sighed with emotion and her eyes reveal a sense of astonishment. It's difficult to imagine that his age is actually similar to yours. The natural talent in the martial Tao of this personal disciple of hers had already caused her to be extremely shocked. Achieving the 8th level of the Origin Core stage at the mere age of 21. In the history of the 7-Star Sword sect, such a monster had practically never appeared before. But now, Duan Lingtian, the lover of her personal disciples, was similarly at the mere age of 21, but he was already a 9th level Origin Core stage martial artist and even had the ability to kill a first-level nascent soul stage inner court disciple. Such achievements in battle were simply astounding. Master, young master is fine, right? She didn't care who Duan Lingtian killed. What she cared for the most was if Duan Lingtian was alright. When she noticed Kair's worry and anxiousness, the Peak Master of Alcade Peak shook her head. Don't worry, he's safe and sound. Allegedly, that first-level nascent soul stage inner court disciple was killed by him in a single move. It's truly unbelievable. As she finished speaking, the Peak Master of Alcade Peak looked at Kair and asked. Kair, do you know what ability he relied on to defeat an opponent who's stronger? Kair shook her head and a wisp of adoration appeared on her extremely beautiful face. Young master has always been extremely formidable. No matter how hard Kair works, I'm unable to catch up to him. Now only did what Kair say not contain a shred of jealousy, she was instead happy for Duan Lingtian, and this caused the Peak Master of Alcade Peak to be unable to refrain from sighing to herself. This disciple of mine has really completely given her heart to Duan Lingtian. Now I'm interested in meeting him. The Peak Master of Alcade Peak lightly smiled as she said to Kair, and her words were filled with interest towards Duan Lingtian. Kair lightly bit her lower lip and had a delicate and touching appearance as she asked in a light voice. Master, I want to go see young master. Go. The Peak Master of Alcade Peak lightly smiled and nodded. Little girl, during this past 3 months, you were longing for him and have even neglected your cultivation quite a bit. You've caused master to be anxious to the point that even master wants to personally go capture him and bring him here. Master, you're making fun of me again. Kair was embarrassed to the point her face blushed red and she fled. Only after leaving Alcade Hall did K.R. remember that she didn't know where the young master cultivated at. I'll go look for big sister Li Fei first, since young master has returned, she's surely returned as well. When she thought of this, K.R. headed towards Alcade Peak. All along the way, K.R.'s beautiful figure and unrivaled appearance drew the gazes of many lascivious men. So beautiful, she seems to be the personal disciple that the Peak Master or Alcade Peak took 2 years ago. Looks like this young woman doesn't just have a drop-dead gorgeous appearance, her natural talent in the martial Tao is extremely high as well. Otherwise, it would be impossible for someone as formidable as the Peak Master of Alcade Peak to take her as a personal disciple. Yeah, the Peak Master of Alcade Peak is one of the few experts of our 7-star sword sect. Besides the sect leader and the 2 guardian elders, her strength is the strongest amongst the other Peak Masters of the other 6 great outer court sword peaks. The crowd of inner court disciples couldn't help but sigh with emotion, and they only reluctantly withdrew their gazes after the beautiful figure disappeared before their eyes. Megrez Peak, Stalactite Cave. Duan Lingtian didn't know how long he'd cultivated for. Only when he felt his 9th level origin core stage cultivation couldn't advance any further did he open his eyes and spit out a mouthful of foul air. It's a great gap between the 9th level of the origin core stage to the 1st level of the nascent soul stage. Even with my current natural talent, it's difficult to break through without a few months of bitter cultivation. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. No matter what, I must break through to the nascent soul stage as soon as possible. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and his eyes flashed, and within it was an extra sense of persistence. Of course, although Duan Lingtian hoped he was able to break through to the nascent soul stage as soon as possible, he knew that once he'd stopped during the process of cultivation, then he must temporarily stop cultivating and calm his mind down. Otherwise, it would accomplish the opposite, and would be harmful, not helpful. So hungry, Duan Lingtian rubbed his stomach, then withdrew some fresh meat from his spatial ring and started roasting it. After he finished eating his fill, he walked out of the stalactite cave. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian's figure flashed out to leave the cave passage and stand on the tilted tree. The sunlight passed through the clouds and mist above him to scatter dots of sunlight onto Duan Lingtian, causing him to feel traces of warmth. I wonder if K.R. has returned. I'll go look for Li Fei first. After he extended his spiritual force out and affirmed that no one was atop the peak of Megrez Peak, Duan Lingtian kicked off the tilted tree and jumped onto the peak before heading down the mountain. Before long, he'd arrived nearby the trade hall. Senior brother Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian heard a familiar voice, and when he raised his head to look over, the Megrez Peak disciple opposite him nodded with a smile to him. This Megrez Peak disciple was none other than Yi Xiaobei. Senior brother Duan Lingtian, can I have a word? Yi Xiaobei looked at Duan Lingtian, and his eyes emitted a trace of a burning luster. Duan Lingtian nodded, and he walked with Yi Xiaobei to an empty space nearby the trade hall, then went straight to the point. Is there something you need? Yi Xiaobei looked at Duan Lingtian and said slowly, Senior brother Duan Lingtian, I'm the grandson of the president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company, and I want to invite you to join our Jade Magnolia Trading Company. Of course, the Jade Magnolia Trading Company won't restrain senior brother's freedom, and you just have to put your name amongst the ranks of our Jade Magnolia Trading Company to become an honored elder. So long as senior brother is willing, then Jade Magnolia Trading Company will send senior brother a salary of 10 million gold every year. As he finished speaking, Yi Xiaobei looked at Duan Lingtian with a burning gaze, as he awaited Duan Lingtian's reply. 10 million gold a year. He believed that Duan Lingtian ought to not refuse such a great temptation. Yi Xiaobei's invitation had exceeded Duan Lingtian's expectation. Only putting my name amongst the ranks of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company and I can obtain a salary of 10 million gold a year. It sounded rather good. Jade Magnolia Trading Company. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but recall that the Jade Magnolia Trading Company was the trading company that the father and son pair of Sha Dou and Sha Guang were from. Sha Dou, the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company. A few days ago, Sha Dou had wanted to kill Duan Lingtian for the sake of avenging his son. In the end, Sha Dou was killed by Zhang Shouyang. This Yi Xiaobei is the grandson of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company's president. Duan Lingtian glanced at Yi Xiaobei in surprise. No wonder Yi Xiaobei was able to casually withdraw 10 million gold to toss at the Megrez Peak disciple the other day. Moreover, according to what he said, he seemed to be carrying more than 10 million gold on him. At that time, he only thought that Yi Xiaobei's identity wasn't simple. Now it would seem that his guess wasn't wrong in the slightest. Even that Shadow was only the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company. Whereas the grandfather of Yi Xiaobei was instead the president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company, the person that truly controlled the trading company. Duan Lingtian glanced deeply at Yi Xiaobei as he said slowly, "A salary of 10 million gold every year, your Jade Magnolia Trading Company is quite generous, being willing to spend so much money to support an unconcerned person like me." Senior brother Duan Lingtian, a straightforward person doesn't resort to insinuations. Our Jade Magnolia Trading Company is certain of senior brother's potential. Perhaps, senior brother isn't worth this price at this moment, but you'll be worth more than this in the future. Yi Xiaobei said frankly and openly. He was extremely straightforward. What the Jade Magnolia Trading Company took a fancy on wasn't the current Duan Lingtian, but the Duan Lingtian after he'd matured. Now, the Jade Magnolia Trading Company seemed to be suffering a loss. But once Duan Lingtian had fully matured, then not only would the Jade Magnolia Trading Company recover its investment, it would even be able to profit greatly. Moreover, they could be on friendly terms with Duan Lingtian in advance. To the Jade Magnolia Trading Company, this had every advantage and no drawback. You're quite straightforward. Duan Lingtian had a rather favorable impression from Yi Xiaobei's straightforwardness, but he still shook his head. But I'm afraid I have to disappoint you. I'm not interested in becoming an honored elder of your Jade Magnolia Trading Company. Yi Xiaobei was stunned as he never expected that Duan Lingtian would refuse him so cleanly. Senior brother Duan Lingtian, will you not consider it a bit more? So long as you're willing, our Jade Magnolia Trading Company is even able to pay 10 years of salary to you in advance. An advance of salary of 10 years. 10 million gold per year. 10 years would be 100 million gold. Needless to say, these conditions were indeed tempting. At least, Duan Lingtian was tempted, as the combined wealth in his possession wasn't even half of 100 million gold. Sorry, Duan Lingtian still shook his head and refused Yi Xiaobei. Although he'd once been in conflict with the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company, Shadow and his son, he didn't have any bad impressions of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company. He refused Yi Xiaobei only purely because he didn't want to join the Jade Magnolia Trading Company. 366 Chapter 367, Soul Severe Fruit. Although Yi Xiaobei said that Duan Lingtian didn't have to do anything for the Jade Magnolia Trading Company, but as the common saying goes, gifts blind the eyes. Once he took the money of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company and became their honored elder, then based on his character, he would surely not watch on when the Jade Magnolia Trading Company encountered any trouble in the future. So, Duan Lingtian chose to refuse. He knew earlier in his heart that once he agreed to Yi Xiaobei's invitation, then he would undoubtedly be carrying a responsibility. He didn't want to bear such a responsibility for the sake of money. Not to mention he temporarily didn't lack money. Even if he did, he had plenty of ways to earn money. Looks like our Jade Magnolia Trading Company doesn't have the good fortune. Yi Xiaobei sighed when he realized Duan Lingtian's resoluteness, and he thought in his heart at the same time. He can still remain unfazed even before 100 million gold, and even directly refuse my invitation. This senior brother Duan Lingtian is no ordinary person, as expected. In next to no time, a smile once again hung on Yi Xiaobei's face. Senior brother Duan Lingtian, although the business deal wasn't successful, our friendship is still present. In the future, if you have anything that you need help with, then so long as it's within my ability, I will surely not refuse. Thank you. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled as he nodded, then he left with large strides, stepping onto the chain bridge to head towards Alcade Peak. Yi Xiaobei had a bitter smile on his face as he gazed at Duan Lingtian's disappearing figure, and he sighed in his heart. Looks like grandfather is going to be disappointed. After Duan Lingtian arrived at Alcade Peak, he went to the residence of Elder Bai. He'd only just entered the gorge when Duan Lingtian saw two beautiful young women that were happily chatting together. The young women were engrossed in their chat and didn't notice him. When Duan Lingtian saw one of the two young women, his gaze suddenly lit up, and his breathing became hurried. His heavy sounds of breathing had startled the two women. The two young women both looked over at the same time. Scoundrel! One of the young women stood up. She had an angelic face and devilish body, and a smile of pleasant surprise hung on her face. It was precisely Li Fei. Young master! The other young woman lost her composure as she exclaimed in a low voice, then her graceful figure moved to greet him. Duan Lingtian opened his hands up and welcomed K'er into his embrace, then tightly held her, as if he was deeply afraid she would leave. Young master, I missed you so much. K'er's voice was excited as she slowly raised her head, and her extremely beautiful face was covered in tears. Silly girl, I missed you too, why are you crying? You ought to be happy. Duan Lingtian helped K'er wipe the tears off her face, and at the same time that his face was covered in an expression of tender love, his heart ached slightly. Young master, I am happy. K'er spoke as she tightly embraced Duan Lingtian, as if she was unwilling to let go forever. Silly girl. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a slight smile and his eyes were filled with extremely tender love. Li Fei stood in the distance and silently watched this scene. A light smile appeared on her face, but she didn't disturb them. Young master, why have you only come now? I've been staying here with big sister Li Fei for 2 days already. K'er tightly embraced Duan Lingtian as she muttered. Scoundrel, K'er came over the day we returned, but we didn't know where you cultivated, so she temporarily stayed here with me. Li Fei explained. Duan Lingtian nodded, then embraced K'er even more tightly. Silly girl, aren't I here now? Young master, you didn't come look for me after you returned, is it that you don't want to pay attention to K'er anymore? K'er raised her head, and her beautiful eyes that were like water were covered in a layer of mist, containing tears that would drop soon. Duan Lingtian lightly shook his head. Silly girl, don't think of nonsense. K'er lightly nodded, then embraced Duan Lingtian tightly as she enjoyed the peacefulness of this moment. However, this moment didn't last long. Only because in the next moment, an anxious voice sounded out to break this peaceful atmosphere. Junior sister, your man is in trouble. Accompanying this urgent voice was a beautiful figure that entered the gorge hastily. Instantly, Duan Lingtian, K'er, and Li Fei looked at the person that had arrived. The scene before her caused Zuo Qing to be stunned on the spot. Senior sister, you said scoundrel is in trouble. Are you mistaken? Isn't scoundrel fine and well here? Li Fei had a puzzled and confused expression. Duan Lingtian looked curiously at Zuo Qing as well. How did she know that he was in trouble? As for K'er, when Zuo Qing appeared, she was embarrassed to the point she temporarily left Duan Lingtian's embrace. Her extremely beautiful face flushed a rosy red that was delicate and attractive, causing people to be unable to refrain from having the urge to go forward and give her a few kisses. Zuo Qing finally recovered from her shock, then looked at Duan Lingtian with a bitter smile on her face. Why are you here? Can't I be here? What Zuo Qing said caused Duan Lingtian to be stunned. Senior sister, has something happened? He was able to discern that Zuo Qing's breath was slightly short and she had obviously dashed all the way back here. You really don't know. Zuo Qing frowned when she saw Duan Lingtian like this. Wait, that Wu Yongqian had obviously said that it was you who caused the death of the Peak Master of Megrez Peak. Wu Dao, could it be that he was slinging mud at you? When Zuo Qing's words entered Duan Lingtian's ears, it caused him to be completely dumbstruck. He'd caused the death of the Peak Master of Megrez Peak, Wu Dao. It was Wu Yongqian who said it. The Peak Master of Megrez Peak is dead. Li Fei couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice. The rose red on K'er's face gradually dispersed. She was slightly moved and her eyes revealed a strange expression. I heard from my master once, although the cultivation of the Megrez Peak's Peak Master, Wu Dao, is inferior to her, he's still a top martial artist amongst the 9th level of the void crying stage. How could he have died? The craziest thing is that Wu Yongqian or whatever actually said that scoundrel killed that Megrez Peak's master. Li Fei's face was covered in a layer of ice. That Wu Yongqian is obviously intentionally framing scoundrel. How could scoundrel possibly kill that Peak Master? Finally, Duan Lingtian recovered from his shock. The news Zuo Qing brought was too shocking. Duan Lingtian looked at Zuo Qing as he asked curiously. Senior sister Zuo Qing, what actually happened? Currently, he urgently wanted to know the sequence of events of the matter, as he'd vaguely realized that this matter wasn't so simple. Zuo Qing caught her breath and said, earlier, I originally intended to buy some medicinal pills from the trade hall at the peak of Dubi Peak, but just when I'd ascended the peak and arrived nearby the trade hall. As she spoke up to hear, Zuo Qing stopped and took a deep breath before continuing. I saw that Wu Yongqian carrying his foster father on his shoulder, the corpse of the Peak Master of Megrez Peak, Wu Dao, arrived at the peak. He put down the corpse, then he himself knelt beside the corpse. Then he repeatedly said that it was you who caused his foster father's death. Moreover, he said that the sect leader would uphold justice for his foster father. Zhuo Qing finished saying it all with a single breath. A wisp of shock appeared on Duan Lingtian's face when he heard this. The peak master of Megrez Peak, Wu Dao, has really died. Suddenly, an unbelievable thought arose deep within his heart. Could it be? For the sake of confirming his thoughts, Duan Lingtian looked at Zhuo Qing and asked. Senior sister, did you see the corpse of Wu Dao? Zhuo Qing nodded. I did. If I didn't recognize him, I wouldn't dare confirm that he was dead. He is the peak master of our 7-star sword sect's Megrez Peak after all, a formidable existence at the 9th level of the void prying stage. He was killed by someone? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Zhuo Qing recalled her memories as she spoke. There weren't any obvious injuries on Wu Dao's body, his entire face was almost black, and his 7 apertures bled. It was more like he'd died from poison. Poison. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted unnoticeably. Was it really as I've guessed? Could it be that Wu Dao really found a soul-severe fruit in the primeval forest? The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched as his state of mind surged. He felt as if all of this was a dream. That day, when that Wu Dao had summoned him and asked him about his ability to utilize origin energy to defeat a stronger opponent, for the sake of stalling Wu Dao, he'd causally found an excuse. He said his origin energy had underwent an unusual change after consuming a type of spirit fruit from the primeval forest. Later on, for the sake of convincing Wu Dao, he'd casually spoke of the characteristics of the soul-severe fruit. At that time, as far as he was concerned, the soul-severe fruit was extremely rare even in the foreign lands, thus it was impossible for it to appear in the primeval forest. But today, that Wu Dao had died from poison, and that Wu Yongqian had repeatedly said that Wu Dao had died because of him. Wasn't all this too much of a coincidence? Could it be that there really was a soul-severe fruit in the primeval forest, and Wu Dao found it? Duan Lingtian couldn't help but think about this. If it really was like this, then wasn't Wu Dao really too unfortunate? The soul-severe fruit was an extremely special, highly toxic spirit fruit. Even the most experienced alchemist in the foreign lands, including the former rebirth martial emperor himself, was only able to discern the soul-severe fruit from its outwards appearance. If it was someone that wasn't able to discern it, then there was only one method to test if the soul-severe fruit contained poison. Making a person or beast eat it to test it. Otherwise, no one was able to use any other method to determine the toxicity of the soul-severe fruit via testing. Even after the rebirth martial emperor became a royal-grade alchemist, he was still unable to determine the toxicity of the soul-severe fruit via testing. It could be imagined how deeply concealed was the poison of the soul-severe fruit. If that Wu Dao really consumed the soul-severe fruit and died, then he can only blame his own misfortune. Duan Lingtian said to himself. A soul-severe fruit was so difficult to come by. Even the rebirth martial emperor only had the luck to see it twice. Wu Dao being able to obtain a soul-severe fruit could only be said as Wu Dao having destiny with the soul-severe fruit. Zhuo Qing looked at Duan Lingtian and asked curiously. Junior brother Duan Lingtian, why would that Wu Yongqian say you caused the death of the Megrez Peak's peak master? At that time, she'd clearly seen Wu Yongqian's hysterical appearance, and it didn't seem to be fake. Li Fei and Kaor looked at Duan Lingtian as well. As far as they were concerned, they didn't care if the death of Wu Dao was related to Duan Lingtian. Even if Wu Dao's death was caused by Duan Lingtian, they would only think that Wu Dao deserved death. Duan Lingtian was their heaven, he was everything to them. Right when Duan Lingtian intended to speak, whoosh! As if a gust of wind blew past, a figure flashed into the gorge, then looked at Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, the sect leader has summoned you to the peak of Dubi Peak. The person that had appeared now was precisely the outer court elder of Alcade Peak, Elder Bai. Li Fei's master. 367 Chapter 368, Linggu Jin Hong. The appearance of Elder Bai had slightly exceeded Duan Lingtian's expectations. Sect leader. Duan Lingtian's brows raised when he heard Elder Bai. Looks like this incident has already alarmed the sect leader of the 7-star sword sect. With a quick thought, Duan Lingtian came to an understanding. The one who died this time was the peak master of Megrez Peak, and was a person of great status within the 7-star sword sect after all. As the sect leader of the 7-star sword sect, for both emotional and logical reasons, it was impossible for him to stand idly by. He would surely look deeply into this incident. Master, this matter surely has nothing to do with scoundrel. Li Fei hurriedly said to Elder Bai with an anxious expression, as she was extremely afraid something would happen to Duan Lingtian because of this incident. Elder Bai looked at Li Fei with eyes that emitted tender affection as she lightly smiled. Fei, don't worry. The sect master only asked Duan Lingtian to go over, and is not going to do anything to Duan Lingtian. The outcome of this incident isn't something that can be decided based solely on what that Wu Yongqian said. Duan Lingtian noticed that the two little girls had expression of worry, and he couldn't help but console. Exactly, Elder Bai is right, you two can be at ease, nothing will happen to me. Elder Bai's gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian as she slowly said, Duan Lingtian, I heard from some of the Alcade Peak disciples that you'd come to Alcade Peak, that's why I was able to guess that you were here. Since the sect leader has summoned you, then you should make a trip, I'll go there with you. Duan Lingtian nodded. This matter was something he couldn't avoid. I'm going as well, Li Fei and Ke said at almost the exact same time. In the end, Duan Lingtian set out with the four women and stepped onto the chain bridge that led to Dubi Peak and headed there to see the sect leader of the 7-star sword sect. Presently, almost no Alcade Peak disciples could be seen nearby the Alcade Peak Trade Hall. Looks like those Alcade Peak disciples have gone to Dubi Peak to watch the scene unfold. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart as he vaguely guessed the reason. Wu Dao was the peak master of Megrez Peak, and his death was sufficient to cause a tremor in the 7-star sword sect. Duan Lingtian was convinced. At this moment, so long as it was a 7-star sword sect disciple who knew of this matter, they probably would already have gathered at the peak of Dubi Peak by now. Watching a scene was human nature. On the way, Duan Lingtian's gaze suddenly focused. At this moment, a strand of origin energy that was condensed into sound had entered into his ears, causing his eardrums to lightly vibrate. Duan Lingtian, I don't care if the death of Wu Dao is related to you, you must remember that you must deny it to be related to you, and completely and clearly cut off any relationship to it. It was precisely the voice transmission of Elder Bai. Elder Bai's words caused Duan Lingtian's heart to feel warm and he replied via voice transmission as well. Thank you for your concern, Elder Bai. I know what to do. Elder Bai nodded and only now did she relax. In her eyes, Duan Lingtian was the man of the disciples she doted on the most, and could be considered to be half a disciple to her. Even if it's only for the sake of her disciple, she didn't want anything to happen to Duan Lingtian either. When Duan Lingtian and the four women arrived at the peak of Dubi Peak, although Duan Lingtian had already been prepared, he was still shocked. Presently, at the peak of Dubi Peak, what entered his eyes was a dense crowd of people, and it was incomparably bustling with excitement. These people were mostly outer court disciples. Although there were quite a few inner court disciples, but they were completely drowned by outer court disciples. Duan Lingtian's sharp gaze was able to see with a glance, that high above the sky in the distance, many tens of figures stood in the air. They were obviously void-prying stage experts. These people were led by a middle-aged man who wore an azure robe inlaid with gold. The middle-aged man stood there with closed eyes and remained unmoving like a mountain, and he indistinctively gave people an unfathomable feeling. He's the sect leader of the 7-star sword sect. Instantly, Duan Lingtian guessed the identity of the middle-aged man. The sect leader of the 7-star sword sect, Linggu Jinhong. It's Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian has come. Suddenly, a commotion arose within the surging crowd, as some people at the edges of the crowd did indeed notice Duan Lingtian. At this moment, they looked at Duan Lingtian with gazes filled with fear. According to Wu Yongqian, the peak master of Megrez Peak, Wu Dao, had died because of Duan Lingtian. A mere 7-star sword sect inner court disciple had caused the death of the Megrez Peak's master. The ability of this Duan Lingtian caused them to feel terror and dread from the bottom of their hearts. Duan Lingtian's brows raised and continued walking forward swiftly with the four women. Everywhere they passed, the surging crowd would automatically open up a spacious path for them. Duan Lingtian was able to notice that as the 7-star sword sect's disciples who he walked past stared at him now, their eyes revealed traces of a sheen of fear. As if he wasn't a human, but was instead a dreadful monster. Duan Lingtian paid no attention to this, and he directly arrived at the empty space at the center of the crowd. In the empty space, Wu Yongqian knelt there, and beside him, a corpse silently lay there. The corpse's face was black and fresh blood that hadn't completely dried up flowed from the 7 apertures of the corpse, seeming incomparably eye-piercing. Wu Dao. With a single gaze, Duan Lingtian recognized the corpse on the ground, and it was precisely the peak master of Megrez Peak, Wu Dao. Wu Dao, who was once overbearing before him and desired to seize his method of origin energy utilization, had now become a corpse. At the same time, Duan Lingtian recognized the traces of the poison that Wu Dao had suffered from. It's the soul severe fruit's poison as expected, this Wu Dao's luck is really good. He actually really found a soul severe fruit in the primeval forest. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. This Wu Dao was really unfortunate to the limit. Such a rare spirit fruit like the soul severe fruit was actually found by him, it was like he was fated to die. Duan Lingtian. Suddenly, Wu Yongqian who knelt on the floor abruptly raised his head, and his blood-red eyes flickered with a gaze of hatred as he stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian. It's you, it's you. It's you that caused the death of my foster father, it's you who caused the death of my foster father. I want to avenge my foster father, I want to avenge my foster father. As he roared, Wu Yongqian's legs stomped the ground. He seemed as if he'd transformed into a bloodthirsty fierce beast as he flashed out and pounced towards Duan Lingtian. Accompanied by Wu Yongqian flashing out, 120 ancient mammoth silhouettes had appeared above him. Whoosh! Instantly, the grade 6 spirit sword, Autumn Water, had appeared in Wu Yongqian's left hand, and origin energy raged atop it as it flashed towards Duan Lingtian. In the air, at the side of the 120 ancient mammoth silhouettes, another 40+ ancient mammoth silhouettes had appeared. The strength of 160+ ancient mammoths completely exploded out. HMPH. Duan Lingtian's gaze went slightly cold, but he didn't make a move. Because someone had already made a move before him. Swoosh! An ear-piercing sound of something tearing through the air suddenly sounded out, and the sounds of air exploding sounded out continuously. Duan Lingtian felt a gust of wind blow past him, then with a bang, Wu Yongqian was like an arrow that left the bow as he fiercely plunged to the ground in an extremely sorry state. How can you be presumptuous before the sect leader? Elder Bai stood there with folded arms, standing by Duan Lingtian's side as she coldly swept Wu Yongqian with her gaze and spoke with a cold and indifferent voice. Subsequently, Elder Bai stepped up into the air to stop at the side of a dignified and graceful beautiful woman that was high up in the air. Duan Lingtian. Wu Yongqian lay on the floor as he stared at Duan Lingtian, and his eyes flickered with a sheen of hatred. Duan Lingtian instead paid no attention to him. He looked at 7-Star Sword sect leader, Lingu Jinhong, who stood in the air with closed eyes. Lingu Jinhong seemed no different than a normal person, but Duan Lingtian could feel his profundity and unfathomableness. Duan Lingtian believed that Lingu Jinhong's strength was absolutely not inferior to Zheng Shouyang. Sect leader. Duan Lingtian looked at Lingu Jinhong and greeted him. Even when he faced the sect leader of the 7-Star Sword sect, Duan Lingtian still stood ramrod straight, and didn't have the slightest intention of bowing. Presumptuous. Suddenly, a cold snort sounded out. It was a middle-aged man who stood behind Lingu Jinhong who stepped out and coldly looked down at Duan Lingtian as he said in a deep voice. Duan Lingtian, why don't you bow when you see the sect leader? It looks like you don't respect the sect leader. As he spoke, he gave Duan Lingtian the accusation of not respecting the sect leader. I don't respect the sect leader. Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at the middle-aged man, and the middle-aged man was an old acquaintance of his. Elder Zhao Lin, I wonder which eye of yours saw that I didn't respect the sect leader. The middle-aged man was precisely the outer court elder of Megrez Peak, Zhao Lin. HMPH. Zhao Lin snorted coldly. You saw the sect leader but actually dared not bow. Isn't this disrespecting the sect leader? The gaze Zhao Lin shot at Duan Lingtian was like a sword. He wished for nothing more than to annihilate Duan Lingtian on the spot and seize Duan Lingtian's spatial ring in one go, to obtain the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll. Atop the peak of Dubi Peak, although there were many people, at this moment it was deathly silent. Zhao Lin's words had entered into the ears of everyone. Everyone was curious how would Duan Lingtian deal with this. After all, within the 7-Star Sword sect, disrespecting the sect leader was no small charge. Of course, there were quite a few people who were worried about Duan Lingtian. It's fine that this kid doesn't bow in front of me, but he actually persists in his old ways before the sect leader. The peak master of Mizar Peak, Zheng Fan, had a helpless and bitter smile on the corners of his mouth. The dignified and graceful beautiful woman that stood beside Elder Bai sized up Duan Lingtian with interest, the sexy corners of her mouth curled into an arc and mixed within was a slightly mischievous smile. He's the man that Kr thinks of day and night. Even up till now, he seems to not be afraid in the slightest, and has a carefree expression, as if he has a plan to meet the situations. The beautiful woman's heart was filled with curiosity. As for the person concerned, the sect leader of the 7-Star Sword sect, Lingu Jinhong, still kept his eyes closed as he stood there in the air, as if he didn't know anything about what was happening in the surroundings. Haha, under the gazes of everyone present, Duan Lingtian burst into laughter, laughing arrogantly, and his laughter spread throughout every corner of the peak of Dubi Peak. This caused the crowd of 7-star sword sect disciples to feel their scalps go numb. What is this Duan Lingtian doing? He dares be so presumptuous in front of the sect leader. Elder Zhao Lin. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian's laughter stopped, then he looked at Zhao Lin. I indeed don't respect the sect leader. 368 Chapter 369, thoroughly familiar. I really don't respect the sect leader. Duan Lingtian's words were like a thunderclap that abruptly exploded atop the peak of Dubi Peak and entered into the ears of everyone present. As soon as these words echoed, it was as if the air in the scene was twitching. The scene was deathly silent. Although there were many people atop the peak of Dubi Peak, all of them held their breaths and it was terrifyingly silent, as if even the sounds of a needle dropping on the floor could be heard. After a short moment, high above in the air, besides the 7-star sword sect leader, Lingu Jinhong, still kept his eyes closed as he stood there midair with a calm expression as if he would remain unfazed even if Mt. Tai were to collapse. The remaining higher-ups of the 7-star sword sect all went grim. This kid is too impertinent. The peak master of Mizar Peak, Zheng Fan, frowned, and the gaze he shot at Duan Lingtian contained slight worry mixed within. The dignified and graceful beautiful woman slightly frowned her willow-shaped brows, and her pair of beautiful eyes stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian, as if she wanted to perceive something from him. Elder Bai who stood by the beautiful woman's side had a worried expression. He never expected that Duan Lingtian would be so bold as to dare say he didn't respect the sect leader before everyone. Suddenly, hiss, 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 waves of gasping sounded out, rising and falling as it spread throughout the entire peak of Dubi Peak. It was the crowd of 7-star sword sect disciples atop Dubi Peak that had recovered from their shock. Duan Lingtian had gone mad. Madman. This Duan Lingtian is simply a madman. Saying he doesn't respect the sect leader right in front of the sect leader, isn't he courting death? HMPH. Does he really think the sect leader wouldn't punish him just because he had extraordinary natural talent in the martial Tao? Simply wishful thinking. This Duan Lingtian is surely going to be struck with misfortune today. The crowd of 7-star sword sect disciples whispered in discussion. At this moment, those 7-star sword sect disciples that stood nearby Duan Lingtian and were able to see him looked at Duan Lingtian with gazes that was like they were looking at a dead man. In the presence of the 7-star sword sect leader and all the higher-ups, he said he didn't respect the sect leader. In the entire 7-star sword sect, it was probably only this Duan Lingtian that would be able to say such words, and it would only be him who would dare say such words. Of course, speaking such words would also mean he had to pay an extremely great price. Scoundrel, young master, Li Fei and Kair who followed behind Duan Lingtian exclaimed lightly, and a wisp of worry appeared on their exceedingly beautiful faces. At the same time that they were worried, they were also slightly bewildered. Logically speaking, they knew Duan Lingtian, and they knew he wasn't such a rash person. Zuo Qing who stood by Li Fei's side now had a dumbstruck expression, and her eyes emitted slight worry as she gazed at Duan Lingtian's back. Duan Lingtian doesn't want to live. Yi Xiaobei, He Dong, and the other 7-star sword sect disciples that had a pretty good relationship with Duan Lingtian all broke into cold sweat for him. Of course, there were also people who were taking pleasure in Duan Lingtian's misfortune. Like Wu Yongqian and Hu Shuifeng. Duan Lingtian, let's see how you wind up the matter today. Wu Yongqian struggled to stand up, then he wiped off the blood stains on the corners of his mouth as he stared at Duan Lingtian with an icy gaze. This Duan Lingtian actually dares to say he doesn't respect the sect leader in the presence of the sect leader. Hu Shuifeng revealed a smile of insanity. Audacious. High in the air, Zhao Lin who looked down upon Duan Lingtian suddenly let out a cold shout. Duan Lingtian, you actually dare say you didn't respect the sect leader? You're greatly disrespecting the sect leader, and according to the rules of the 7-star sword sect, you ought to have your cultivation crippled. As Zhao Lin spoke, the origin energy on his body roiled. Above him, 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form, and his imposing manner shot into the sky, ready to attack Duan Lingtian at any moment. His pate of icy cold eyes stared at Duan Lingtian as the corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile. To him, this was a good chance to kill Duan Lingtian. Right when Zhao Lin intended to strike, Duan Lingtian said indifferently, Elder Zhao Lin, you repeatedly said that I was disrespectful to the sect leader. I wonder when I was disrespectful to the sect leader. Elder Zhao Lin, please express it clearly. Duan Lingtian was naturally able to feel the killing intent in Zhao Lin's eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. This Zhao Lin really rattles on endlessly. Duan Lingtian's words caused everyone present to be speechless. Earlier, this Duan Lingtian obviously said he didn't respect the sect leader. It's only been a short amount of time and he's already starting to play the fool. Right when most of the people had stunned expression from Duan Lingtian's words. High in the air, Lingu Jinhong, who'd had his eyes closed all along, had finally opened them. At this moment, Lingu Jinhong was looking at Duan Lingtian with interest. Although he hadn't seen Duan Lingtian before, he wasn't a stranger to him. This rare genius in the martial Tao of the Seven-Star Sword sect had reverberated like thunder in his ears since long ago, and he'd always wanted to meet Duan Lingtian. What is this little fellow thinking? Lingu Jinhong gazed at the scene before him as he thought in his heart, and he was filled with curiosity. HMPH. Zhao Lin stood on the air and the origin energy on his body were like flames, coiling around his body as they suffused up into the air, and he snorted coldly. Duan Lingtian, as the saying goes, spilled water can't be gathered up. Everyone present heard what you said earlier, it's impossible for you to take it back now. Duan Lingtian started laughing. Then I want to ask Elder Zhao Lin, what have I said that caused you to think I greatly disrespect the sect leader? Zhao Lin said in a low voice. Earlier, you said you didn't respect the sect leader. Could it be that this isn't a great disrespect to the sect leader? You still refuse to admit it. So it's these words. Duan Lingtian nodded with an expression as if he'd come to a sudden understanding, then he looked at Zhao Lin and asked with a smile. Elder Zhao Lin, according to what you said, if I say I don't respect the sect leader, then it's a great disrespect. Of course. Zhao Lin's brows knit, and the origin energy in his hand condensed and skyrocketed. Duan Lingtian, you've disrespected the sect leader and committed a great taboo of the sect. Today, I'll cripple you, this presumptuous fellow, on behalf of the sect. As Zhao Lin spoke, his figure trembled, desiring to envelope downwards towards Duan Lingtian and attack Duan Lingtian. However, instantly, Zhao Lin's face went grim. He noticed that at this moment, two formidable auras had stretched out to tightly lock onto him, causing him to not dare make a rash move. The Mizar Peak's master, Zheng Fan. The Alcade Peak's master, Qin Shang. He knew clearly in his heart, with the two of them protecting Duan Lingtian now, then unless the sect leader personally ordered it, otherwise, it would be impossible for him to kill Duan Lingtian. He felt regret now. If he knew earlier, he would have directly attacked once Duan Lingtian said those greatly disrespectful words earlier and killed Duan Lingtian. At that time, Zheng Fan and Qin Shang hadn't set their gazes on him yet. He'd missed the best opportunity. She's K.'s master, the peak master of Alcade Peak. Duan Lingtian gaze descended onto the beautiful woman that floated midair by Elder Bai's side, and he thought in his heart. The beautiful woman was graceful and dignified and possessed extraordinary bearing. Thank you, Peak Master. Duan Lingtian sent a voice transmission to the beautiful woman. The beautiful woman, the Peak Master of Alcade Peak, Qin Shang, was stunned when she heard Duan Lingtian's voice transmission and she replied. Why are you thanking me? If it wasn't for you and Peak Master Zheng Fan, this mad dog, Zhao Lin, would have probably attacked me already. Duan Lingtian replied. Mad dog. The corners of Qin Zhang's mouth twitched, then she glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian. You must give the sect leader an explanation for the incident today. Although the sect leader highly values your natural talent, it doesn't mean it allows you to act willfully. Yes. Duan Lingtian replied, then once again shot his gaze at Zhao Lin and said indifferently. Elder Zhao Lin, you said that since I said I don't respect the sect leader, then it's a great disrespect to the sect leader. I wonder if Elder Zhao Lin respects the sect leader. Of course, Zhao Lin said positively without the slightest hesitation. So in this way, Elder Zhao Lin only respects the sect leader in words, but not in your heart. Duan Lingtian started laughing. When he saw Zhao Lin's face go grim and want to refute his words, Duan Lingtian had already looked at Lingu Jinhong. Sect leader, I think that if you want to see if a 7-star sword sect disciple respects you, it isn't by seeing if their etiquette is satisfactory. Take me for example. Although I said I didn't respect you, I respect you in my heart. Unlike some people, they say something, but they're thinking something else in their hearts. As Duan Lingtian finished speaking, he glanced at Zhao Lin, seeming to refer to something with his words. Duan Lingtian, that's AF King Lai. Zhao Ling's face went gloomy and he was almost roaring. At this moment, if it wasn't for Zheng Fan and Qin Shang having their gazes on him, he would wish for nothing more than to directly tear Duan Lingtian into pieces, then burn Duan Lingtian's bones and scatter the ashes. Enough. A calm voice suddenly sounded out, suppressing Zhao Lin's hysterical voice. Lingu Jinhong glanced indifferently at Zhao Lin. Zhao Lin, you should probably cultivate your character, this impetuousness of yours needs to be changed. Yes, sect leader. Zhao Lin took a deep breath and replied. When he looked at Duan Lingtian, his eyes contained awe-inspiring coldness mixed within, as he wished for nothing more than to kill Duan Lingtian and rejoice after the deed. Lingu Jinhong looked at Duan Lingtian and his gaze was calm and still. The hearts of everyone present couldn't help but rise. All of them wanted to know. Would the sect leader punish Duan Lingtian? After all, what Duan Lingtian said earlier was too far-fetched. Finally, Lingu Jinhong slowly spoke. Duan Lingtian, you've been in the 7-star sword sect for less than 2 years. In the life and death arena, you killed 4 outer court disciples with a stronger strength than yourself, you left the sect for a year and when you returned, you used a cultivation at the 9th level of the origin core stage to kill a 1st level nascent soul stage inner court disciple. Lingu Jinhong's tone was calm, and although his voice wasn't loud, it entered into the ears of everyone present. All these deeds of Duan Lingtian were very familiar to the people present. But when it was said out loud, it caused some 7-star sword sect disciples to be extremely surprised. Looks like the sect leader has always been paying attention to Duan Lingtian. This isn't surprising. Duan Lingtian is the rare genius in the martial Dao of our 7-star sword sect after all. Once he matures, his accomplishments won't be inferior to those 5 great young master. Exactly, with Duan Lingtian's natural talent, it's sufficient to be highly regarded by the sect leader. The crowd of 7-star sword sect disciples whispered in discussion. Duan Lingtian's brows raised. He never expected that this sect leader of the 7-star sword sect would be thoroughly familiar with everything he'd done in the 7-star sword sect. 369 Chapter 370, The Reason for Everything. Duan Lingtian, you're very good. The sect leader of the 7-star sword sect, Lingu Jinhong, looked at Duan Lingtian, and his face that was emotionless and still from the beginning until the end revealed a rare trace of a smile. I won't pursue the earlier matter and I'll drop it right now. Drop it right now. Lingu Jinhong said this because he obviously didn't intend to fuss about what happened earlier with Duan Lingtian. Sect leader. Zhao Lin's gaze went slightly cold and he had an unwilling expression. This Duan Lingtian. Zhao Lin hadn't finished speaking when he was interrupted by Lingu Jinhong. Zhao Lin, are you questioning my decision? Lingu Jinhong's voice was calm with coldness mixed within, causing Zhao Lin to shudder and shake his head in panic. Zhao Lin doesn't dare. Meanwhile, a wave of commotion arose on the peak of Dubi Peak again. The sect leader really does regard Duan Lingtian highly, letting it go just like that. Looks like possessing a formidable natural talent in the martial Dao does indeed provide privilege. The words of some 7-star sword sect disciples were filled with extreme envy of Duan Lingtian. Presently, the group of people that cared for Duan Lingtian like Li Fei, Ke and the others all heaved a sigh of relief. As for the people who wished for nothing more than for Duan Lingtian's death, like Wu Yongqian and Hu Shuifeng, their faces all went gloomy. I never expected that this little bastard was saved from destruction. Hu Shuifeng glanced at Li Fei and Ke who followed behind Duan Lingtian and he gnashed his teeth. On what basis does this Duan Lingtian get the favor of so many beauties? First it was Li Fei. Now, it's another young woman whose beauty is not inferior to Li Fei. Moreover, it's the personal disciple of the Alcade Peak's peak master. For a time, a bellyful of flames of envy and hate that seemed like they could burn through everything arose within Hu Shuifeng. Thank you, sect leader. Duan Lingtian thanked Lingu Jinhong in a neither humble nor arrogant manner. Lingu Jinhong looked at Duan Lingtian and nodded in admiration, and he thought in his heart. This Duan Lingtian is different from the other 7-star sword sect disciples. When the other disciples stand before me, they would be filled with respect and reverence and wouldn't even dare breathe heavily. Duan Lingtian however didn't know that because of his current casualness, he'd caused Lingu Jinhong to look even more highly of him. Sect leader, you have to give justice to my foster father. Suddenly, Wu Yongqian's voice sounded out, and it was like a wick that completely lit the atmosphere atop the peak of Dubi Peak ablaze. Meanwhile, everyone present recovered from their shock. The death of the Peak Master of Megrez Peak wouldn't have really been caused by Duan Lingtian, right? It's very unlikely. The Peak Master of Megrez Peak possessed a cultivation at the 9th level of the Void Crying stage. How could Duan Lingtian possibly have caused his death? This isn't necessarily so. Don't forget the various miracles that Duan Lingtian has created. Yeah, no matter what miracle, I wouldn't be surprised so long as it happened on Duan Lingtian. If the death of the Megrez Peak's Peak Master was really caused by Duan Lingtian, then no matter how highly the sect leader regards Duan Lingtian would probably be unable to escape death today. The crowd of 7-star sword sect disciples started whispering in discussion again. At this moment, the gaze Lingu Jinhong shot at Duan Lingtian suddenly became fierce and he asked in a deep voice. Duan Lingtian, Wu Yongqian said that you caused the death of the Megrez Peak's master. Do you acknowledge your crime? Wu Yongqian looked at Duan Lingtian in a timely manner with his crimson-red eyes, and he seemed to have transformed into a bloodthirsty fierce beast that lay in ambush as it watched Duan Lingtian. Ready to pounce at any moment. Sect leader, the death of Peak Master Wu Dao has nothing to do with me. What crime have I committed? Duan Lingtian shook his head and flatly denied it. Although Wu Dao had died because of consuming the Soul Severe fruit, as far as he was concerned, Wu Dao's death had nothing to do with him. If it wasn't for Wu Dao coveting his method of origin energy utilization, he wouldn't have casually described the characteristics of the Soul Severe fruit. Wu Dao finding the Soul Severe fruit and dying from consuming it was completely Wu Dao's own misfortune, and it was something Wu Dao brought onto himself. Duan Lingtian, you're lying. Wu Yongqian's face went gloomy when he heard Duan Lingtian denying it, and he was almost roaring as he said, if it wasn't for you misleading my foster father to look for that venomous fruit, he wouldn't have consumed it and died of poison. It's all because of you. You deceived my foster father, and caused him to mistake that fruit to be a spirit fruit that was able to allow his origin energy to undergo a change. What actually happened? Lingu Jinhong's sword-shaped brows trembled, and his fierce gaze seemed to transform into a sword that flashed straight at Wu Yongqian, causing Wu Yongqian's body to tremble unconsciously and cold sweat to drip out of his forehead. Wu Yongqian never mentioned all this earlier, he'd only said that it was Duan Lingtian who'd caused the death of the Megrez Peak's Peak Master. Allow me. Duan Lingtian seized the initiative to look at Lingu Jinhong and said, Sect leader, after Peak Master Wu Dao saw through my secrets that day, he wanted to obtain from me my method of origin energy utilization to defeat a stronger opponent. As he spoke up to here, Duan Lingtian stopped briefly. Origin energy utilization method. Lingu Jinhong's brows raised and he was slightly surprised. Sect leader, the reason I'm able to defeat a stronger opponent is because my origin energy can execute an extremely profound ability. Peak Master Wu Dao had precisely seen through this, so he summoned me and wanted to obtain it from me and take it as his own. Duan Lingtian said straightforwardly. HMPH. Wu Yongqian snorted coldly. Duan Lingtian, my foster father wanted to obtain your origin energy utilization method that day for the sake of contributing it to the sect. Don't you make slanderous charges and defame my foster father. Defame? Duan Lingtian started laughing and said indifferently, Wu Yongqian, I'm truly curious. Do you believe what you just said? If Peak Master Wu Dao wanted to contribute my origin energy utilization method to the sect, why didn't he first report it to the sect leader before making a decision? Thus it can be seen that he did it for the sake of his own selfish desire. As Duan Lingtian finished speaking, he spoke bluntly, without a shred of mercy. Wu Yongqian's expression was unsightly. At this moment, he could feel the gazes of doubt that shot towards him from the surroundings. Obviously, no one believed what he said. Duan Lingtian continued. After that, I told Peak Master Wu Dao of the secret behind my origin energy utilization method. When Duan Lingtian spoke up to this point, besides Wu Yongqian, the gazes of practically everyone present had descended onto him. No matter if it was all the higher-ups of the 7-star sword sect, or the crowd of 7-star sword sect disciples. At this moment, they were all filled with interest towards the secret behind Duan Lingtian's origin energy utilization method. Only because that was the method Duan Lingtian used to defeat a stronger opponent. It was Duan Lingtian's trump card. Duan Lingtian relied on that type of origin energy utilization method to use a 9th level origin core stage cultivation to defeat an inner court disciple at the 1st level of the nascent soul stage. Probably, Some of the 7-star sword sect disciples whispered in discussion, and their gazes shone as they stared at Duan Lingtian. They could imagine that if they were able to master this ability, their strengths would surely obtain an extremely great improvement. But they never thought for a moment, if there really was such a miraculous and profound method, would Duan Lingtian share it? Under the gazes of everyone present, Duan Lingtian spoke once again. I told Peak Master Wu Dao of the secret behind my origin energy utilization method. My origin energy had undergone an unusual change because of a spirit fruit I'd encountered while I was in the primeval forest. At that time, after I consumed the spirit fruit, my origin energy underwent an unusual change, and it's because of this that I possess the ability to defeat stronger opponent. Duan Lingtian's words caused a wave of sighs to echo out. So it turns out that Duan Lingtian consumed a spirit fruit to obtain his bizarre ability. A spirit fruit, especially such a miraculous spirit fruit, is a fortuitous encounter that's difficult to come by, and is difficult to be replicated by another. Some of the 7-star sword sect disciples couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Duan Lingtian continued. After that, I described the characteristics of that spirit fruit to Peak Master Wu Dao. Since I left the Megrez Hall after that, I never saw Peak Master Wu Dao again. As he spoke up to this point, Duan Lingtian looked at Wu Yongqian and said indifferently, as for why he slandered me for causing the death of his foster father, I do not know. Perhaps it's because I crippled his right arm that day, so he wanted to use this slanderous methods to take revenge. Or perhaps, the death of Peak Master Wu Dao was caused by him. He's only doing this for the sake of slandering me and for the sake of obtaining Peak Master Wu Dao's grade 6 spirit sword, Autumn Water. As Duan Lingtian finished speaking, the corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile. You're talking nonsense. When he heard Duan Lingtian, Wu Yongqian's face became gloomy and the origin energy on his body roiled as his body flashed out, seeming to have transformed into a ruthless fierce beast as he pounced towards Duan Lingtian. Whoosh! In Wu Yongqian's hands, the grade 6 spirit sword, Autumn Water, appeared once again. The strength of 160 plus ancient mammoths fully exploded out. When faced with Wu Yongqian, who approached menacingly, Duan Lingtian's gaze was calm as he suddenly raised his hand and a narrow sword appeared out of thin air. It was a grade 6 spirit sword as well. Instantly, Duan Lingtian attacked. Sword drawing arts. Clang! The two grade 6 spirit swords collided with each other, and quake energy vibrated out from Duan Lingtian's hand, forcing Wu Yongqian to abandon his sword. At the instant Wu Yongqian's sword dropped from his hand. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian kicked out, kicking Wu Yongqian flying to fiercely plunge to the ground in an extremely sorry state. I'll kill you. Wu Yongqian struggled to stand up and once again pounced towards Duan Lingtian. Idiot! Duan Lingtian's gaze went slightly cold and killing intent arose within him. HMPH. Right at this moment, a cold snort seemed as if it has sounded out from an icy pit, causing even the air to become slightly solid. Instantly, Wu Yongqian, who flashed swiftly towards Duan Lingtian, seemed to strangely stop halfway. His body was frozen stiff and didn't make any movements after a very long time, cold sweat dripping off of his forehead. So strong. Duan Lingtian's eye squinted as his heart shook. The moment Lingu Jinhong's imposing manner condensed and flashed out to descend onto Wu Yongqian, Duan Lingtian's acute spiritual force had clearly sensed that Lingu Jinhong had merely used his imposing manner to cause Wu Yongqian to find it difficult to move at all. As expected of the 7-star sword sect leader, a void initiation stage expert, Wu Yongqian was only able to move after Lingu Jinhong withdrew his imposing manner, and Wu Yongqian's face flushed red as he said agitatedly, "Sect leader, don't listen to Duan Lingtian's deceitful statements. My foster father died because of poison from the exact spirit fruit that he described. He surely did it intentionally, As he finished speaking, Wu Yongqian was slightly hysterical. Meanwhile, the people present came to a sudden understanding. So it turned out that this was the reason for everything. 370 Chapter 371, Demon Beast Dark Rock. Intentionally. Duan Lingtian couldn't refrain from laughing when he heard Wu Yongqian's hysterical shout. You said I intentionally caused the death of Peak Master Wu Dao. Exactly, it's you who caused the death of my foster father. Wu Yongqian's eyes were crimson red and suffused with bloodthirsty killing intent that was waiting for a chance to swallow Duan Lingtian up. Duan Lingtian glanced at Wu Yongqian as if he was glancing at an idiot, then looked at Lingu Jinhong and said, Sect leader, the characteristics of the spirit fruit that I described before Peak Master Wu Dao is indeed exactly similar to the spirit fruit that I consumed. As for the spirit fruit that Peak Master Wu Dao found, based on my guess, it ought to be a spirit fruit with similar characteristics as the spirit fruit I consumed. But I'm extremely curious, even I know how to use a silver needle to first inspect if the spirit fruit is venomous before daring to consume it. Could it be that Peak Master Wu Dao didn't inspect the spirit fruit he obtained and directly consumed it? Duan Lingtian's tone was filled with bewilderment. Peak Master Wu Dao did indeed inspect that spirit fruit. Right at this moment, a gray-haired old man walked out from amongst the 7-star sword sect higher-ups. The old man had a kind countenance and he lightly smiled and nodded to Duan Lingtian before saying, Peak Master Wu Dao used a silver needle to inspect the spirit fruit he obtained, but didn't find any toxicity in it. Later on, he still wasn't at ease, so he looked for me and a few other alchemist elders to assist him. When he spoke up to hear, the old man stopped briefly before continuing. But according to our inspection, that spirit fruit indeed contained no toxicity. Now it would seem that the toxicity of that spirit fruit is concealed extremely well, and it completely can't be discovered via inspection. In the entire lifetime of Guanzhong, it's still the first time that I knew that such a spirit fruit existed in the world. As he finished speaking, the old man sighed. Guanzhong. Duan Lingtian's eyes squinted. According to his knowledge, the only grade 6 alchemist in the 7-star sword sect was called Guanzhong. He was also the alchemist elder that controlled the 7-star sword sect's alchemy hall. Hiss, 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 waves of sounds of exhaling cold air rose and fell in the surroundings, and it caused the atmosphere at the scene to become slightly oppressed. Even Elder Guanzhong was unable to discover the toxicity of that spirit fruit. That Megrez Peak's master's luck is really. Looks like even if we obtain some spirit fruit in the future, we can't consume it directly. It's best to first dig out a small piece and give it to a fierce beast to consume, and if the fierce beast doesn't die, then we can consume it. If that Peak Master Wu Dao knew to use this method to test for poison, then it wouldn't have come to the extent of him being poisoned to death. Perhaps, even Peak Master Wu Dao himself never imagined that spirit fruit would be toxic, and its toxicity was actually unable to be discovered by normal methods. The crowd of 7-star sword sect disciples couldn't help but sigh with emotion, and they all felt that Wu Dao had died unjustly and died in grievance. Duan Lingtian, you surely recognize the type of spirit fruit, so you intentionally made my foster father look for it, right? Wu Yongqian stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian as he questioned with a fierce voice. Idiot! Duan Lingtian glanced coldly at Wu Yongqian and said with a calm tone. Didn't you hear Elder Guanzhong? Even he has never seen or heard of such a spirit fruit in his life. Could it be that you think my knowledge even surpasses Elder Guanzhong? Moreover, according to my knowledge, many spirit fruits have similar characteristics, but their medicinal effects are completely different. Duan Lingtian looked at Guanzhong and slowly asked. Elder Guanzhong, is this so? Guanzhong nodded. It is indeed so. There are countless types of spirit fruits in Cloud Continent, but their medicinal effect are all completely different. Just the ones I have knowledge of. There are quite a few types of spirit fruits that have similar characteristics with other spirit fruits, and the fake can practically pass off for the genuine. As soon as Guanzhong finished speaking, it caused a commotion as expected. Looks like that Peak Master Wu Dao ought to have found a spirit fruit with similar characteristics, but, although the spirit fruit he found has the same characteristics as the spirit fruit Duan Lingtian consumed, its medicinal effect was the polar opposite. Exactly, the spirit fruit Duan Lingtian consumed gave him an extremely great benefit that is admirable. But the spirit fruit Peak Master Wu Dao consumed was instead a type of spirit fruit that contained a toxicity that even Elder Guanzhong was unable to detect. This type of spirit fruit is unheard of. The toxicity of this type of spirit fruit can probably only be detected by making a human or fierce beast test it for poison, but, when a person ordinarily obtains a spirit fruit, who would share it with another person or beast? Peak Master Wu Dao will become the Megrez Peak's master that had suffered the most aggrieved death in the history of our 7-star sword sect. The whispered discussion of these 7-star sword sect disciples entered Duan Lingtian's ears and the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth couldn't help but twitch. That Wu Dao was indeed misfortunate and died an aggrieved death, as he was even able to encounter a soul-severe fruit. Even now, this fact was something that Duan Lingtian still felt difficult to believe, and he felt as if he was dreaming. When he casually fabricated the soul-severe fruit as the fruit that caused his origin energy to undergo an unusual change, it was only for the sake of brushing Wu Dao off. He never expected that Wu Dao would actually head to the primeval forest to look for the soul severe fruit. Most importantly, he never expected that Wu Dao would actually find the soul severe fruit. Perhaps, at the moment Wu Dao found the soul severe fruit, his destiny had been determined. Sect leader, you already know of the sequence of events. If Peak Master Wu Dao really died because of the venomous fruit, then it can only be said to be misfortune. Even I never expected that the primeval forest contained another venomous fruit that had similar characteristics to the spirit fruit that I consumed. Moreover, it was found by Peak Master Wu Dao. Duan Lingtian looked at Linggu Jinhong as he slowly said. Linggu Jinhong raised his hand and his origin energy roiled, then it enveloped downwards to sweep away the grade 6 spirit sword, Autumn Water. After a short moment, this grade 6 spirit sword that was once Wu Dao's, had now entered into Linggu Jinhong's hands. Megres Peak's master, Wu Dao, mistakenly consumed a venomous fruit and died, and it had nothing to do with anyone else. The grade 6 spirit sword, Autumn Water, will be temporarily under my custody and will be kept for the next Peak Master of Megres Peak. As Linggu Jinhong spoke up to hear, his eyes squinted as he suddenly looked at Wu Yongqian who was just about to speak, and his fierce gaze caused Wu Yongqian to shudder, then tightly shut his mouth, not daring to say another word. Disperse. Linggu Jinhong's voice spread out, announcing the end of today's farce. In the next moment, Linggu Jinhong's figure gradually became transparent in the eyes of all the 7-star sword sect disciples, then it transformed into an image before vanishing without a trace. Duan Lingtian, come to Dubi Peak in 3 days. At the same time, a gentle voice transmission entered Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian was able to discern that this was precisely the voice of Linggu Jinhong. I'm not resigned, I'm not resigned. After Linggu Jinhong left, Wu Yongqian let out a wave of roars before carrying Wu Dao's corpse on his shoulder and dashing down Dubi Peak, and everywhere he passed, all the 7-star sword sect disciples moved away. I originally thought Wu Yongqian had some evidence that was hard as iron, and would be able to prove that Duan Lingtian caused the death of Peak Master Wu Dao. I never expected that in the end, all of this would be a farce. However, we finally know the secret behind Duan Lingtian's ability to defeat stronger opponents. Not only is Duan Lingtian's natural talent in the martial Dao formidable, his luck is extremely good as well, truly a cause for envy. Under the wave of bustling discussion, the 7-star sword sect disciples gradually dispersed. HMPH. Hu Shuifeng coldly glanced at Duan Lingtian, then gritted his teeth as he left with an unwilling expression. High in the sky, the group of 7-star sword sect higher-ups gradually dispersed as well. Duan Lingtian, I'll obtain the muscle meridian rebirth scroll sooner or later. Zhao Lin took a deep breath before controlling the air and flying off into the distance. The peak of Dubi Peak that was bustling just a moment ago had become silent, and only some scattered inner court disciples remained nearby the trade hall and Duan Lingtian's group. Whoosh, whoosh, 2 figures flashed down from the sky. The Mizar Peak's master, Zheng Fan, and the Alcade Peak's master, Qin Shang. Right when they descended by the side of Duan Lingtian's group. Whoosh, behind the clouds and mist far away from the peak of Dubi Peak, an ear-piercing sound of the howling of wind sounded out, and the howling sounds grew closer and closer. Qin Zhang's beautiful brows slightly frowned as she squinted to look at the source of the sound and muttered. It's a demon beast. For a moment, Duan Lingtian, Zheng Fan, and the others all glanced over. High in sky in the distance, the clouds and mist roiled as an incomparably fast black silhouettes flashed through the clouds and mist, and everywhere it passed, it pulled out a long stream of air and its imposing manner shot into the sky like a rainbow. After a short moment, the black silhouette had come close to the peak of Dubi Peak. So long as it passed through a few layers of clouds and mist, it would appear before the eyes of everyone. First level void prying stage demon beast. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian's acute spiritual force vaguely discerned the cultivation of the black silhouette. Not right. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force swayed, and his face went serious. The demon beast is carrying a person. It seems to be a 7th-level nascent soul stage martial artist. Whoosh. Finally, an enormous black silhouette passed through the clouds and mist before the eyes of everyone, and emerged to float high in the air. What's that? It seems to be a demon beast. What demon beast is so audacious to actually dare enter our 7-star sword sect? At the peak of Dubi Peak, the inner court disciples that were nearby the trade hall had clambered over, and they raised their heads to look at the enormous black silhouette in the sky. Presently, Duan Lingtian's gaze had descended onto the black silhouette as well. This was a bird-type demon beast, seeming like an eagle but not an eagle. Its entire body was covered in shiny black feathers. When its wings unfolded, they were like clouds that hung in sky. The feathers at the apex of its wings were even sharp like knives, and under the scarce rays of sunlight, it flickered with a frightful sheen, causing chills to run down one's spine. Dark rock. In next to no time, some inner court disciples exclaimed in shock. Dark rock. When Duan Lingtian heard this, he started swiftly searching through the memories of the rebirth martial emperor. After a short moment, he obtained the information he wanted. The Dark Rock was a void-prying stage demon beast, and when it matured to the limit, its strength would be comparable to a third-level void-prying stage martial artist. The Dark Rock was the result of the union between a rock-type demon beast and eagle-type demon beast. The Dark Rock possesses the speed of a rock-type demon beast and the offensive strength of an eagle-type demon beast. It's an extremely terrifying demon beast. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. At this moment, what he was most curious of was the identity of the person who sat atop the Dark Rock. Whoosh! Suddenly, the Dark Rock descended from the air, and the figure that sat cross-legged atop the Dark Rock and had a zither on his lap entered into Duan Lingtian's vision as well. Suddenly, the person extending his hand to stroke the zither, and the sound of the zither vibrated out, spreading out in the surroundings. 371 Chapter 372, Zither Young Master. A sound of a zither suddenly resounded out. It was like a scene of lofty mountains and flowing water, causing one to be refreshed in spirit. Duan Lingtian glanced over. He saw the Dark Rock had its wings opened wide and its back was like flat ground. A young man in white robes inlaid with silver sat there cross-legged, and was plucking his zither in concentration. Every time his hand descended, a beautiful tone would arise. It was like a clear sound that rose up in empty gorge, and ceaselessly curled up to linger in the air. The young man was around the age of 26 or 27, with a graceful bearing and extraordinary disposition. 7th level nascent soul stage at the age of 26 or 27. When Duan Lingtian saw the young man's appearance clearly, his heart shook. After all, even the most extraordinary that he knew of amongst the inner court disciple in the 7-star sword sect's younger generation, Zheng Song, was already 28 this year and was only at the 3rd level of the nascent soul stage. This young man was younger than Zheng Song, but his strength far surpassed Zheng Song. Who the heck was he? Zither Young Master. Suddenly, an exclaim of surprise sounded out. It was Zheng Song who stood nearby Duan Lingtian that spoke out when he saw the white-robed young man. Zither Young Master, one of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Duan Lingtian was stunned. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian heard the wave of surprised exclamations coming from nearby. He's the Zither Young Master. Zither Young Master, one of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and is ranked 3rd, supposedly. This Zither Young Master already broke through to the 7th level of the nascent soul stage a few months ago. He seems to be only 26. A 26 years old 7th level nascent soul stage martial artist. It's simply monstrous. In terms of natural talent in the martial Tao within our 7-star sword sect, I'm afraid only Duan Lingtian is able to compare to him. Exactly, with Duan Lingtian's natural talent, so long as he'd able to maintain his pace, the stepping into the 9th level of the nascent soul stage at the age of 26 wouldn't be impossible. The crowd of 7-star sword sect inner court disciples discussed animatedly. Right at this moment, the Zither Young Master that sat atop the back of the Dark Rock and plucked the zither had obviously heard the discussion of the 7-star sword sect inner court disciples. His eyes squinted and the movements of his hands slowed down. The sounds of the zither rotated and resounded throughout the peak of Dubi Peak before gradually coming to an end. Whoosh! Zither Young Master's figure moved out the float down, then his gaze descended onto Qin Shang and Zheng Fan. Zi Shang greets the 2 peak masters. Obviously, the Zither Young Master, Zi Shang, recognized the peak master of Mizar Peak and Alcade Peak. Zither Young Master. Zheng Fan lightly smiled. Even he didn't dare neglect this outstanding young master of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's younger generation. Whereas Qin Shang only nodded indifferently. A strand of cold light unnoticeably flashed within Zi Shang's eyes when faced with Qin Zhang's casual greeting. But even then, it was still caught by Duan Lingtian. Vigilance arose in Duan Lingtian's heart. This Zither Young Master of the 5 great young masters was absolutely not a good person. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian frowned when he noticed the gaze of Zither Young Master. Presently, Zither Young Master's burning gaze had descended onto Kair. Kair, we meet again. Zither young master lightly smiled to K.Er in an extremely refined and courteous manner. At this moment, it seemed as if only K.Er remained in his world. K.Er obviously wasn't so interested with this Zither young master, and she replied indifferently. This is. In next to no time, Zither young master's gaze left K.Er reluctantly and descended onto Li Fei, who stood by Duan Lingtian's side, and his eyes revealed an expression of shock from beauty. In the end, his gaze finally descended onto Duan Lingtian. So long as it was a normal man, then the man would surely be jealous towards this young man that stood by the side of two drop-dead gorgeous young women. Duan Lingtian noticed that when this Zither young master looked at him, traces of warning were mixed deep within Zither young master's gaze. As if he was warning Duan Lingtian of something. Peak Master Qin Shang. Suddenly, Zither young master looked at the Peak Master of Alcade Peak, Qin Shang, and slightly bowed. I came here this time mainly because of wanting to bring up a proposal for marriage. A proposal for marriage? As soon as Zither young master finished speaking, everyone present was astounded. Everyone still hadn't recovered from their shock when the Zither young master continued. The other time when Peak Master Qin Shang passed by the Imperial City, you once stayed in my Z clan. Since that time, I've fallen in love with your disciple. I lately heard that Peak Master Qin Shang has returned to the 7-Star Sword sect with your disciple, so Zisheng rushed here impatiently, hoping that Peak Master Qin Shang can fulfill my desire and betroth your disciple to me. At the moment Zither young master's words were spoken out, Qin Xian's beautiful brows lifted. The faces of Duan Lingtian and the people by his side who knew of his relationship with K.Er went grim, and Duan Lingtian's gaze went slightly cold. Earlier, he'd noticed that the gaze Zither young master shot at K.Er was abnormal, but he never expected that the reason Zither young master had come to the 7-Star Sword sect this time was actually to look for Peak Master Qin Shang and bring up a proposal for marriage. He actually wanted to marry K.Er. I hope Peak Master can fulfill my wish. Zither young master looked at Qin Shang and said a step further, if Peak Master Qin Shang is willing to fulfill my wish, then Zisheng is willing to request my master bestow a grade 5 spirit sword as the betrothal gift. What Zither young master said was like a stone that gave rise to 1,000 ripples. It caused the crowd of 7-Star Sword sect inner court disciples to be dumbstruck. Grade 5 spirit sword? Even our 7-Star Sword sect seems to only have one grade 5 spirit sword. This Zither young master proclaimed that he would ask his master to bestow a grade 5 spirit sword. Which great figure is his master? I heard a long time ago that the Zither young master had taken an expert from outside the Imperial Kingdom as his master when he was younger. Now it would seem that all this was true. Grade 5 spirit sword, my god, what extravagance. The 7-Star Sword sect inner court disciple went into an uproar as they were all shocked. To them, a grade 5 spirit sword was an existence that was difficult to reach in their entire lifetime. Zither young master. Right at this moment, a delicate shout echoed out. It was K.Er who stood by Duan Lingtian's side. She stretched out her hand to take Duan Lingtian's arm, then nestled up against Duan Lingtian, and her beautiful eyes condensed into cold light as she looked at Zither young master and said indifferently. Zither young master, thank you for the great kindness, but unfortunately, K.Er's heart already belongs to someone. K.Er's heart already belongs to someone. Duan Lingtian's stiff face bloomed into a brilliant smile, and he twisted his hand to take hold of K.Er's fine and slim hand. Whoosh! Instantly, Zither young master's face went grim, and the white robe on his body fluttered without wind. He looked at Qin Shang. Peak Master Qin Shang. Before Zither young master could even finish speaking, Qin Shang said indifferently. I respect K.Er's choice. What Qin Shang said had undoubtedly clearly stated her stand. Zither young master's expression instantly went gloomy, and his appearance of graceful bearing fell apart completely. His cold and indifferent eyes stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian as he spoke slowly. You, leave K.Er, and I'll satisfy any request of yours. The way Zither young master spoke contained a commanding tone, and it seemed more like a person of high position talking to a person of low position. Idiot! The corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a cold smile when he heard Zither young master, and he slowly spat out a word. Idiot! Duan Lingtian's words caused everyone present to be dumbstruck. Duan Lingtian called one of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, the Zither young master, an idiot. This. At the same time that all the 7-Star Sword sect disciples were stunned, they looked at Duan Lingtian with gazes filled with adoration. Presently, besides K.Er and Li Fei, even the group of people by Duan Lingtian's side, including Qin Shang and Zheng Fan, had expressions of astonishment. Duan Lingtian was too bold. You're courting death. Right when most people were still dumbstruck, Zither young master had suddenly shouted out explosively. His finger trembled as origin energy condensed atop it, then it descended onto a string on the zither in his hand. Thrum! An ear-piercing thrum pricked the eardrums of everyone present. The expression of some 7-star sword sect inner court disciples with comparatively weaker cultivations went pale, and they felt as if their eardrums were about to explode from the vibration. Where right at this instant? Whoosh! An ear-piercing sound of a piercing howl echoed out. One of the strings on the zither in the hands of Zither young master had shot out. It seemed to have transformed into a sharp arrow as it howled out towards Duan Lingtian, flying straight for Duan Lingtian's chest as if wanting to pierce completely through Duan Lingtian. Above Zither young master, 1,400 plus lifelike ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form. Grade 5 spirit weapon. Duan Lingtian's face went grim. The Zither young master, Zi Shang, was already a 7th level nascent soul stage martial artist, and when his strength exploded out completely, it was comparable to the strength of 1,000 ancient mammoths. Presently, the ancient zither in his hand was able to amplify his strength by the strength of 400 plus ancient mammoths. It was obviously a grade 5 spirit weapon. Spirit serpent movement technique. Duan Lingtian didn't dare hesitate as the origin energy beneath his feet skyrocketed and his entire strength exploded out completely, and at the same time, he utilized the quake energy and intended to dodge. But, at the instant he reacted to the attack, that zither string seemed to have transformed into the scythe of the god of death, and it was only a hair's breadth away from him. It was too fast. Duan Lingtian's face went gloomy and he was entirely unable to dodge. Right when Duan Lingtian intended to use an inscription, HMPH, a cold snort sounded out. Whoosh! An even swifter sword light flashed past and stopped the zither string that Zither young master struck out. Bang! The sword light that was condensed from origin energy exploded and it destroyed the zither string that Zither young master struck out. Zither young master's face flushed red, then he tasted something sweet in his throat before spitting out a mouthful of blood. His gaze descended onto the person that launched the attack and said with a deep voice, Peak Master Qin Shang, I was only testing the strength of the man that K'er has taken a fancy to. Could it be that you don't think it's beneath you to attack me? Qin Xian said indifferently, K'er is my personal disciple, and her man is someone I must protect. Her words were filled with an extremely protective intention. Zither young master's face went gloomy as he suddenly looked at Duan Lingtian and shouted coldly. Kid, if you think you're a man, then bring out your manly heroism and battle me, Zi Shang. The winner will get K'er. The loser must forever disappear before K'er. Do you dare? Zither young master's tone contained traces of coldness mixed within it. Zi Shang, you're shameless. K'er's beautiful face went grim. The instant that Zither young master attacked Duan Lingtian, she'd already taken Zither young master to be an enemy. Now, when she heard Zither young master bringing up such a wages to Duan Lingtian, she was instantly flustered and exasperated. K'er, only a strong man is able to protect you. A Pu doesn't have the qualifications to possess you. Zither young master continued to mock Duan Lingtian, and his cold and fierce gaze stared at Duan Lingtian. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian instead started laughing out loudly, and he looked at Zither young master as if he was looked at a clown. What are you laughing at? Zither young master's face sank, and he shouted out in anger and annoyance. 372 Chapter 373, Agreement of 2 years. What am I laughing at? The smile on Duan Lingtian's face was gradually restrained, and he said indifferently. I'm laughing because you're shameless. Shameless. Zither young master's face sank. Who the FK are you to make my fiancé into a wager? Are you sure there's nothing wrong with your head? The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a sneer, and he didn't spare Zither young master's face in the slightest. As soon as these words sounded out, the peak of Dubi Peak was in a commotion. Duan Lingtian is too brave, he actually dared insult Zither young master. As expected of the #1 genius in the history of our 7-star sword sect, he doesn't care in the slightest when faced with Zither young master, an outstanding martial artist within the younger generation of our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. If I had half the natural talent of Duan Lingtian, it wouldn't come to the extent that I'm still unable to break through to the nascent soul stage until now. The crowd of 7-star sword sect disciples spoke with words that were filled with adoration towards Duan Lingtian. This kid, Zheng Fan shook his head and smiled. However, needless to say, in his opinion, Duan Lingtian's current actions caused him to feel a burst of pleasure in his heart. This zither young master was truly too arrogant. This wasn't the Z clan. No wonder Kair is unshakably determined to follow him. When she saw this scene, Qin Xian's face revealed a rare wisp of a gratified smile. She was extremely satisfied with this future son-in-law. Satisfying. Zheng Song was excited in his heart. Presently, the one who stood before Duan Lingtian was the zither young master, one of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Although he possessed an aloof status within the 7-star sword sect, as he was an outstanding inner court disciple of the 7-star sword sect and was even the son of the Mizar Peak's master, he only possessed such status within the 7-star sword sect. After he left the 7-star sword sect, he was nothing, and was completely unable to compare to zither young master. Now, when he saw zither young master being humiliated, just like his father, Zheng Fan, he was secretly pleased in his heart. Zuo Qing's eyes squinted as she jealously glanced at Kair. In the past, she was still slightly puzzled. Why would such outstanding young women like Kair and Li Fei be willing to follow the same man? Now, she seemed to slightly understand. This man had too much charisma. At least, as far as he was concerned, his woman was his reverse scale, and he wouldn't tolerate anyone disrespecting or humiliating them. Zither young master recovered from his shock. He looked at Duan Lingtian and asked in slightly disbelief. You asked me earlier, who the FK I am. He thought he'd heard wrongly. HMPH. Duan Lingtian's icy cold gaze swept zither young master. Could it be that besides having something wrong with your brain, even your ears have something wrong with them? Hiss, 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 comma. Waves of gasping suddenly sounded out. The crowd of 7-star sword sect inner court disciples felt their scalps go numb. This Duan Lingtian is without end. After all, the person standing before him was no small figure. Zither young master, one of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom and possessed a cultivation at the 7th level of the nascent soul stage, he was something that the current Duan Lingtian was far from able to compare to. Shriek. Right at this moment, an ear-piercing sound echoed out, and a figure that was like a cloud that covered the sky instantly flashed out to envelop Duan Lingtian's location. Animal. Duan Lingtian's face went gloomy. The dark rock that zither young master rode over seemed to have felt the rage of zither young master, and it directly flashed towards the culprit, Duan Lingtian, desiring to pounce on Duan Lingtian and kill him. Right at this moment, accompanied by a sword light that flashed out, Zheng Fan's voice sounded out. Scram. The sword light followed like a shadow as it directly flashed towards the dark rock, terrifying the dark rock to the point it returned from where it came from, and its enormous body started to shiver. As a demon beast, it was naturally able to feel how formidable that sword light was. Along with the sword light dying out, the ancient horned dragon above Zheng Fan vanished after it. Animal, if you dare attack again, I'll kill you for sure. Zheng Fan's voice revealed traces of coldness, terrifying the dark rock to the point it lowered its head like a human and emitted sorrowful cry. Peak Master Zheng Fan. Zither young master's expression was incomparably unsightly when he saw Zheng Fan interfere. Zheng Fan glanced indifferently at zither young master. He was friendly to zither young master earlier because he felt zither young master had great potential, and would sooner or later obtain achievements similar to his. But now that zither young master had come into conflict with Duan Lingtian, he naturally knew what was more important. Moreover, not to mention Duan Lingtian was a disciple of the 7-star sword sect, but just based on Duan Lingtian's unrivaled natural talent, it was already worth it for him to go all out and protect Duan Lingtian. Compared to zither young master, he looked more favorably upon Duan Lingtian's future. Little bastard. Zither young master's gaze went slightly cold as he stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian. If you have the balls, then don't rely on others and fight me above board. If you don't dare, then you're a poo-wai, trash. You don't have the qualifications to possess Kair, and don't have the qualifications to protect Kair. What number 1 genius of the 7-star sword sect? According to me, you're cowardly trash. Presently, zither young master had already found out of Duan Lingtian's identity from the whispered discussions of the crowd of 7-star sword sect inner court disciples. When he'd arrived earlier, this Duan Lingtian was the person in the discussion of the 7-star sword sect inner court disciple who possessed a natural talent in the martial Dao that far surpassed him. At that time, he felt a wave of unwillingness to accept it in his heart. As far as he was concerned, within the younger generation of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, the people who were able to make him take them seriously were only the 2 people amongst the 5 great young masters that were ranked before him. He was even regarded the other two young masters then were ranked after him as beneath his notice. Right when Kair was angered to the point her beautiful face flushed red and she intended to retort. Duan Lingtian spoke before her, and he indifferently swept zither young master with his gaze. Zither young master, right? Whether I have the qualifications to possess Kair isn't something you're able to decide, right? One must know one's limitations, and must know one's ability. As for asking me to fight you above board, don't you think it's laughable? How old are you, zither young master, and how old am I, Duan Lingtian? You want to fight me above board? Don't you feel ashamed? As he finished speaking, a wisp of ridicule appeared on Duan Lingtian's face. To him, killing zither young master was extremely simple, a single bone corrosion inscription would be able to send him to hell. The only reason he didn't do that now was because he knew that even if he utilized the bone corrosion inscription, it would be stopped by Zheng Fan and Qin Shang. As the peak masters of the Seven-Star Sword sect, the two of them would absolutely not allow zither young master to die in the Seven-Star Sword sect. Perhaps, in their eyes, zither young master's crimes didn't warrant death. Duan Lingtian's words caused zither young master's face to sink. A pu y is a pu y, according to what you said, I, zither young master, will be unable to fight you for my entire lifetime. So long as I want to fight you, I would be bullying the young. Zither young master continued to ridicule as he wanted to enrage Duan Lingtian. But unfortunately, he was bound to be disappointed. Duan Lingtian had a calm expression as he said indifferently. If you really want to fight me, it isn't impossible. 3 years, after 3 years, I'll fight you above board. 3 years. Duan Lingtian's words were filled with strong confidence. Zither young master's eyes squinted as cold lightly flickered within. He gazed at Zheng Fan and Qin Shang who stood nearby and noticed both of them had calm expression, seeming to not be shocked by Duan Lingtian's words, and his heart couldn't help but sink. Meanwhile, 3 years. What a good plan. Duan Lingtian's currently only at the age of 21 and he's already at the 9th level of the Origin Core stage. With his natural talent, it isn't difficult to surpass zither young master in another 3 years. After 3 years, Duan Lingtian will surely be able to defeat zither young master, I'm confident. I'm confident as well, comma. The crowd of 7-Star Sword sect inner court disciples were filled with confidence towards Duan Lingtian. The whispered discussions of these inner court disciples entered into the ears of zither young master, and it caused his face to sink. This Duan Lingtian is only 21. A 21-year-old 9th level Origin Core stage martial artist. Such natural talent does indeed surpass me. Even he hadn't stepped into the 9th level of the Origin Core stage at the age of 21. 2 years, I'll give you 2 years. Zither young master looked at Duan Lingtian, and his words had no intention of bargaining as he said in a low voice, I hope that after 2 years, you, this #1 genius of the 7-Star Sword sect won't be shrinking away and relying on the strength of others. At that time, I'll defeat you and even kill you. I want to let Kair know that only I, zither young master, Zi Shang, is the man that's most suitable for her. After he finished, zither young master's figure flashed to return to the back of the dark rock. When he left, he had a flustered and exasperated expression. Compared to when he arrived, he was completely like a different person. 2 years. Duan Lingtian gaze slightly moved to stare at the back of zither young master who rode the dark rock into the distance, and the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer as he muttered, as you wish. That zither young master, Zi Shang, is too shameless. Zheng Song was slightly outraged for Duan Lingtian. As far as he was concerned, if Duan Lingtian had 3 years of time, then with Duan Lingtian's natural talent in the martial Dao, surpassing zither young master wasn't a difficult task. But 2 years of time. Duan Lingtian wanting to defeat zither young master in 2 years was extremely difficult. Duan Lingtian shrugged and said indifferently, actually, in my opinion, there isn't a big difference between 2 years or 3 years, since he said 2 years, then it is 2 years. In this way, it might be able to give me some pressure and allow me to stimulate the potential within my body. As he finished speaking, Duan Lingtian was filled with strong confidence. This caused the 7-Star Sword sect inner court disciples that were present to be filled with admiration. Duan Lingtian desired to defeat zither young master 2 years from now. If he's able to do it, the Duan Lingtian might become the peerless prodigy in the younger generation of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom that surpasses the 5 great young masters. When they thought of how the peerless prodigy would be from their 7-Star Sword sect, their hearts were filled with excitement. Ke and Li Fei's gazes descended onto Duan Lingtian and were filled with extremely tender love. Young master, this is my master, the Peak Master of Alcade Peak. In next to no time, Ke introduced Qin Shang to Duan Lingtian, then she had a blushed face as she looked at Qin Shang. Master, this is my young master. Ke had an embarrassed expression when she looked at Qin Shang. Peak Master. Duan Lingtian slightly bowed to Qin Shang, as she was Ke's master and had the qualifications to make him bow. Qin Shang glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian. Looks like before you, my face is greater than the sect leader. Qin Shang remembered that even when he was facing the sect leader of the 7-star sword sect, Linggu Jinhong, the young man before her had never once bowed. Yet now, before her, he'd bowed. 373 Chapter 374, The Changes in the Little Gold Mouse. You're Ke's master, so you're an elder to me, Duan Lingtian said with a slight smile. Ke's taste is very good. Qin Shang nodded and smiled at Duan Lingtian. The gaze she shot at him contained the flavor of a mother-in-law looking at her son-in-law. Ke is an orphan, so in the future, this master of hers, will be like her parent. You have to be good to her. If you let me find out that you betrayed her, I will absolutely not forgive you. As she finished speaking, Qin Zhang's eyes emitted a wisp of coldness. The imposing manner of a void initiation stage expert swept at Duan Lingtian, causing him to instantly feel as if he was in the center of a storm. Don't worry Peak Master, in my eyes, Ke is more important than my life, Duan Lingtian said sincerely. Qin Shang nodded, then she left with Elder Bai who was by her side. Zhuo Qing followed them and left. Zheng Fan looked at Duan Lingtian and his eyes squinted as he asked curiously. Kid, 2 years of time, are you really confident? Peak Master, if you don't believe me, we can make a bet, let's bet 10 million gold. How about it? Duan Lingtian's face revealed a smile that was like a fox. This caused Zheng Fan to be unable to refrain from becoming vigilant, then he rolled his eyes at Duan Lingtian. Kid, you don't seem like a person who would suffer a loss, only an idiot would bet with you. When they saw Duan Lingtian and Zheng Fan had such a casual relationship, besides Zheng Fan, everyone present was completely stunned. Most people couldn't help but suspect in their heart. Was the middle-aged man that stood before their eyes and rolled his eyes at Duan Lingtian really their 7-star sword sect's Mizar Peak's master? After Zheng Fan and Zheng Song lefty, Duan Lingtian brought Ke and Li Fei to leave Dubi Peak and arrived at Megrez Peak. Everywhere they passed, all the Megrez Peak disciples greeted them respectfully. Today, Duan Lingtian's actions on the peak of Dubi Peak had once again filled them with admiration. In the presence of the sect leader, he said he didn't respect the sect leader. Since the establishment of the 7-star sword sect, Duan Lingtian is probably the first person to be so brave. Scoundrel, you still cultivate at Megrez Peak now. Isn't the cultivation environment on Dubi Peak much better? Li Fei asked curiously. Little Fei, you'll know soon. Duan Lingtian smiled mysteriously, and he held Ke and Li Fei with one hand each, then braved the countless fiery and envious gazes to enter Megrez Peak. Senior brother Duan Lingtian's luck in romance is truly enviable. Yeah, the 2 young women by his side are absolutely the most beautiful female disciples I've seen in the 7-star sword sect. We're both humans, and are both men, why is the difference between us so huge? The words of the crowd of Megrez Peak disciples was filled with extreme envy. After Duan Lingtian confirmed that no one was following him, he brought Ke and Li Fei along the remote mountain path to ascend the peak of Megrez Peak. As she gazed at the spacious peak of Megrez Peak, Li Fei asked curiously. Scoundrel, why did you bring us here? The peak of Megrez Peak was covered in mist and clouds that were like a vast expanse of whiteness and nothing could be seen. Come, Duan Lingtian brought Li Fei and Ke to the side of the precipice, then lightly smiled as he said, Ke, little Fei, you two stand here, when we go down in a moment, your movements must be slow, I'll be looking at the 2 of you from below. Below, Duan Lingtian's words caused Ke and Li Fei to have perplexed expressions. In the next moment, their faces went pale. Because they saw Duan Lingtian had actually leapt off the precipice. Their faces went ghastly pale and for a moment, their minds were in chaos, and they almost forgot what Duan Lingtian had said to them earlier. Young master. Ke stuck her head out and looked down the precipice as she called out, and her voice contained slight trembling within it. All right, you two come down. Suddenly, a voice sounded out from below, causing the gazes of Ke and Li Fei to light up. and only now did they realize that Duan Lingtian wasn't courting death when he did that earlier. Duan Lingtian stood on the tilted tree, and his hand seemed to have transformed into a fan as it started flapping. For a moment, the clouds and mist above him gradually dispersed. This, K'er and Li Fei's beautiful eyes shone when they saw Duan Lingtian who stood atop the tilted tree, as they never expected that there was actually such a tilted tree growing at the side of the peak of Megrez Peak. Come, under Duan Lingtian's beckoning, K'er and Li Fei leapt down successively and descended onto the tilted tree. Meanwhile, the clouds and mist converged together once again, blocking out the tilted tree. Now, even if someone were to stick their heads out from the peak of Megrez Peak, they would be unable to notice the tilted tree. Scoundrel, what place is this? As they walked within the cave passageway, Li Fei asked curiously. You two will know shortly. Duan Lingtian beat around the bush, and followed closely behind the two young women to enter the stalactite cave. This is, as they gazed at the stalactites above the stalactite cave, the two girls were shocked. Young master, these wouldn't be 10,000-year stalactites, right? K'er took a deep breath and asked with slight disbelief. Exactly, these are 10,000-year stalactites, and it's here that I found the 10,000-year stalactite milk that both of you drink. Duan Lingtian nodded, and when he recalled the scene of him discovering this place, he couldn't help but sigh slightly. This could be considered his fortuitous encounter as well. K'er and Li Fei came to a sudden understanding. Squeak squeak, right at this moment, a clear cry sounded out, and a gold and fluffy little head stuck out from beneath K'er's sleeve. Little Gold. When Duan Lingtian saw the infant jade-eyed heavenly mouse, he couldn't help but think about the two variant little pythons. He sighed in his heart. I wonder how Little Black and Little White are after they left with Han Shui-nai. Han Shui-nai dotes on them so much, they're surely doing great. Now, Duan Lingtian had let it go as well. As far as he was concerned, so long as the two little pythons were doing great and were able to acquire a better future, then even if he was unable to see them again in the future, he would still be happy for them. Squeak. Suddenly, the little gold mouse flashed out from beneath K'er's sleeve and directly pounced onto the wall at the side of the stalactite cave, then it kicked off from the wall and leapt onto the 10,000-year stalactite. Subsequently, a scene that caused Duan Lingtian's group of three to be astounded had appeared. They saw the little gold mouse lay on the 10,000-year stalactite then actually start nibbling and eating it. It only left the 10,000-year stalactite in satisfaction when it to the point its little stomach bulged, then lay motionless at the side of the stalactite cave. Its fluffy body and its currently bulging stomach made it seem chubby, and it was extremely cute. Another glutton. Duan Lingtian was speechless. He glanced at the gap that was nibble out from the 10,000-year stalactite, and his heart was pained. This little gold really recklessly destroys natural treasures. Young master, where's Little Black and Little White? Suddenly, K'er seemed to have thought of something and she looked at Duan Lingtian with an expression of anticipation. Yeah, scoundrel, I haven't seen Little Black and Little White for a very long time. Li Fei looked at Duan Lingtian as well. Duan Lingtian sighed. Although he knew that he'd have to face this moment sooner or later, he never imagined it would be so quick. He didn't conceal anything when facing the two girls, and he slowly spoke of the entire sequence of events. Little Black and Little White have left. A wisp of mist appeared on K'er's beautiful eyes when she found out about everything, and her pretty face was covered in an expression of reluctance. She'd seen those two variant little pythons grow up with her own two eyes and she had extremely deep feelings towards them. Now, when she found out that they'd left, she felt a wave of sorrow in her heart. Little sister K'er, we'll still be able to see Little Black and Little White in the future, didn't you hear what scoundrel said? Little Black and Little White have only followed the demon beast by that mysterious young girl's side to cultivate, they're not gone forever. Li Fei consoled K'er in a gentle voice. Although she was slightly sad as well, but as wasn't as much as K'er. Besides Duan Lingtian, the two little pythons had always been closest with K'er. Perhaps, it was because when they'd just been born and emerged from their shells, the first thing that entered their eyes was Duan Lingtian and K'er. They'd taken Duan Lingtian and K'er to be their parents, and their love for them was extraordinary. Yeah, K'er, Little Fei is right. Little Black and Little White will surely return, their home is with us. Although Duan Lingtian wasn't confident in his heart, he still persuaded K'er as he was able to understand K'er's current feelings. That day, when Little Black and Little White had just left, he had this exact same feeling. It was as if a piece of his heart was sliced off. That sort of feeling was extremely painful. Squeak squeak, seeming to have perceived K.'s sense of loss, the little gold mouse that was originally laying on the ground lazily cried out twice, then it leapt up once again to descend onto K.'s shoulder, and its little head rubbed K.'s face as it consoled K.r like a human. Little gold, I'm fine. K.r held the little gold mouse in her hand and lightly smiled. Squeak squeak, the little gold mouse nodded, and its pair of jade eyes flickered with a joyous sheen. Little Gold's cultivation. Earlier, Duan Ling Tian didn't intentionally use his spiritual force to inspect the cultivation of the little gold mouse, but now when he slightly inspected it, he instead was clearly able to gain insight of the little gold mouse's strength. The little gold mouse had actually broken through to the 9th level of the nascent soul stage. He still remembered that the little gold mouse seemed to only be at the 7th level of the nascent soul stage 1 year ago. Looks like the 10,000-year stalactite milk allowed the little gold to achieve rebirth as well. Presently, the natural talent and potential of the little gold mouse as a jade-eyed heavenly mouse ought to have already been developed to the limit. Even if little gold didn't consume the 10,000-year stalactite milk, with the bloodline within its body, it would attain the cultivation of Demon Emperor sooner or later. Now, after it has consumed the 10,000-year stalactite milk, I wonder what sort of changes will occur. Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart, and he was filled with anticipation. Little Gold's current strength is obviously only a step away from the half-step void stage. It won't be long before it's able to break through once again. What would happen after a jade-eyed heavenly mouse consumed large quantities of 10,000-year stalactite milk was something that even the memories of the rebirth martial emperor contained no records of. 3 days later, according to the voice transmission, the sect leader, Lingu Jinhong, sent him that day, Duan Ling Tian left the stalactite cave of Megrez Peak and headed to Dubi Hall on Dubi Peak. Dubi Hall was precisely the cultivation location of the 7-star sword sect's sect leader. I wonder why the sect leader would ask me to come see him today. Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart, and he was filled with bewilderment. He knew nothing of the purpose Lingu Jinhong called him here today. 374 Chapter 375, Martial Competition. As the cultivation location of the 7-star sword sect's sect leader, Dubi Hall was slightly larger when compared to Mizar Hall and Megrez Hall. When Duan Ling Tian had just arrived outside Dubi Hall, he saw a gray-clothed young man walking towards him. The young man was around the age of 25 or 26, he had an ordinary appearance and an emotionless expression, and he held a sheathed sword in his hand as he slowly walked over. Looking at the symbol on the young man's clothes, he was obviously an inner court disciple. You're Duan Ling Tian. The young man stood before Duan Ling Tian, and his eyes emitted a bright light as he asked in a calm tone. Yes. Duan Ling Tian nodded, and he was shocked in his heart. Relying on his acute spiritual force and the lifetime worth of experience of the rebirth martial emperor, he was able to discern that although the age of this young man was younger than the Mizar Peak's master's son, Zheng Song, his cultivation was much more advanced than Zheng Song. If his judgment wasn't wrong, then the cultivation of this person had already stepped into the 4th level of the nascent soul stage. His age feels to be even younger than zither young master, Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart. Master has been waiting for you. The young man called out to Duan Ling Tian before turning around and leading Duan Ling Tian to walk into Dubi Hall. Master. After the young man brought Duan Ling Tian into the audience hall, he respectfully and reverently bowed to the middle-aged man within, then he turned around to leave and stand guard outside the audience hall like a door guardian deity. Sect leader. Duan Ling Tian looked at the middle-aged man and lightly smiled. The middle-aged man was precisely the sect leader of the 7-star sword sect, Lingu Jinhong. That person from before was actually the sect leader's disciple. Duan Ling Tian came to a sudden understanding. Lingu Jinhong stared fixedly at Duan Ling Tian, towards this 7-star sword sect disciple that abruptly rose swiftly in the sect, and his heart was filled with extreme shock. Duan Ling Tian's rise was virtually a legend of the 7-star sword sect. Duan Ling Tian. Lingu Jinhong's stiff face revealed a wisp of a light smile. I heard that the zither young master came to our 7-star sword sect 3 days ago. You fixed a 2-year agreement with him. Yes. Duan Ling Tian nodded, and he wasn't surprised that Lingu Jinhong knew of this matter. What a joke. Lingu Jinhong was the sect leader of the 7-star sword sect, and his informants were everywhere throughout the entire 7-star sword sect. As expected of the #1 genius since the establishment of my 7-star sword sect, Duan Ling Tian, I'm truly awaiting the scene of you battling the zither young master 2 years from now. Lingu Jinhong glanced deeply at Duan Ling Tian, then changed the topic. Do you know why I asked you here this time? Duan Lingtian shook his head to show he didn't know. Do you know that within the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, there are still another 4 top sects besides our 7-star sword sect? Lingu Jinhong asked. I've heard of it. Duan Lingtian nodded as he'd heard Shang Quan mention it before. Sect leader, could the reason you called me here be related to the other 4 sects? Lingu Jinhong was slightly surprised by Duan Lingtian's penetrating remark, and he nodded. 1 year from now, it's the day of the martial competition between the 5 great top sects of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. I asked you over here today mainly to talk to you about this. Martial competition. Duan Lingtian's brows raised and he was slightly curious. The martial competition is a tradition that the 5 great top sects of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom have passed down for many years, and it is held every 3 years. On the day of the martial competition, the younger generation below the age of 30 of the 5 great top sects carry out a martial exchange. When Lingu Jinhong spoke up to this point, he sighed. In the recent years, there hasn't been any outstanding disciples within the younger generation of our 7-star sword sect. During the martial competition that was held 2 years ago and the other that was held 5 years ago, amongst the disciples of our 7-star sword sect that participated in the martial competition, there wasn't even a single person who entered the top 3. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up. Martial competition. Seems to be slightly interesting. At this moment, Duan Lingtian could feel Lingu Jinhong's helplessness. The 7-star sword sect was the publicly acknowledged #1 sect of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom after all. But no one 7-star sword sect disciple was actually able to enter the top 3 in the martial competition for 2 consecutive competitions, and this undoubtedly showed that the younger generation of the 7-star sword sect was of no use. Presently, the domineering status of the 7-star sword sect relied on the experts of the older generation. It could be imagined that in the 7-star sword sect of the future, when the older generation experts gradually retired, then if there were no promising people in the younger generation, the 7-star sword sect would surely walk towards decline. Are the young disciples of the other sects extremely strong? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Lingu Jinhong nodded. I presume you've heard of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. 2 of them are from the other 2 sects. Besides that, within the other 4 sects, there are still a few figures that have natural talents only inferior to the 5 great young masters. What sect leader means is, you want me to participate in the martial competition amongst the younger generation of the 5 great sects next year? Duan Lingtian asked. Yes, Lingu Jinhong nodded, and he looked at Duan Lingtian with a burning gaze. Presently, amongst the young disciples under the age of 30 of our 7-star sword sect and possess a comparatively outstanding natural talent, then besides my disciple, Huang Ji, the Fecta Peaks Master's disciple, Meng Chu, and the Mizar Peaks Master's son, Zheng Song, there is only you. Although the 3 of them possess strengths that are stronger than you, their ages are far older than you, you're different than them, you possess boundless potential. 1 year later, I don't have extravagant hopes that you'll be able to obtain the top 3 ranks within the martial competition. I mainly want you to go gain experience. Once another 4 years pass, I believe that it's undoubtedly an extremely easy thing for you to obtain the honor of #1 in the martial competition. Lingu Jinhong spoke of his plans. Gain experience. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched. Looks like this sect leader of the 7-star sword sect really has no confidence in me. But with a quick thought, Duan Lingtian came to an understanding. Even though the natural talent he revealed was formidable, he was only a 9th-level Origin Core stage martial artist right now after all. Not to mention the outstanding disciples of the other 4 great sects, even if it was the 3 comparatively outstanding disciples of the 7-star sword sect, he was still far inferior to them. The sect leader's plans were extremely obvious. 1 year later, he would bring Duan Lingtian to go experience the martial competition of the 5 great sects. Then when the martial competition of 4 years later arrives, only then would the sect leader would be eager for Duan Lingtian to able to bring honor to the 7-star sword sect and obtain the honor of being ranked #1 in the martial competition. Duan Lingtian, in the following year, the sect will spare no cost to foster you. From today onwards, you can stay and cultivate in my Dubi Hall. This Dubi Hall of mine is the location of the main spirit point amongst the 9 great spirit points of the 7-star sword sect, and the cultivation environment here is the best within the entire 7-star sword sect. Lingu Jinhong looked at Duan Lingtian and said slowly. He'd obviously completely entrusted the hope of the 7-star sword sect onto Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised by what Lingu Jinhong said. After all, Lingu Jinhong was currently determined to make him obtain the honor of number 1 in the martial competition 4 years from now. This honor had an extraordinary significance to the Seven-Star Sword sect, as it represented that the younger generation of the Seven-Star Sword sect had risen up once again. The best cultivation environment. Although when Duan Lingtian had just arrived at Dubi Peak, he'd noticed that the cultivation environment here surpassed Megrez Hall and Mizar Hall, but compared to his stalactite cave, it was instead an extremely great distance away. Sect leader, I'm already accustomed to my current cultivation location. Duan Lingtian politely refused Lingu Jinhong's good intentions. As far as he was concerned, the stalactite cave he'd discovered was the place that truly deserved the title of best cultivation location in the Seven-Star Sword sect. Of course, he didn't say it out loud, as the stalactite cave was his secret. At least, before he left the Seven-Star Sword sect, it was his secret. Duan Lingtian, Lingu Jinhong never expected that Duan Lingtian would refuse his good intentions, and he was stunned for a moment before continuing to persuade. Duan Lingtian, a good cultivation location is able to increase your speed of cultivation, the Dubi Peak is your best choice. You can be at ease, I'm only asking you to cultivate in Dubi Peak and have no intention of taking you as my disciple. With your natural talent, I don't feel I have the qualifications to be your master. As he finished speaking, Lingu Jinhong laughed in self-ridicule. Sect leader, you've misunderstood. Duan Lingtian shook his head. I'm the type of person that would at least need a year or two to adapt to a new place after I've become accustomed to a place. Honestly speaking, I've only barely adapted to my cultivation location on Megrez Peak. If you ask me to suddenly cultivate at Dubi Hall, I'm worried the advancement of my cultivation would be even slower. Lingu Jinhong's magnanimity caused Duan Lingtian to feel heartfelt reverence. He was able to discern that Lingu Jinhong was a true noble person, and was absolutely not someone the deceased peak master of the Megrez Peak, Wu Dao, could compare to. So that's how it is. Lingu Jinhong came to a sudden understanding and he didn't doubt the truth of what Duan Lingtian said. As far as he was concerned, if it wasn't for this, it would be impossible that Duan Lingtian was unwilling to cultivate in Dubi Hall. After all, the cultivation environment in Dubi Hall far surpassed any other place in the Seven-Star Sword sect. Of course, the only reason Lingu Jinhong would think like this was because he completely had no knowledge of the existence of the stalactite cave. Otherwise, he would think like this. Since it's like this, then I won't force you. During these 4 years, if you have any needs for cultivating, like medicinal pills, you can look for me and I'll try my best to help you. Lingu Jinhong promised Duan Lingtian. For the sake of Duan Lingtian being able to bring honor to the Seven-Star Sword sect in the martial competition 4 years from now, he'd decided to spare no cost in fostering Duan Lingtian. All for the sake of allowing Duan Lingtian to obtain the honor of number 1 in the martial competition. Then I won't be courteous. Duan Lingtian nodded with a smile and didn't refuse, and his eyes emitted a bright light. Looks like I can save a great amount of money when I cultivate in the future. After bidding his farewell to Lingu Jinhong and leaving, Duan Lingtian once again saw the young man that stood guard outside the audience hall. This young man ought to be that personal disciple the sect leader, Lingu Jinhong, had mentioned earlier, Huangji. Huangji was younger than Zheng Song, yet far stronger than Zheng Song. Presumable, during the martial competition 1 year from now, the sect leader, Lingu Jinhong, would entrust most of his hope on Huangji. This Huangji is at the 4th level of the nascent soul stage. In 1 year, if nothing unexpected happens, then he ought to be able to break through to the 5th level of the nascent soul stage. Duan Lingtian's eyes flickered with a flowing light, and it was filled with an inexplicable feeling. I wonder, when that martial competition begins 1 year from now, until what extent would my cultivation be able to break through to? 375 Chapter 376, The Nascent Soul Emerges from the Shattered Core. Duan Lingtian wasn't courteous in the slightest after obtaining Lingu Jinhong's promise. So long as he needed any material, he would directly ask for it from Lingu Jinhong. Every time, Lingu Jinhong would be able to prepare all the material for him within a single day. The sect leader is really efficient. When Duan Lingtian walked out of Dubi Hall once again, he had a brilliant smile on his face. But when he arrived at Megrez Peak, the smile on his face froze. HMPH. With a single glance, he'd noticed the middle-aged man that was walking towards him from the distance, and his face sank. It was precisely the Megrez Peak Outer Court elder, Zhao Lin. Duan Lingtian. Zhao Lin noticed Duan Lingtian and cold lights flashed within his eyes. Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at Zhao Lin, then he circumnavigated Zhao Lin and directly headed into Megrez Peak. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian's eardrums trembled as Zhao Lin sent a voice transmission. Duan Lingtian, I won't let you off until you hand over the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll. Duan Lingtian's figure slightly stopped as he turned around to look coldly at Zhao Lin in the eye, then replied via voice transmission. Then feel free to come at me, Elder Zhao Lin. I only hope that at that time, you won't regret it. Regret? Zhao Lin started laughing, and shrugged it off. Duan Lingtian, I know your natural talent in the martial Tao is formidable, but if you want to surpass me, Zhao Lin, then without bitter cultivation of 10 years, it's simply fool's talk. I really don't believe that within this 10 years of time, I, Zhao Lin, won't be able to find an opportunity to kill you. Zhao Lin's voice transmission was filled with icy cold killing intent. Then I'll wait and see. Duan Lingtian calmly glanced at Zhao Lin before entering Megrez Peak. After he confirmed that Zhao Lin wasn't following him, Duan Lingtian directly returned to the stalactite cave, then he withdrew a pile of materials and started refining a spirit weapon. He wanted to refine 2 grade 7 spirit swords. These 2 grade 7 spirit swords were refined for Li Fei and Kair. For the sake of avoiding unnecessary trouble, Duan Lingtian held back when refining the spirit weapons, but even then, the 2 grade 7 spirit swords were still bestowed with an amplification of 30% by him. Grade 7 spirit swords that provided an amplification of 30% strength. Throughout the entire 7-star sword sect, besides the sword in Hu Shui Feng's possession, there would probably only be these 2. After finishing the refinement of the 2 grade 7 spirit swords, Duan Lingtian started refining medicinal pills. The medicinal pill he wanted to refine was a grade 7 medicinal pill that surpassed the origin strengthening pill. This grade 7 medicinal pill was able to assist a 9th level origin core stage martial artist to swiftly step into the nascent soul stage. After quite some effort, the pill was completed. With this nascent break pill, I can avoid a great deal of trouble when I intend to step into the nascent soul stage. As he gazed at the 3 medicinal pills in his hand that had flowing lights revolve around them, Duan Lingtian's face revealed a satisfied smile. 3 nascent break pills with a purity of over 90%. If it was taken out into the open, it was sufficient to cause people to fight to the death for it. After he passed the 2 grade 7 spirit swords to Kair and Li Fei and had a romp with them for some time, Duan Lingtian returned to the stalactite cave and sat on the stone platform before lightly pondering. Although the sect leader has entrusted all his hope on the martial competition 4 years from now, I might not be in the 7-star sword sect at that time. Duan Lingtian's eyes flickered. He was confident that with his natural talent and the resources he was able to utilize currently, he would surely be able to go further after 4 years. His target was to step into the void stage after 4 years. When he stepped into the void stage, then continuing to stay in the 7-star sword sect was of no use at all. During the martial competition 1 year from now, I must give the sect leader some justification. Duan Lingtian's gaze gradually became firm. Extremely strong confidence was emitted from his body and seemed to transform into a shapeless force that would even dare to pierce through the heavens. Cultivate. Duan Lingtian closed his eyes, and his mind completely immersed itself into cultivating. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Windworm Form. Within Duan Lingtian's body, origin energy ceaselessly roiled, as if it would never be exhausted. The vast origin energy endlessly surged before finally gathering within Duan Lingtian's dantian. The origin core within the dantian had already condensed and strengthened to the limit. The nascent soul stage is like its name, the nascent soul emerges from the shattered core, and that is the nascent soul stage. Duan Lingtian, who possessed the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, wasn't unfamiliar with the nascent soul stage. He knew that if he wanted to break through to the nascent soul stage now, then he must make the origin core within his dantian shatter from being too full, and allow the nascent soul to emerge from within. Only in this way would he be able to truly step into the nascent soul stage. Swish. The origin energy within Duan Lingtian's body ceaselessly flowed and churned, as if it had transformed into a surging river that flowed continuously. His origin energy was endlessly strengthening and undergoing a qualitative change. All for the sake of the moment that the nascent soul emerged from the shattered core. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's entire heart and soul were immersed into his cultivating, and he was completely concentrated. He did his best to dissolve the medicinal strength of the origin strengthening pill. After the medicinal strength of one origin strengthening pill was dissolved, He didn't even open his eyes before directly swallowing another origin strengthening pill and continuing to cultivate. Repeating the process again and again. Time flashed by swiftly. Duan Lingtian didn't know how much time had passed. All he knew was that he'd ceaselessly consumed origin strengthening pills, and ceaselessly condensed the origin energy within his body, all for the sake of charging into the nascent soul stage. The nascent soul stage was his target. When he was hungry, he opened his eyes and roasted some meat to eat. Accurately speaking, it was some meat to swallow. Wolfing down his food was a phrase that could perfectly describe the scenes of Duan Lingtian violently eating and drinking these past few days. During this period, K.Er and Li Fei had come look for him twice. But every time, when they saw Duan Lingtian who was immersed in cultivation, they wouldn't disturb him and would only silently watch Duan Lingtian for some time before leaving. No matter what their man did, they would support him without condition. Because he was their life and everything to them. This day, I've arrived at the limit of the bottleneck. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian opened his eyes, and he revealed a slightly excited expression. With a raise of his hand, 3 medicinal pills had appeared within his palm. It was precisely the nascent break pill. After swallowing down the 3 nascent break pills, Duan Lingtian continued cultivating, and the origin energy within his body had become violent as it endlessly charged at the final bottleneck. The origin core within Duan Lingtian's dantian expanded endlessly, and would shatter from being too full at any moment. One day, bang, within the stalactite cave, a shapeless wave of air stretched out from the body of the young man that sat cross-legged on the stone platform. It caused the air to roil as it spread out, transforming into circle after circle of ripples. In the next moment, the young man opened his eyes, which were like a dazzling array of stars as bright lights flickered within. After a short moment, the bright light gradually dispersed, and the young man's eyes returned to calmness. Finally, nascent soul stage. Duan Lingtian's face revealed a smile and he was extremely excited. He'd finally succeeded in breaking through to the nascent soul stage. Whoosh! Under his excitement, Duan Lingtian's origin energy skyrocketed. Instantly, ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form one by one above him, and their imposing manner were like rainbows that shot into the sky. A total of 211 ancient mammoth silhouettes. Similarly to when I was at the nascent soul stage, I still possess the strength of 11 ancient mammoths, more than a martial artist with a similar cultivation. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a smile. The strength of 11 ancient mammoths was the strength of the body that was bestowed to me by the spirit serpent form and raging python form. At that time, Duan Lingtian cultivated the first form of the 9 dragons war sovereign technique, the spirit serpent form, and during the body tempering stage, his strength far surpassed the strength of a martial artist with a similar cultivation as him. When he was at the 9th level of the body tempering stage, his strength even exceeded the strength of ordinary 9th level body tempering stage martial artists by the strength of 2 ancient mammoths. After he broke through to the core formation stage, the second form of the 9 dragons war sovereign technique, the raging python form, bestowed the method of using origin energy to temper the body to Duan Lingtian, and it even allowed Duan Lingtian's body to become strong to a state that could be called abnormal. An ordinary 9th level core formation stage martial artist possessed a strength comparable to the strength of 12 ancient mammoths. But when Duan Lingtian was at the 9th level of the core formation stage, his strength was comparable to the strength of 23 ancient mammoths. It was almost double the strength of an ordinary 9th level core formation stage martial artist. This extra strength of 11 ancient mammoths had always been with Duan Lingtian until now. Coupled with the quake energy that was bestowed upon me by the third form of the 9 dragons war sovereign technique, the worm python form, relying on the grade 6 spirit sword that the withered old man left behind that day, so long as it isn't a second level nascent soul stage martial artist who possess a grade 6 spirit weapon or above, I can kill them. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, and he had an initial estimate of his current strength. Of course, if it was a second level nascent soul stage martial artist that possessed a grade 6 spirit weapon, then if Duan Lingtian were to go against the martial artist, he would surely be in a dangerous situation. As my cultivation advances, the extra strength of 11 ancient mammoths and the quake energy will become of lesser and lesser help to me. Duan Lingtian knew very well that in the future, he might be able to rule over martial artists with a similar cultivation as him by relying on the extra strength of 11 ancient mammoths and quake energy, but once he encountered a martial artist with a higher cultivation than him, it would become more and more strenuous for him. Just like now, so long as that second level nascent soul stage martial artist also possessed a grade 6 spirit weapon, Then unless Duan Lingtian can gain an advantage by making the first strike, otherwise, if he were to go head-on with the martial artist, Duan Lingtian would die without a doubt. The nascent soul emerges from the shattered core. Unconsciously, Duan Lingtian seemed to have thought of something and started to use his internal vision. Presently, the origin core within his dantian had completely vanished. At the location where the origin core used to be, a ball of milky white gas that was the shape of a baby seemed lifelike as it sat cross-legged there. This ball of baby-shaped gas is completely formed from origin energy. Through the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, Duan Lingtian knew this like the back of his hand. The pressing matter at hand is to improve my cultivation as soon as possible. Once my cultivation encounters a bottleneck, I'll stop cultivating right away, then rely on the high-grade earth rank movement technique, whirlwind, to comprehend wind force. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath, then withdrew a medicinal pill and swallowed it. This medicinal pill was a medicinal pill that Duan Lingtian had refined before he started cultivating, and it was named Nascent Nurturing Pill. It was a medicinal pill that was consumed by nascent soul stage martial artists to cultivate. It was similar to the origin increasing pill consumed by core formation stage martial artists and the origin strengthening pill that was consumed by origin core stage martial artists. Continue cultivating. Presently, after his cultivation had broken through to the nascent soul stage, Duan Lingtian was able to perceive that when he circulated the mental cultivation method of the fourth form of the Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique, the windworm form, it was much easier. The origin energy within his body flowed ceaselessly as it charged towards the next level, and it seemed as if it didn't know exhaustion. 376 Chapter 377, Sudden Insight, Comprehension of Wind Force. Duan Lingtian forgot the time as he cultivated. Spring had become winter, and in the blink of an eye, 11 months had passed just like this. Stalactite Cave, atop the stone platform. Duan Lingtian slowly opened his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled into a bitter smile, and he let out a long sigh. This bottleneck is truly a headache. I wonder how long has it been? I should go out and have a look. Duan Lingtian's figure flashed to leave the stalactite cave and stand on the tilted tree. The Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom was at the south of Cloud Continent, thus it was difficult to see snow during the winters here. Even then, Duan Lingtian was still able to sense traces of coldness. Of course, this little bit of coldness was nothing to him. With his current strength, so long as his origin energy coiled around his body, he would be easily capable of withstanding severe cold. Unfortunately, although my cultivation has broken through to the nascent soul stage, my spiritual force doesn't have the slightest sign of wanting to break through. Duan Lingtian let out a long breath of air and was slightly feeling a sense of loss. His spiritual force searched the peak of Megrez Peak for a while. Then when he confirmed there were no people, Duan Lingtian ascended the peak and headed down the mountain. After he arrived nearby the trade hall, he asked about a little bit and he found out that it had already been 11 months since he went into closed-door cultivation that day. 11 months? The sect leader said that we would leave half a month earlier for the martial competition this time. At the same time that Duan Lingtian stepped on the chain bridge, he thought in his heart. In other words, there's still half a month of time before I have to leave. After he left Megrez Peak, Duan Lingtian first went to Alcade Peak to see Li Fei, then he headed to Alcade Hall on Dubi Peak to see Kair. After not meeting each other for almost a year, his heart was filled with the feeling of missing the two little girls. Only after he met the two little girls did he find out that during the time he was in closed-door cultivation, they'd come see him more than once. This caused his heart to feel warm. Needless to say, the feeling of being cared for was indeed nice. After having a romp with the two little girls, Duan Lingtian returned to the peak of Megrez Peak once more, and he stood on the tilted tree, feeling the piercingly cold wind of winter. The 7-star sword sect inner court disciples' attire on Duan Lingtian's body fluttered, and the origin energy that appeared automatically to withstand the severe cold was withdrawn by him. Instantly, the cold wind assaulted him, almost completely enveloping Duan Lingtian within it. Icy coldness that pierced into the heart spread throughout Duan Lingtian's body, causing Duan Lingtian to be unable to refrain from shivering. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath, then gritted his teeth and endured it. He was comprehending the characteristics of wind under such a severe environment. According to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, if he wanted to comprehend wind force, then before he cultivated whirlwind, he must have a certain degree of understanding towards the wind. Wind was something that gathered gentleness, violent, coldness, and swiftness together. Boundlessly profound. Presently, the winter wind that Duan Lingtian was facing contained 3 characteristics of wind: fierceness, coldness, and swiftness. As for gentleness, that was a characteristic of a breeze. Duan Lingtian stood on the tilted tree for an entire day, only circulating his origin energy to completely remove that coldness that had invaded his body when he was freezing to the point his face went ghastly pale and he gritted his teeth tightly. His entire body returned to warmth. Wind. Duan Lingtian closed his eyes and silently recalled the cold wind that had assaulted him for an entire day. The cold wind was violent and ruthless, cold and bone-piercing, swift and fierce. Duan Lingtian stood on the tilted tree like this as he gradually entered a marvelous state, seeming to have transformed into a sculpture as he stood there unmoving. The cold wind was still piercingly cold, yet as was unable to assault and pierce through the surface of Duan Lingtian's body that was suffused with origin energy. 1 day passed, 2 days passed, 3 days passed. Duan Lingtian finally made headway on the 10th day. Swoosh. Duan Lingtian's figure lightly moved and a strange aura accompanied his origin energy to suffuse out. Wind, so that's how it is. Duan Lingtian muttered, and the corners of his mouth bloomed into a brilliant smile. With a raise of his hand, a strand of an extremely swift and fierce aura suffused out. This is wind force, Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. At practically the same moment, 100+ ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared out of thin air above Duan Lingtian. Currently, Duan Lingtian didn't utilize the strength of his body or origin energy in the slightest. The strength of over 100 ancient mammoths. What's going on? Duan Lingtian was curious in his heart. According to his knowledge, even the lowest level of the wind force, elementary wind force, was comparable to the strength of 200 ancient mammoths when utilized. Right when Duan Lingtian was feeling curious, the 100+ ancient mammoth silhouettes above him suddenly reduced to become 80+ ancient mammoths. Then it violently increased to 100+ again. What's going on? The scene before him caused Duan Lingtian to be slightly dumbstruck as he completely had no idea what was going on. I seem to have not comprehended wind force, but the wind force also seemed to already possess traces of being completely formed. Duan Lingtian's thoughts revolved abruptly. Normally speaking, it's impossible for a nascent soul stage martial artist to comprehend force. Could it be that I'm being restrained by this? Before long, Duan Lingtian was suddenly enlightened. However, according to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, the high-grade Earth rank martial skill, Whirlwind, is sufficient to assist me in comprehending wind force. Perhaps, as he thought up to this point, Duan Lingtian pushed off the tilted tree and descended onto the peak of Megrez Peak with a leap. Presently, the peak of Megrez Peak was completely devoid of people. Whirlwind. Duan Lingtian's figure moved, as if he'd transformed into wind, and he started to cultivate his new movement technique. Although it's said to be his new movement technique, but it actually still contains some traces of the spirit serpent movement technique. Whirlwind. Step into the initial stage and one may comprehend elementary wind force. Step into the mastery stage and one may comprehend half-step advanced wind force. Step into the perfection stage and one may comprehend advanced wind force. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian had a certain level of comprehension towards this high-grade Earth rank movement technique. Duan Lingtian's figure flashed out, as if he transformed into a gale, sweeping through the mist and clouds that covered the sky and coiled around the peak of Megrez Peak. His speed grew swifter and swifter. Let me test if I can merge that incomplete wind force I comprehended into whirlwind. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, then the origin energy on his body fluctuated before it contained extra traces of a strange aura. This aura was precisely the incomplete wind force that Duan Lingtian had obtained sudden insight of after 10 days. Instantly, swoosh, 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 swoosh. Compared to before, Duan Lingtian's speed was nearly doubled. Not only that, along with Duan Lingtian becoming skilled in the incomplete wind force he'd comprehended, he was also able to gradually merge it with his movement technique, whirlwind. For an entire day and night, Duan Lingtian didn't stop in the slightest. If a void-prying stage martial artist was present, then they would surely be able to notice that the originally incomplete wind force on Duan Lingtian's body was gradually becoming completely merged with whirlwind as Duan Lingtian utilized them together. Whoosh! Until the second day when twilight appeared in the horizon, when Duan Lingtian's figure flashed, the strange aura that was unstable and finally stabilized. Whoosh! At the same time, 200 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared out of thin air above Duan Lingtian, who didn't use any origin energy to move his body. This was precisely the strength of elementary wind force. Elementary wind force, I've succeeded. When he noticed this, Duan Lingtian stopped moved and had a jubilantly happy expression. Growl, growl. Right at this moment, Duan Lingtian heard a wave of light noises, and he noticed that his stomach was growling. Only now did he realize that he seemed to have not eaten for a long time. How many days have passed? Duan Lingtian, who had a dazed expression, started a fire on the peak of Megre's peak before starting to roast meat and wolf it down. At the same time that he bit on the roasted meat, Duan Lingtian didn't forget to recall his gains. According to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, there are some people within Cloud Continent with outstanding comprehension ability that are able to comprehend incomplete force when they were at the nascent soul stage. That time of people were practically able to instantly comprehend elementary force when they stepped into the void prying stage. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. As for my circumstances, according to the knowledge of Rebirth Martial Emperor, it ought to be a type of sudden insight. Sudden insight could be encountered by luck but not sought after. Amongst the countless martial artists in the world, they might not have even encountered sudden insight once in their entire lifetime. Some people were able to cause everyone around them to ascend in life once they themselves obtained sudden insight. Although few, there were still people on Cloud Continent who directly comprehended force from a sudden insight like Duan Lingtian. Even to the extent, there were still some people who'd just comprehended half-step advanced force, then because of sudden insight, they'd directly comprehended advanced force. Compared to the latter, Duan Lingtian could be considered to be inferior. Sudden insight, I truly never imagined that I would have such luck. Duan Lingtian shook his head and sighed. Through the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, Duan Lingtian was able to perceive how difficult sudden insight was to come by. Even the Rebirth Martial Emperor who'd experienced 2 lifetimes, hadn't encountered more than 10 people who'd experienced sudden insight. A person who'd experienced sudden insight twice was almost non-existent. Sudden insight is related to a person's great fortuitous encounter. Presently, I've comprehended elementary wind force through sudden insight. In the future, if I want to immerse myself in the state of sudden insight again, it would be practically impossible. Flowing lights flashed within Duan Lingtian's eyes as he said to himself. Elementary wind force. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian came back to his senses. Whoosh! Origin energy skyrocketed on his legs, and he didn't hold back in the slightest. Elementary wind force merged into his origin energy. Bang! Above Duan Lingtian, hundreds of ancient mammoth silhouettes had imposing manners that shot into the sky like rainbows as they followed Duan Lingtian to flash out. Whirlwind. Instantly, Duan Lingtian's entire body seemed to have transformed into a gale, sweeping away all the clouds and mist surrounding the peak of Megre's peak. For a moment, all the clouds and mist atop the peak of Megre's peak had dispersed, vanishing without a trace. Satisfying. At the same time that he dashed, Duan Lingtian had the feeling as if he was racing with the wind, causing his mood to feel at ease. Presently, this high-grade earth rank movement technique, whirlwind, can be considered to have officially stepped into the initial stage. As expected of a high-grade earth rank movement technique, it's far from something those high-grade profound rank movement techniques can compare to. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. 377 Chapter 378, Jade Origin Fruit. Even Duan Lingtian himself never imagined that standing on the tilted tree and sensing the piercingly cold winter wind that day would allow him to inexplicably enter the state of sudden insight. With a single sudden insight, he'd comprehended elementary wind force. St. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian seemed to have thought of something, his pupils constricted and his face went grim. Whirlwind. Duan Lingtian's figure fluttered, seeming to transform into a gale as he directly flashed down Megre's peak with burning anxiety. I wonder how long the sudden insight this time spent. If I've missed the day to head to the martial competition, then I would truly be unworthy of the care the sect leader has given me. After Duan Lingtian left Megre's peak, he directly stepped on the chain bridge and headed to Dubi Peak. He didn't dare stop for a single moment. That day before he went into closed-door cultivation, the materials Duan Lingtian asked the sect leader, Lingu Jinhong, to gather was practically all the materials he didn't possess. Those materials were all extremely difficult to come by, materials that had a price but lacked any stock on the market. This favor was something Duan Lingtian remembered in his heart. If he was unable to be in time for the martial competition this time, then he would undoubtedly lose a chance to return this favor. He didn't want to lose this chance. Duan Lingtian's figure flashed, causing the wind and clouds to flutter all along the way, and he directly headed to Dubi Hall on Dubi Peak. When Duan Lingtian arrived at Dubi Hall and saw the sect leader's personal disciple, Huangji, Duan Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief, as it looked like he didn't miss it. Duan Lingtian, Master has been looking for you for many days. There's actually no one on Megrez Peak that knows where your cultivation location is. Are you really cultivating on Megrez Peak? Huangji still had a calm expression when he saw Duan Lingtian, but his brows lightly frowned. The sect leader is looking for me. Duan Lingtian was stunned, then walked into Dubi Hall under the lead of Huangji. In next to no time, the sect leader, Lingu Jinhong, appeared. Duan Lingtian. The calm expression on Lingu Jinhong's face revealed a wisp of a smile when he saw Duan Lingtian. This scene caused Huangji, who stood nearby, to have a slightly unnatural expression. He was the personal disciple of Lingu Jinhong, but normally, before this master of his, he'd never seen his master have such a smile towards him. Slight envy had arisen within his heart. Sect leader. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled and nodded to Lingu Jinhong. I've been cultivating during these past few days and didn't pay attention to the time. When are we leaving? In 3 days. As Lingu Jinhong spoke, he raised his hand. Swoosh. A spirit fruit that flickered with a jade green sheen appeared out of thin air on his hand. The spirit fruit was completely crimson red, yet its entire body flickered with a jade green sheen. With a single glance, one could discern that this spirit fruit was no ordinary thing. Huangji's gaze abruptly lit up. A spirit fruit was a treasure that could be encountered by luck but not sought after. When Duan Lingtian saw the spirit fruit in Lingu Jinhong's hand, he'd recognized it in the first possible moment, and he couldn't refrain from exclaiming in surprise. Jade Origin Fruit. According to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, the Jade Origin Fruit was a type of spirit fruit that was of higher grade than the Profound Origin Fruit he'd consumed that day. When consumed by a martial artist below the 4th level of the nascent soul stage, it was sufficient to allow the martial artist to directly break through to the next level. When consumed by a 4th, 5th, or 6th level nascent soul stage martial artist, it was only able to allow the cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds. If one had fallen into a bottleneck, then it was even sufficient to directly break through the bottleneck and break through to the next level. If it was consumed by a martial artist at the 7th level of the nascent soul stage or above, its effect would instead be reduced greatly. Duan Lingtian's breathing became hurried. If he was able to obtain this Jade Origin Fruit, then once he consumed it, he was confident in making his cultivation break through to the next level. Jade Origin Fruit. At the beginning, although Huangji had realized that the spirit fruit in Lingu Jinhong's hands wasn't simple, but he was unable to recognize it. Now, when he heard what Duan Lingtian said, his gaze became burning with desire. His cultivation had broken through to the 5th level of the nascent soul stage 3 months ago. If he was able to obtain this Jade Origin Fruit, then even if he was unable to break through to the 6th level of the nascent soul stage, it would still be sufficient to allow his cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds, and it would be of extremely great assistance to his cultivation in the future. For a time, the gaze Huangji shot at the Jade Origin Fruit was filled with desire. I never expected you would recognize the Jade Origin Fruit. Lingu Jinhong glanced at Duan Lingtian in surprise. This young man is really more and more mysterious. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled, his gaze never leaving the Jade Origin Fruit in Lingu Jinhong's hands. In the past, I'd once seen it in an ancient book, and there was a picture especially there to explain in detail. Lingu Jinhong came to a sudden understanding. If it was like this, then it wasn't strange. Duan Lingtian. Lingu Jinhong glanced at Duan Lingtian, and his gaze followed to descend onto the Jade Origin Fruit in his hand. This scene caused Huangji's face to go grim. Could it be that Master wants to bestow this Jade Origin Fruit to Duan Lingtian? No, this absolutely will not do. Huangji's heart burned with anxiety, and his belly was filled with unwillingness. But before his master, Lingu Jinhong, he didn't dare be presumptuous in the slightest. Have you broken through to the nascent soul stage? Lingu Jinhong slowly asked Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled and nodded. Ha ha, good. Lingu Jinhong laughed heartily. You didn't let me down after all. If I'm not wrong, you're only 22 this year, right? Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded with a carefree expression. He didn't think this achievement was great. That day, the mysterious yellow-clothed young girl, Han Shuinai, was around the age of 15 or 16, but her cultivation was already at the void-prying stage. Compared to Han Shuinai, he was nothing. Within the domain of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, the appearance of a nascent soul stage martial artist that was at the age of 22 was indeed sufficient to cause people to be extremely shocked. He's broken through to the nascent soul stage. Huang Ji looked at Duan Lingtian with an expression of disbelief and his eyes contained slight coldness. He knew clearly in his heart, now that Duan Lingtian had broken through to the nascent soul stage at such an age, with the disposition of his master who'd always loved geniuses extremely, his master would surely bestow the Jade Origin Fruit to Duan Lingtian. At this moment, his eyes seemed to be enveloped in a layer of ice. Duan Lingtian. As expected, Lingu Jinhong passed the spirit fruit in his hands to Duan Lingtian. Consume this Jade Origin Fruit and your cultivation ought to be sufficient to break through to the peak of the second level of the nascent soul stage. I'm confident that in another 3 years, when it's time for the next martial competition, you'll surely be able to win the highest honor for our 7-star sword sect. Sect leader, you want to gift the Jade Origin Fruit to me? Duan Lingtian was stunned. Although he recognized that the spirit fruit in Lingu Jinhong's hand was a Jade Origin Fruit, he never thought that Lingu Jinhong would gift it to him. After all, Lingu Jinhong himself had a nascent soul stage personal disciple. For a moment, he couldn't refrain from glancing at Huang Ji, yet he noticed that Huang Ji, who'd always been incomparably cold and indifferent towards him, now looked at him with a gaze that contained a slight sheen of hatred out of jealousy. Duan Lingtian was able to guess the reason. I'm naturally gifting it to you. Lingu Jinhong nodded, and had an expression that said it was a matter of course. This Jade Origin Fruit is something I obtained unexpectedly while going deep into the primeval forest half a month ago. I'd planned to find you and gift it to you a few days ago, but I was unable to find you. Huang Ji's face sank. He never expected that his master anxiously looking for Duan Lingtian these past few days was actually for the sake of bestowing this Jade Origin Fruit to Duan Lingtian. After all, before today, even he didn't know of the existence of the Jade Origin Fruit. For a moment, flames of jealousy blazed in Huang Ji's heart. Duan Lingtian's brows raised when he heard Lingu Jinhong. His place of cultivation, the stalactite cave, was a place that only he and the 2 little girls knew of. Without his permission, the 2 little girls would absolutely not reveal the secret of the stalactite cave to another person, including their masters. Thank you, sect leader. Duan Lingtian didn't refuse and extended his hand to receive the Jade Origin Fruit. This Jade Origin Fruit had extraordinary meaning to him currently, as it was sufficient to allow his cultivation to directly break through to the next level. At the same time that he received the Jade Origin Fruit, Duan Lingtian could feel traces of heaviness. He knew clearly in his heart that at the same time that he received this Jade Origin Fruit, it would also mean that he shouldered a responsibility. I'll let the sect leader know during the martial competition this time. Gifting this Jade Origin Fruit to me was absolutely not a wrong choice. Duan Lingtian said in his heart. Lingu Jinhong swept out his hand, causing his sleeve to give rise to wind, as he slowly said, Go. After you consume the Jade Origin Fruit and break through to the second level of the nascent soul stage, don't continue cultivating so as to avoid you missing the time to participate in the martial competition of the 5 great sects this time. Second level nascent soul stage. Duan Lingtian neither agreed nor disagreed when he heard Lingu Jinhong. Does this sect leader really think that I'm only at the first level of the nascent soul stage? Yes. However, Duan Lingtian didn't explain any further, he replied before turning around and leaving. When he left, Duan Lingtian was able to sense the burning gaze of hate and jealousy that flashed at him from behind. He didn't have to turn around and he could already guess it. The owner of the gaze was precisely Huang Ji. After leaving Dubi Hall, Duan Lingtian left Dubi Peak and returned to Megrez Peak. Jade Origin Fruit. With this Jade Origin Fruit, my cultivation will step into a new horizon. Duan Lingtian's face revealed a brilliant smile. Sect leader, it won't be long before I let you know how correct your decision today to gift the Jade Origin Fruit was. Duan Lingtian silently said in his heart. The sect leader, Lingu Jinhong, bestowed this Jade Origin Fruit to him and not to his own personal disciple, Huang Ji. He'd obviously deliberated about it for a long time. Of course, Duan Lingtian also knew that the reason Lingu Jinhong didn't give the Jade Origin Fruit to Huang Ji wasn't because he wasn't good to Huang Ji. On the contrary, Huang Ji was his personal disciple, and in terms of affection, no one could compare to the status Huang Ji had in his heart. Today, Lingu Jinhong had made such a decision undoubtedly because he abandoned his own personal feelings and did it all for the sake of the 7-star sword sect. After all, besides being a master, he was also a leader of a sect. Every decision of his could affect the entire sect. After he returned to the stalactite cave, Duan Lingtian sat on the stone platform before withdrawing the jade origin fruit and gobbling it up with a few bites. The jade origin fruit's juice was icy cold when it entered the mouth, then it fused into Duan Lingtian's body and spread out. Duan Lingtian closed his eyes. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Windworm Form. He started cultivating and dissolving the medicinal strength of the jade origin fruit. 378 Chapter 379, Elder Peng. Needless to say, the medicinal strength of the jade origin fruit was extremely domineering. Duan Lingtian had only spent an entire day and night, and he'd already broken through. There were still another 2 days before they departed. Duan Lingtian spent the remaining time to the 2 little girls. Just like this, 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. Dubi Peak, Dubi Hall. 7 figures were gathered together. 3 middle-aged men with extraordinary bearing and 4 7-star sword sect inner court disciples. You're Duan Lingtian. A middle-aged man in sky-blue robes shot his gaze that was brimming with vigor at Duan Lingtian, and at the same time, a terrifying imposing manner enveloped out to press itself onto Duan Lingtian. However, Duan Lingtian instead remained unmoved. He stood there, not moving like a mountain, as if he would remain unfazed even if Tai were to collapse. As expected of the number 1 genius in the history of our 7-star sword sect, you're worth of your reputation. In next to no time, the blue-robed middle-aged man withdrew his imposing manner and praised. Duan Lingtian, this is the Peak Master of Fekta Peak, K. Zhen. The Peak Master of Mizar Peak, Zheng Fan, who stood nearby, lightly smiled as he introduced to Duan Lingtian. Peak Master K. Zhen. Duan Lingtian greeted the blue-robed middle-aged man. Relying on his acute spiritual force and the lifetime worth of memories of the rebirth martial emperor, Duan Lingtian could vaguely perceive that this Peak Master of Fekta Peak seemed to be an expert that had stepped into the second stage of the Void stage, the Void initiation stage. The Void stage was divided into 4 stages. The first Void stage, the Void prying stage. The second Void stage, the Void initiation stage. The third Void stage, the Void interpretation stage. The fourth Void stage, the Void transformation stage. Sect leader, you don't intend to take Duan Lingtian as your personal disciple? K. Zhen nodded with a smile to Duan Lingtian, then looked at the nearby Lingu Jinhong. If sect leader has no intention of taking Duan Lingtian as a personal disciple, then I won't be courteous. K. Zhen's words displayed his thoughts of wanting to take Duan Lingtian as his personal disciple. Duan Lingtian smiled bitterly. When did I become such a hot cake? Lingu Jinhong hadn't even spoken when Zheng Fan had already started laughing. K. Zhen, I and sect leader both think we have no qualification to be Duan Lingtian's master. Could it be that you think you have sufficient qualification? If Duan Lingtian takes you as his master, what do you have to teach him? K. Zhen's face froze when he heard this. Exactly, if Duan Lingtian were to take me as a master, what do I have to teach Duan Lingtian? Force and concept relied more on individual comprehension, and others weren't able to affect it. As for sword skills and other various combat methods. As an existence who could kill a first-level nascent soul stage inner court disciple while only at the 9th level of the origin core stage, would Duan Lingtian need me to teach him? When he thought up to here, K. Zhen shook his head and laughed in self-ridicule. I really forgot this, indeed, not to mention our 7-star sword sect, even throughout the entire Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, Darkstone Empire and the Darken Dynasty, there might not be a person who possessed the qualifications to be Duan Lingtian's master. A master delivered teachings in cleared confusion. If he wasn't even able to do this, then how would he be a master? At this moment, K. Zhen could perceive that the reason the sect leader didn't take Duan Lingtian as a personal disciple wasn't because he didn't intend to, but because he felt he didn't have the qualifications. HMPH. The nearby Huangji coldly swept Duan Lingtian with his gaze and snorted secretly. K. Zhen saying this was undoubtedly indirectly saying that he, Huangji, the personal disciple of the 7-star sword sect leader, was inferior to Duan Lingtian. After all, Duan Lingtian was someone that even his master, the sect leader of the 7-star sword sect, didn't have the qualifications to take as a disciple. Get ready to depart. Suddenly, Lingu Jinhong spoke indifferently. Depart. Duan Lingtian was stunned. It was at this moment that the sound of wind and a bird sounded out in the distant horizon. Swoosh! An enormous black shadow descended from behind the distant clouds and mist, and it passed through to appear before the eyes of Duan Lingtian and the others. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted as he gazed at the enormous flying demon beast before him. This flying demon beast was a grand rock. Its entire body was dark gray, and when it opened its wings, it was like clouds that covered the sky. It didn't possess the sharp feathers like the dark rock that Zither young master rode, and its feathers were no different from the feathers of an ordinary fierce beast, seeming to be extremely ordinary. However, its sharp claws that flickered with cold light were sufficient to cause one to be terrified. It was like a sharp weapon that could destroy anything. Most importantly, at the instant this grand rock appeared, Duan Lingtian sensed that its aura was extraordinary, to the extent that it was not inferior to Zhengfan and Ke Zhen. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and couldn't help but extend his spiritual force out, desiring to inspect the strength of this grand rock. However, when Duan Lingtian's spiritual force touched the grand rock, a strand of cold light suddenly flashed past the originally dim eyes of the grand rock, and the gaze covered in an icy cold sheen that shot at Duan Lingtian caused him to shudder and hurriedly withdraw his spiritual force. "Little fellow, you're not bad, you actually possess such a strong spiritual force at such an age." Right at this moment, an aged voice sounded out in Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian was stunned. He was able to discern that this voice transmission wasn't sent by any of the people present. Right when Duan Lingtian was looking around. What a naive little fellow. The voice transmission sounded out once again. This time, Duan Lingtian reacted, and he was completely dumbstruck as he gazed at the grand rock that was flying downward swiftly. It was this grand rock that was speaking to me. Demon beast condensing origin energy into sound. According to the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, Duan Lingtian knew very well that condensing origin energy into sound was something a 7th level origin core stage human martial artist was able to utilize, but if it was a demon beast, it instead had to step into the void initiation stage to be able to condense origin energy into sound. This is a void initiation stage demon beast. After he recovered from his shock, Duan Lingtian felt a chill run down his spine. The intuition of a demon beast was innately more acute than humans. Duan Lingtian's spiritual force was something even Lingu Jinhong was unable to notice, where this void initiation stage demon beast was able to notice it at the first possible moment. Whoosh! The grand rock's enormous figure descended swiftly outside Dubi Hall with a bang, giving rise to dust and dirt that covered the sky. Elder Peng. Right at this moment, Duan Lingtian saw that everyone present including Lingu Jinhong respectfully bowed to the grand rock. Whereas the grand rock nodded like a human, then its eyes descended onto Duan Lingtian before looked at Lingu Jinhong, seeming to be asking something. Elder Peng, he's Duan Lingtian and is the disciple with the strongest natural talent in the history of our 7-star sword sect. Presently, he's only 22 years old, but his cultivation has already stepped into the 2nd level of the nascent soul stage. Lingu Jinhong respectfully introduced Duan Lingtian to the grand rock. When the grand rock heard this, its sharp eyes contained a sense of surprise. Obviously, he was shocked by Duan Lingtian's natural talent in the martial Dao as well. 2nd level of the nascent soul stage. Not only did what Lingu Jinhong say shock the grand rock, even the Zhengfan and Ke Zhen were moved now. Although they knew that Duan Lingtian had already stepped into the 9th level of the origin core stage 1 year ago, if Duan Lingtian was only at the 1st level of the nascent soul stage now, they wouldn't be surprised. After all, Duan Lingtian's natural talent was there for all to see. However, Duan Lingtian had actually broken through to the 2nd level of the nascent soul stage. Junior brother Duan Lingtian, you've broken through to the 2nd level of the nascent soul stage. Zheng Song looked at Duan Lingtian with a surprised expression. Amongst the young disciples of the 7-star sword sect, only he was acquainted with Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian laughed lightly, but didn't affirm it nor deny it. However, Duan Lingtian's current attitude instead caused Zheng Song to be deeply convinced. The other two people were respectively the personal disciple of sect leader Lingu Jinhong, Huang Ji, and the personal disciple of peak master Ke Zhen, Meng Chu. Meng Chu was a young man with an ordinary appearance, and his age was slightly younger than Zheng Song. Presently, the gaze he shot at Duan Lingtian was filled with shock. 22-year-old 2nd level nascent soul stage martial artist. Unbelievable. HMPH. If it wasn't for the jade origin fruit that master bestowed to him, would he be able to break through to the 2nd level of the nascent soul stage? Huang Ji's voice sounded out abruptly, and traces of jealousy was mixed within. For a time, everyone present came to a sudden understanding, so it turns out that Duan Lingtian consumed a jade origin fruit. Sect leader, what extravagance! You actually bestowed a spirit fruit like the jade origin fruit to Duan Lingtian. Zhen couldn't help but sigh with emotion. He could feel the great hopes that Lingu Jinhong had entrusted to Duan Lingtian. Jade origin fruit. Zheng Fan and Zheng Song both revealed expressions of shock. Meng Chu looked at Duan Lingtian and his eyes contained traces of envy. If he was able to obtain a jade origin fruit, he was confident of directly stepping into the 5th level of the nascent soul stage once he consumed it. Before Duan Lingtian had appeared, Meng Chu's natural talent was able to be ranked at the 2nd amongst the younger generation 7-star sword sect disciples that were below 30. Only below Huangji and surpassing Zheng Song. But unfortunately, the appearance of Duan Lingtian had completely thrown this ranking into disorder. The 3 of them were all smashed by Duan Lingtian's outstanding natural talent, and could only place themselves behind Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian was the presently publicly acknowledged number 1 in the 7-star sword sect. Even to the extent that within the long flow of history in the 7-star sword sect since it was established, a monster like Duan Lingtian had never appeared, and Duan Lingtian's natural talent could be considered to be unprecedented. HMPH. Huangji's sudden interruption caused Lingu Jinhong to be slightly displeased, and he grunted coldly. Even if Duan Lingtian didn't consume the jade origin fruit, even if Duan Lingtian was only at the 1st level of the nascent soul stage, do you think you can compare to him? What cultivation did you possess when you were at the same age as Duan Lingtian? Lingu Jinhong's words contained a sense of disappointment that Huangji didn't live up to his expectations. Huangji lowered his head when taught a lesson by Lingu Jinhong, as he had no means to refute him. 2nd level of the nascent soul stage. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. The sect leader and everyone else all seemed to think that he only broke through to the 2nd level of the nascent soul stage after consuming the jade origin fruit. Duan Lingtian. Meanwhile, Lingu Jinhong looked at Duan Lingtian and introduced the Grand Roc who'd withdrawn his wings that were like clouds that covered the sky and stood there like a small hill. This is Elder Peng, he's also our 7-star sword sect guardian revered elder. Elder Peng is the senior with the highest seniority in our 7-star sword sect. Highest seniority. It undoubtedly displayed that the time this Grand Roc existed was even longer than the 2 great guardian elders of the 7-star sword sect. 379 Chapter 380, Demonic Lotus Blade Sect. Sect Guardian Revered Elder. Just these 4 words were enough to display how formidable the Grand Roc was. Elder Peng. Duan Lingtian looked at the Grand Peng then greeted him. The Grand Roc nodded to Duan Lingtian, then he unfolded his wings before lightly sweeping them. Swoosh. Instantly, the air outside Dubi Hall seemed as if it was completely drawn out, and dust and dirt suffused and flew into the sky. Depart. Lingu Jinhong called out to Duan Lingtian and the others before being the first to leap up the spacious back of the Grand Roc that was like flat ground. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian and the others ascended the back of the Grand Roc one by one. After he descended onto the back of the Grand Roc, Duan Lingtian was able to guess what would happen next. This Grand Roc, who was also the sect guardian revered elder, Elder Peng, of the 7-star sword sect, would carry their group to head to the demonic Lotus Blade sect. This martial competition of the 5 great sects this time would be carried out in the demonic Lotus Blade sect. The demonic Lotus Blade sect was similar to the 7-star sword sect as they were both one of the 5 great top sects in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. If it was said that over 90% of the 7-star sword sect disciples used swords, then 90% of the disciples of the demonic Lotus Blade sect instead used sabers. Right at this moment, the Grand Roc fully opened up his wings that were like clouds that could cover up the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, the Grand Roc swung his wings, and his speed abruptly rose, as if he transformed into a bolt of lightning, and he flew through the clouds and mist as he flashed out. Swoosh, 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 the sounds of piercingly cold strong winds entered into Duan Lingtian's ears as swift and fierce violent winds assaulted his face, slapping his face. However, Duan Lingtian remained unmoved. He stood there, not moving, like a mountain. Along with the Grand Roc increasing his speed, Zheng Song was the first to be unable to endure the violent winds that assaulted him. His face went pale and his figure started to tremble slightly. Then it was Meng Chu. HMPH. Huangji, who was gritting his teeth and persevering, glanced at Duan Lingtian, who had a carefree expression, and he clenched his teeth. Now, he was almost at the verge of collapse. But when he saw Duan Lingtian seemed as if nothing was happening when faced with the piercingly cold violent winds that assaulted him, he wasn't willing to admit defeat. Duan Lingtian noticed Huang Ji's actions, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile of disdain. If it was before, he might be afraid of this piercingly cold violent winds, but now, he who'd comprehended elementary wind force completely didn't take violent winds of such strength seriously. Linggu Jinhong noticed the unsightly expressions of Zheng Song, Meng Chu, and Huang Ji, but when he saw Duan Lingtian's carefree expression, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch and he secretly exclaimed, "Freak," before saying to the Grand Roc, "Elder Peng, please take care of the juniors." HMPH. 3 useless little things. Right at this moment, a voice transmission entered into the ears of everyone present, and it caused Linggu Jinhong, Zheng Fan, and Kei Zhen to smile helplessly. They were naturally able to perceive that Elder Peng was testing the juniors earlier. Now, compared to Duan Lingtian's performance, the performance of Huang Ji, Zheng Song, and Meng Chu were simply not worth mentioning. It was no wonder that Elder Peng would be so blunt. Swoosh! The Grand Roc gradually slowed down his speed, causing Huang Ji and the others to heave a sigh of relief. After they recovered, Zheng Song had a bitter smile as he muttered, "How can we compare to junior brother Duan Lingtian? He's a freak." Unlike Zheng Song's open-mindedness, Huang Ji and Meng Chu had extremely unsightly expressions. The fact that they were trampled on by a kid that was 22 years old was difficult for them to accept. Duan Lingtian was able to sense their fierce gazes, but he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to them, and he instead sized up the surroundings with interest. Unfortunately, only a boundless expanse entered his eyes, yet he could see nothing. "Senior brother Zheng Song, we still need to spend half a month of time to arrive the demonic Lotus Blade sect even with Elder Peng taking us there." Duan Lingtian walked up to Zheng Song's side and asked curiously. "Yes." Zheng Song nodded. "This is something we can't do anything about. If Elder Peng was heading towards the demonic Lotus Blade sect by himself, he would arrive there within half a day. But now, Elder Peng has to take care of us juniors, so he can only reduce his speed to a level that we can endure." Duan Lingtian came to a sudden understanding. Elder Peng's speed was extremely swift. But it was difficult for Zheng Song, Meng Chu, and Huang Ji to withstand the swift and fierce violent winds that assaulted their faces during extremely swift flight. Even if it was Duan Lingtian, although it wasn't strenuous earlier, but once Elder Peng doubled his speed, he would surely find it difficult to endure. Half a month. Only when Duan Lingtian found out of the location of the demonic Lotus Blade sect did he realize that even with Elder Peng slowing down, their traveling speed could still be considered to be extremely swift. The distance between the 7-star sword sect and the demonic Lotus Blade sect was actually 3 times the distance from the 7-star sword sect to Solitary Summit. After all, when he departed from the 7-star sword sect that day, even when he used his Fergana horse to hurry on the journey at full speed all the way, he'd still used 4 to 5 months of time to arrive at the ancient city of Everlast that was near the Solitary Summit. However, the speed of a Fergana horse is completely unable to compare to the speed of Elder Peng. Duan Lingtian was extremely clear of this. Even if Elder Peng was intentionally slowing down now, in terms of speed, he still far surpassed a Fergana horse by over 10 times or even 100 times. All along the way, Duan Lingtian and Zheng Song chatted idly about anything and everything. Unknowingly, they'd chatted to the topic of the demonic Lotus Blade sect. In the current younger generation of the demonic Lotus Blade sect, an extremely outstanding inner court disciple has appeared, and he's ranked number 5 amongst the 5 great young masters. People call him Saber Young Master. As he finished speaking, Zheng Song was filled with respect. Saber Young Master. Duan Lingtian's brows raised. How is this Saber Young Master compared to Zither Young Master? In terms of strength, he's slightly inferior. In terms of natural talent, they're on par. Zheng Song continued. The Saber Young Master is the youngest amongst the 5 great young masters, and is only 26 this year. However, according to my father, the cultivation of that Saber Young Master has already stepped into the 6th level of the nascent soul stage last year. Presently, it's very likely that he has stepped into the 7th level of the nascent soul stage. 26-year-old 7th level nascent soul stage martial artist. Duan Lingtian nodded. Such natural talent was indeed not inferior to the Zither Young Master, Zi Shang. Half a month of time passed by quickly. Then one day, Duan Lingtian, who stood atop the Grand Roc's back, felt his feet tremble, and the Grand Roc had suddenly slowed down and plunged downwards. The clouds and mist in Duan Ling Tian's field of vision dispersed completely, and a boundlessly vast gorge appeared before the eyes of Duan Ling Tian and the others. Presently, Duan Ling Tian stood atop the back of the grand rock and looked down upon this gorge, and he could see that the shape of the gorge was like an incomparably demonic lotus. Within this lotus-shaped gorge, every petal was an independent gorge within the gorge. This is the location of the demonic lotus blade sect, the demonic lotus gorge. Lingu Jinhong looked down at the vast gorge and said slowly, "This demonic lotus gorge looks like a 9-petal demonic lotus. The location of those 9 petals are where the outer court disciples of the demonic lotus blade sect cultivate and are similar to the 6 great outer court sword peaks of our 7-star sword sect." Under Lingu Jinhong's introduction, Duan Ling Tian and the others acquired a certain level of understanding of the demonic lotus blade sect. "Elder Peng, let's go down," Lingu Jinhong said to the Grand Rock. The Grand Rock nodded, then descended to the central area of the demonic lotus forge. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian frowned. His acute spiritual force vaguely determined that a person had suddenly appeared ahead of them, and it was in existence at the 6th level of the void-prying stage. Not long after, the Grand Rock's body jerked before descending near that person. Duan Ling Tian glanced over. Nearby, an azure-clothed old man stood in midair, and cupped his fist and bowed as he greeted Lingu Jinhong, who was atop the Grand Rock's back. Sect leader Lingu. HMPH. Lingu Jinhong hadn't even spoken when the face of Kei Zhen, who stood nearby, sank. The terrifying imposing manner on his body extended out to envelop the old man. "Our 7-star sword sect leader has arrived personally, but not even a single one of your demonic lotus blade sect's leader or 9 gorge masters have come out to greet us." The old man's face went slightly pale when enveloped by Kei Zhen's aura, and he hurriedly explained. "Peak Master Kei Zhen, amongst our sect leader and the 9 gorge masters, there are quite a few who are in closed-door cultivation. Besides the sect leader, only 3 gorge masters aren't in closed-door cultivation, and they are now entertaining the honored guests of the other 3 sects. 1 sect leader, 3 gorge masters, what a great demonic lotus blade sect." Zheng Fan took a step forward and a similarly terrifying aura enveloped the old man, causing the already pale face of the old man to go ghastly pale. Peak Master Zheng Fan, you've actually broken through." He knew the 7-star sword sect leader and the 6 peak masters. According to his knowledge, the 7-star sword sect's Mizar Peak's master, Zheng Fan, ought to only be a martial artist at the 9th level of the void-prying stage, but he never imagined that Zheng Fan would have actually broken through. Zheng Fan breaking through also meant that the 7-star sword sect had another void initiation stage expert. This wasn't good news to the demonic lotus blade sect. "Zheng Fan, you've broken through." Kei Zhen was stunned. Zheng Fan lightly smiled, and his gaze unnoticeably flashed towards Duan Ling Tian. His breaking through was all thanks to Duan Ling Tian. Peak Master Zheng Fan really concealed himself well. Even the Peak Master of Fecta Peak didn't know he'd already broken through. Duan Ling Tian was similarly surprised when he saw this. After all, Zheng Fan had broken through to the void initiation stage 2 years ago. "Lead the way," Lingu Jinhong finally spoke, seeming to pay no attention to the demonic lotus blade sect's loss of respect. But Duan Ling Tian was still able to notice the terrifying rage contained deep within Lingu Jinhong's eyes. The 7-star sword sect was the leader of the 5 great top sects of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom at any rate, but now the 7-star sword sect was actually looked down upon by the demonic lotus blade sect like this. As the sect leader of the 7-star sword sect, how could Lingu Jinhong not be enraged? Looks like the 7-star sword sect's younger generation's lack of strength has affected the prestige of the 7-star sword sect to a certain extent. Although Duan Ling Tian only watched on coldly from the sidelines, he was still able to notice a slight inkling. Just think about it, a sect presently relied on its experts of the senior generation. But in the future, when the senior generation experts retired or even died of old age, it would still need to rely on the gradually maturing younger generation. It could be imagined that if a sect's new blood didn't have good quality, then it would surely decline in the future.